That blonde guy and his partner are out there, battling for their lives like every second might be their last. The Hamel Kingdom's most legendary family has been shining since before the country even existed, a bloodline so storied it practically carries its own royal crest. Out here in Ilva's eastern wilds, life hits way harder than any map or storybook could ever explain. There's this old saying that the poor churn out kids non-stop, and shockingly it hits the rich too, because even the blue bloods can't dodge that rule. And while even though the Ferris family brags about history and tradition, the truth is they're nothing more than a low-ranked night watch household. His paycheck should have fed 8 adults, but nearly all of it gets burned just keeping up the whole fancy noble act, right down to the... And being the captain of the guard comes with a price tag that absolutely won't stay small. Even just looking at the two of them, you can tell. They're already mowing through 7 portions of food just to keep everyone fed. But with the budget already slammed to the max for just 2 kids in the shot, it makes you wonder, how many brothers and sisters are really cramped? And here's the wild part, the Ferris family doesn't just have kids, they've got 12, all demanding attention. The family's staff is absolutely rattled, staring down those bills like they're about to explode, and it's painfully clear. So the protagonist's mind snaps back to his sister Hannah, trapped and powerless to marry without a dowry, and then he makes the choice on the spot. He'll protect the family he loves, even if it means throwing away his noble status, so it's all for his siblings, and he knows this broke, sinking household won't get rescued unless he's the one who steps out, grabs the money, and so yeah, it's on. So he barrels straight for the huge wooden building where the guild is. He strides through the front doors and freezes for a heartbeat, just soaking in the entire scene. The guild is packed to the brim. Adventurers hustle around, dragging their gear and gearing up for the day, and he watches them all. He feels the room's silence hit him like a punch, like someone dropped a silent spell over the whole place. A cheerful receptionist beams at him with a massive smile, ushers him into the guild and fires off. So what's bringing? He tells her he's here to sign up as an adventurer, and she snatches the registration book on the spot to kick everything off right now. The receptionist shoves the paperwork across the desk, tells him it's all ready to go, so she tells him to fill it out, his name plus every skill or scrap of experience he's got, and he just freezes there for a bit. Then he halts, staring at the sword at his side, and tries to figure out exactly what to write for his skills. Once he shoves the finished form back over the counter, a wave of disappointment hits him. Registration fees just ate his wallet, before she even starts breaking down how the guild runs, especially how they handle quest money and what penalties hit you if you screw up the job. She launches into how guild cards work, then slams the warning into him. Break the law or go kill another member, and every guild in the whole country. Right then she thrusts a temporary tag into his hands and tells him, "Finish your first training request and you'll get the real." He snatches the item from her and stares at the basic beginner's tag he's been handed. He can't help but feel let down, because it's nothing more than a chunk of wood with his name crudely scratched into it. He stares at it one last time, then swings the wooden tag onto his neck and seals it like it's official. The protagonist strides toward the gigantic request board, and the sign points him deeper, straight to the rookie jobs waiting inside. He freezes for a split second, then it clicks. Those color-coded spots on the board aren't random at all, they're the guild card ranks. Turns out the guild doesn't hand out ranks by vibes. It judges power and everything you've survived. Climbing to the top ranks like Mithril isn't something you just earn. You need the high-level executives to sign off. And the rare lucky ones. He daydreams about gear forged from that top-tier stuff, then snaps back to reality. He's got to grind just to earn enough. He scans the board like it's a battlefield, hunting for the few quests he can actually pull off, and zeroing in on the beginner-tagged ones. Until he spots grueling manual gigs everywhere, scrubbing city ditches, hauling trash at construction sites, and doing non-stop. He snatches the flyer down with zero hesitation, because back when he was a kid, he did this exact. After reading that giant rats are gobbling up the slimes that keep the sewers clean, he realizes things are about to get brutal, and he decides. He hustles back to the counter and the receptionist nods like, "All right, officially, you've locked in 2 quests, slimes and herbs." The receptionist slides the papers across the desk and warns him loud and clear that that stamp on the form is the only ticket to. Heading straight for the city gates, he follows the signs while the chaos of the capital fades behind him, as he barrels up to the checkpoint while guards hustle through customs forms and shove the long line along like it's non-stop. Right at the front, he busts out a thanks to the guard for all the hard work, then asks straight up if he's cleared to march through the gate, and the guard just smirks, waves him through, because he knows this whole place is basically the Fairest family's backyard anyway. He keeps slipping past the other travelers, eyes razor-sharp as he hunts through the open fields for the clues he needs, until a flash of something in the tall grass snags his attention. He freezes in place and drops down to stare at the ground. He finally spots exactly what he's been hunting for, the most basic medicinal herb around, and it's a perfect first win for his list. While he's out there busy grabbing plants, he spots a slime wobbling nearby, just minding its own business in the grass. Then it catches his attention. And he remembers, these creepy little things mostly munch on trash and dead leaves, so as long as you're not tiny, they're basically harmless. He cautiously scoops up a slime, but the stress practically screams on his face as he tries to grip that wobbly, squirming little monster. It was so obvious he couldn't help imagining it rotting in the drains, turning a nasty sewage shade. He starts stuffing everything away, sliding the little guys into his bag beside the herbs he just gathered, right up until he marches back to the guild, and instantly feels out of place as hulking, big-armored adventurers thunder right past. The second he steps inside, it's wall-to-wall people, and he can't stop himself from staring, because the crowd is absolutely... So he's stuck in line, hearing guys grumble about paperwork, while everyone else is already cheering like they just crushed their runs. Groups are everywhere, roaring with cheers and clashing their drinks together like they just conquered the world and theirs. In the middle of the room, a wild arm wrestling showdown rages on, and everyone's going absolutely nuts. Once he finally slips to the front, he leans in and asks the receptionist if the guild is always this wild. And she bursts into laughter, swears it's absolutely true, and treats the whole chaos like it's just a normal day at the office. The receptionist shrugs and tells him the guild is always this loud, then a hammered drunk nearby slurs, "Did you not?" But she shrugs and admits that learning to live through the chaos is just everyday work for an adventurer. He stares at the handful of coins in his palm, shrugs like the grind doesn't bother him at all, even though it's basically a boring chore job for pocket money, like hunting down slimes and pitching in on a farm. Still, day after day, he's out there mopping floors, and those tiny little chores slowly stack up, until he's about to. He's betting that if he squeezes every last bit out of his own food bill, his younger siblings back home can stretch what. Next morning, the receptionist starts digging into his fresh request, and the regulars clock it instantly. Then one of the big veteran legends claps him on the shoulder and tells the rookie, "Give it your all." He spots the fresh tag around his neck and blurts out that he finally got his official plate, which slaps him with the truth. Even though he can finally take real requests now, he's still stuck staring at the starting line. He stands there staring into the chaos, realizing that every time he fights monsters, he's really gambling with his own life. Then his thoughts hit hard, but he rockets straight into the chaos at the guild board, where everyone is crashing into each other just to snatch a job. People always swear that every adventurer, no matter the quest, has to smash through 3 terrifying and first, it's just regular workers slugging it out at dawn for a shift. Then, second, it's the real monsters they clock out to hunt. And the third enemy, it's their own greed. Those people burn their cash and wonder why they never manage to get ahead. He muscles his way through the crowd and finally, somehow, he gets his hands on a paper for himself, even if it costs him everything. And when he scans the map, it hits him. He picked a dungeon monster hunt, not some easy stroll, and it's got a twist because these dungeon monsters hit different than the ones outside, because when they finally get defeated, their body, instead of a corpse, they leave behind a magic stone, basically a crystal packed with mana, and just when back when everyone was totally lost about how it even worked, the Magic Institute finally cracked the mystery behind it all. People swear dungeons are pure magic, shadow-spawn nightmares shaped from monster echoes, forged in one special pocket of power. And when they use the magic stone as the core, a monster's shadow suddenly comes to life. It's a totally wild process where a shadow is only the monster's copy, and the protagonist suddenly remembers the one crucial truth about them. Alburo, his oldest brother, drilled it into him. There's no real difference between them, their power stays exactly the same, but dungeons are scattered across the Ilva continent, and everyone's whispering about one thing, insane treasure buried deep within. At the Royal Magic Academy, the researchers zeroed in on one thing, how these monsters and their magic stone cores could be made. Then it exploded into once magic stones get carved into real-life gadgets. Lamps, food storage, the works. They're so handy that every wealthy noble and major— But here's the twist. Once the labyrinth's master, the one guarding the treasure at the bottom, gets taken out, the whole until the country's magic stones started drying up every single time a dungeon fell. And the Mage Institute had to fight back by forcing— Even after all that magic, they still couldn't figure out how to drive those monsters out of the labyrinths for good. Dungeon hunting is basically mining with teeth. You dive into wreck monsters, rip out their magic stones, and yeah, it's a relentless grind, and the guild receptionist basically stares in disbelief when the protagonist says he wants to smash his way into a— She stares at his barebones outfit and snaps that his gear is way too light for something that dangerous. And right then, she starts laying it out. She started flailing her hands like crazy, totally panicked, yelling at him to wait and save up for a full set of armor first. But the guy shrugs it off like it's nothing, swears he'll be fine, and the receptionist doesn't push it further, warning him that even a simple quest for a stone tablet could turn deadly the moment things went south. Then she reminds him that told him he's still a rookie and he'd better show up with at least decent gear. He just locks eyes with total confidence and tells her, "Don't worry, I've got a real plan." Later. At the dungeon's pitch-black entrance, a goblin pops up and starts shrieking at the top of its lungs. Then right as the protagonist barrels in, he moves like lightning, then lands one clean, decisive strike and drops the monster into— The blonde protagonist barrels through the dungeon, and with one crushing swing, he splits another goblin clean in half and he finally steals a second to breathe. Sighing hard as those magic stones from the monsters clatter and roll across the— He stares at the loot, and the moment he counts it, his jaw drops. There are dozens of them, and he can't believe how they actually wiped out that whole army. He starts stuffing his bag from the ground up, dropping to his knees on the cold floor and packing it with stones as he wipes the area clean. Right then, another goblin plummets from the ceiling, shrieking like a banshee, and tries to ambush him with a sudden jump. But this guy is way too fast. He locks in, launches a brutal strike straight to the monster's face, and downs it before it can even land a hit. The hit blasts the goblin flying backward, and the protagonist finishes the fight like it's nothing. No sweat, no strain. He snaps his weapon away, tells himself it's time to move, and stares at the last few stones still glowing on the ground. Later. He strides into the purchasing office beside the labyrinth, where a dude is just slumped at the desk. The protagonist strides up to the clerk, says he's here to sell some stuff, and then throws down a massive bag packed to the brim with stones. The clerk squints at the pile and blurts that the loot is a total bonkers mountain of magic stones, way more than a low-ranked guy should ever pull off. While he's stuck doing the paperwork, he suddenly halts and glares at the protagonist's gear, nodding like he's got opinions. Especially, it's way too good for some rookie. He sells him high-quality stuff, and the protagonist just nods like, "Yeah, I hear you." Turns out the gear actually belongs to Alburo, the Ferris family's next takeover guy, so the protagonist is just leasing it under a proper contract while his brother is off on break. Even with money in his pocket, the second he pays the rental and grabs food, there's basically nothing left. But he knows that's the deal for now, staring at that tiny pile of coins while his expenses tower over it. And once he starts picturing how busted gear gets tossed, then hauled back together for a fortune, it hits him. His brother— It was a massive favor, on the shoulders of a big brother, watching over his little sibling from day one as they kicked off their life as an adventurer. The protagonist freezes for a beat, realizing he owes his brother big time for that help. And speaking of everything that's been going down lately, turns out Alburo Nord wasn't just there. He was the one who taught him that exact strategy. Hanging out at the stables, Alburo finds himself thinking, "Come on, Node, please be giving it everything right now." After graduating from the military academy, he knew this whole scheme was basically the go-to move everyone used. For night apprentices to rake in some side cash, because the weak monsters up on the top floors just can't really. He powers through that brutal armor like it's nothing, no doubt in his mind that this node will hold, and that he'll return. So 2 weeks after Nod got bumped up to plate rank, he's still out there grinding his heart out, still not done, and then realizes, they've been slaughtering monsters at a seriously solid pace, so he glances at his newest loot. He feels a bit drained from the non-stop work, but he refuses to let it slow him down, at least not yet. He realizes today is the day his brother's vacation ends, so he's gotta get that armor back by tonight, no excuses. Node can't shake the thought, sure, these monsters might not look like a major threat, but they're brutal enough to mess up a brand new plate rank. He knows the second he drops that armor, his efficiency is going to crash, so he guns it and he's still got the upper hand, so he bursts into the cave and rips through every goblin in his path, like nothing can stop him. He tore forward, hit them clean before any of them even had a chance to react. After the dust settles, Nod stares at the loot in his grasp and realizes just how far he's climbed. Remember how right back at the beginning an ambush showed up, and his body just locked up, unable to fight or move. His swings used to miss everything, he just couldn't nail the distance, so every hit was off. And even when he finally got a hit in, it barely scratched the surface. Nothing changed at all, but now, things are different because he finally stopped flinching and started feeling the armor like it belonged to him. Node realizes he can finally read the monster's moves, so he knows exactly how to dodge it and wipe out an entire group in one go. Nod snatches a breath in the middle of the cave, sitting still as his mind races, everything's shifting and he rockets right back into the fight, smashing down with a brutal strike that hits way harder than before. Nod's shocked, his body feels weightless, his eyes slice cleanly through the dark, and power rockets through him like it's surging to the surface. He stares back at those brutal days when he'd wrestle with monster patterns, scratching his head over how they moved and what he was even supposed to do. But after enough battles, something clicks every single time. You feel yourself leveling up, and right now, that's exactly where he stands. Selling out with that high-end armor was the plan to get some cash, but the real goal was way bigger. He was pushing himself to. Truth is, these artificial dungeons pay way less than the natural ones, and it's mostly magic stones get used for everything, so they're always swarming the market. And if you've got them, you can cash them in for a pretty damn good. But here's the twist. In these fake dungeons, the government snaps up the stones for pennies to lock in a monopoly, and if you even try selling, so the adventurers grind, risk everything to hunt these stones. But the cash basically vanishes straight. The truth is, the Adventurers Guild doesn't really profit from those fake dungeon jobs, sure. Everyone, but here's the catch, these missions won't give you the contribution points you need to climb ranks. Most adventurers are desperate to climb from newbie to the crystal tier, because once you rank up, the pay skyrockets, the perks get. Hunting monsters out in the wild is usually the smarter play. Boom, you rake in completion bonuses, and the loot you drag back sells for way more. The Node already knew the score, yet he still took that low-paying dungeon request. Like, what was he thinking? But here's the twist, he wasn't chasing the magic stones at all. His real goal was far more brutal, learn real combat and somehow survive it. And trust me, this wasn't his first rodeo with a blade either. Because in the Ferris family, every son gets put through sword drills from the moment they're little. Nod wasn't just lucky, he had an actual gift, and with his dad, his 2 older brothers, and the family guards all drilling him, his skills shot up. Even without ever stepping foot in a military academy, folks swore he was already as good as a real soldier. Maybe even. But the veterans who'd lived through real bloodshed and war had stories for days, warning him, pushing him to stay. Node still hears that warning loud and clear. Being great with a sword is one battle, but being deadly in war is. And only real skill shows when you've actually survived a proper fight. So Node keeps listening as the warning drags on. So if he ever forgets that he could wipe out one guy, Then boom, he's next on the chopping block. Strolling through the city, Node realizes it all paid off. He got legit combat experience, he stayed unscathed, and he even saved a ton of money, so he barrels straight to the blacksmith's guild, where that big sign hangs above the door like a warning. The second he steps in, this huge, bearded dude behind the counter roars a loud welcome and asks, straight up, what he's searching for. Nod shoves a note into his hands and demands a full set of armor plus a brand new edge for his sword. And the smith stares like the guy fires back, asking if Node is an adventurer and what rank he's got. Then Node admits he's been stuck as a plate for about 2 weeks. The smith snaps, hold on just a second, and rushes to the back to grab something. He pulls out a set of hard leather armor and tells you it's been soaked in a special agent, made tough enough to actually take the hits and defend for real. The blacksmith points out that even leather armor can't stop a metal blade, and then he fires off, so you're a trainee, Node. And why aren't you? Node can't help thinking, this guy isn't just listening, he's zeroing in on exactly what his customers need. And for a heartbeat, he weighs the idea of getting chainmail. He knows his dad and brother are already grabbing the family sets, and there's no way he can shell out for a brand new one right now, so he tells the smith he's got none, and the guy just nods like, got it, then shows him how the leather armor is built to hold a protective plate right in the chest. Sliding a wooden plate in there turns it into a nightmare for any blade. Good luck trying to pierce through. The smith admits chainmail costs a fortune, but tells Node that if you want real safety, you go all in on the protection for your head and chest. Then Node challenges him, asking if he tells everyone that if the plate is too thick, it'll crack anyway and throw off his movement. So he layered the leather on purpose, trapping any wood splinters so they can't stab in. He argues that an iron plate would crush it for defense and soak up every hit. Then he snaps his hand in a gesture and goes, yeah, but the real problem is the price. Next, Node swings the sword like he's proving a point, saying it's been hammered with over 2 weeks of hard use, and he's dead serious about getting it polished the right. The smith asks what the grand total would be if they toss in one more item, and Node shoots back that the sharpening already crushes his budget at the max. He decides to stop overthinking and just pushes forward, telling the guy to do it that way, because this is not the moment to hesitate. The smith grabs his attention and tells him straight, when you're an adventurer, survival is everything, so if you've got to burn your cash to keep your life intact, that's the smart. And when the smith says the leather armor will fit in no time, he warns the sword will take a few days, so he turns to Node and asks if he wants to grab both at once. The guy pauses for a beat, wondering if Node would rather just suit up right there in the shop the moment everything's finally ready. A few days slam by and Nod shows up to snatch his gear, sword in hand, armor finally locked in place, looking ready to go. Staring at his shiny new setup, he finally clicks. His next big move is getting real chainmail. It's built from metal rings, and that price tag hits hard because it takes way too much precision to make. He swore that defense had to come first, no matter what it cost, because even if he swaps out his other gear later, he'll still be able to. He glances over his notes and drills the quest meeting spot into his mind. Node dashes straight to the plaza before the castle gate and spots the exact spot where the quest meets. He closes in on a girl in a hat as she studies a map, and when she whips around, she asks if he's another adventurer here to snag the gathering job, so she shoves him in the right direction, points him to the registration area and tells him, show your guild card over there and we'll get you. The ride out in that carriage is pure nightmare, packed so tight it's suffocating, and this one guy snaps at Node to move because his gear keeps ramming into him, while another Node scans the crowd and spots their armor is paper thin, but he shuts down that judgment fast, because it's just a gathering quest, right? And the work is pretty simple. He takes the guild's request to head out and harvest medicinal herbs, but these aren't any ordinary weeds. These are top-tier plants, and they're growing more or less half a day's journey from the capital. And since these ingredients are perfect for brewing potions, and they're in season right now, the Alchemy Guild blasted out a massive request for them. They get paid with a solid base reward, then cash on top for every find, because the monsters really do turn up at the site, which means. So yeah, one trip won't cover that pricey chainmail, but give him a few days of grinding and he'll still come home with solid profit in his pocket. Nod has to follow the rules, so he packs his own stuff, saved food, herb bags, and the basics like a lantern, because out there he needs everything since the carriage rattles and jostles him through a brutal, bumpy ride. Yet it somehow snaps him into focus on the job. The squad finally rolls up to a giant open field by the mountains, and when they pile out, the guide raises up a sample and tells the whole crowd to snatch one, because the moment the explanation ends, they're getting to work. Node slips into the woods alone to kick off the search, and before long right before he spots strange markings on the ground that instantly snag his attention. He slowly inches around the thick tree trunk, peeking for a clear look to make sure he's in the right spot, and then he finally spotted the exact plant he'd been hunting, staring him down from right inside the brush. He drops to his knees, replaying his training in his head, because the medicine worth fighting for lives in the leaves and stems, and he knows he swings in a clean cut, knowing that this harvest keeps the herb alive and lets it regrow before he sprints off to track down the next. Nod just stands there, replaying all those herb runs by the capital like they finally paid off, and he thinks, yeah, he should jot down. He cracks back into work by the trees, locked in on the plants, until a tiny monster suddenly bursts from the bushes and lunges straight. By the time the sun starts sliding down, he's already crushed through the entire first day's delivery, and tells himself it's smart to get. So he bolts out to the nearby brush, yanking a huge pile of firewood back before anything can stop him. Out there he spots wild mushrooms, and his stomach flips because he wishes he knew which ones were safe to eat, knowing one wrong bite and then it hits him. If he can forage his own meals, he'll slash his food costs fast, so he mentally promises himself. Eventually, he charges to the water's edge and checks the scene for himself. He takes a gamble on his luck and cobbles together a simple fishing rod, just a wooden stick and some string. The plan actually works, so he grabs the fish he caught, guts them on the spot, and lines them up on skewers for the grill, but still he can't cook without a flame, so he hurries to the next guy nearby and asks to borrow some fire. Luckily, the dude's totally cool with it, so Node shoots him a thanks. The fish Node finally got tossed onto the roaring campfire. Now it's sizzling like crazy, filling the air with an amazing smell, and the other guy hands over some of his fire like a thank you gift. Node, caught off guard, stammers an apology for the hassle, but he doesn't waste a second. He tears into that fish with one massive bite. Under a sky full of stars, he lounges with the other adventurers, amazed that every bite tastes louder and better than anything he's ever had, way better than. And with that, the first night of the gathering mission finally winds down, just like the clock hits the end. The other guy shoves a steaming hot bowl into his hands to go with dinner, and still. Nod flashes him a thankful nod, then digs in, while the guy points out that yeah, the season's warm, but the forest muzzles the wind, so it's not that brutal. He says his dad warned him the open plains would have been 1,000 times worse, and that's even as Nod leans back, totally relaxed and warm. He can't help thinking, honestly, by day 3, Nod stumbles on the forest entrance. Everything edible is already stripped bare. But if he pushes deeper, Nod scans the whole area and realizes he doesn't even need to hunt, because herbs are everywhere. And he's flying through it, until a weird sound from the deep brush slams the brakes on him cold. He freezes, stares into the shadows, and whispers, asks. He stops and listens hard. Then the sound keeps roaring louder and dread kicks in as he starts thinking, wait, is someone close by? Which doesn't add up to him at all, because around here the monsters are basically just wild animals. So he's getting impatient. It hits him hard, whoever's out there is fighting for their life, and he can't just sit back and watch. So he blurts that they need to go even. He keeps snapping himself back to reality. No reckless money grabs, not when his family back home is waiting, but even if he's not training to be a knight anymore, the idea of abandoning other adventurers to die still crushes him. So he's rushing through the trees. He finally spots them, because a vicious pack of goblins has a group backed into a clearing, but the adventurers are utterly spent, barely staying upright, lungs burning, while the monsters surge in for the kill. Noah doesn't hesitate for a second. He lunges straight into the chaos with his sword already drawn, plants himself right in front of the black-haired guy, snaps his head in disbelief, yells that the reinforcements are here, then pauses because he can finally see their salvation. The red-haired girl leans in, demanding, "Are you for real?" as she fights to pin a goblin down with her dagger. But then another guy in the crew bursts in yelling thanks, and swings down with a solid hit that drops one of the monsters. Realizing this might be their only shot at living, the whole crew huddles up fast and snaps back into full fighting stance. Nod locks in on the fight, and when he sees it, he realizes these goblins are seriously stronger fighters than the ones from the labyrinth. Even then, he refuses to let it shake him, because deep down he knows this, no matter how skilled they are. And then it clicks, his new gear is legit, because it shrugs off a wooden spear like it's nothing at all. The black-haired guy clocked Node's kit too, eyeing that armor and saying it looks brutal to move in with barely any coverage. Node just lets out a vague hum, while the rest of the wiped-out rookies crumple down and gasp for air, desperate to catch. He just stands there staring them down, until someone finally snaps his name and drags his attention. The guy Node finally gulped in some air, thanked him for the save, introduced himself as a genius, and then asked for Node's name. Nod spots Genius bleeding from his ear, lunges forward, and asks if he's okay because he looks completely smashed. The genius just waves it off, saying that thanks to Node, he only got a few minor cuts instead of something way worse. Then he turns to Node and tells him he introduces the girl in their crew, Rise, calling her the party's priest, and she looks so utterly drained, like the fight just crushed every bit of. The genius straight up admits they'd all be dead if she hadn't held them together, and everyone just nods along, realizing how brutal everything they've survived really is. Short-haired and bandage-wrapped over her nose, the girl blurts out her name, Shino, and with a grateful nod to Node, she thanks him for the assist. As the group moved on, the other girl shot a glance at her friend Almana, and you could practically see the relief pouring off her. Because everyone really, even the huge guy in the back, Jagos, gets called out and the whole crew fires off loud thanks because he held the line when it mattered. Rise finally steels herself, steps up to Node and tells him her name. Then she quickly checks on him, asks if he's hurt, and offers to use her magic. Node shoots her a quick thank you, and the crazy part, he's totally fine, he didn't get hit once. That's when Genius freaks. Rise's looked like she was one breath from dropping, her face blazing red, soaked in sweat, and trembling at that strange. A genius snatches her before she hits the ground, blurting her name as panic lights up his face. And he presses in like he's terrified to see how she's really. But Rises just flashes a shaky smile, tells him she's fine, and admits she pushed her magic a little too far. Genius clocks her at a glance, then snaps to the rest of the crew that they're finished for today, because that switch is already spent, and the rest of the party doesn't even bicker, everyone else just shrugs it off and admits, yeah, we've hit our limit too. At the campsite, the whole crew starts packing their gear right away, and everyone hits the same conclusion. It's finally time to head back home. As they push deeper into the camp, the other adventurers clock the battered look on them and swarm them with one burning question. What happened? Nodepool sets his genius aside and fires one question. Exactly how many monsters did they take? And when Genius says there are around 50 goblins, Node's jaw drops. He blurts the number again and again like he can't believe his own ears. Before Genius even gets a compliment for surviving a fight like that, he just stares back, wiped out and barely standing. Genius breaks down how he fought back in the forest, until the monster horde swallowed him whole and there was no way he could win. Much later, Shino admits that because they couldn't slip away, they got trapped battling right there in the plaza. And she's even unsure they would. Right when the campsite crew spots them rolling back in, one guy cracks a joke, speak of the devil, as they step through. Node tosses ingredients into the soup and tells Genius he has to eat a real meal, because he's probably drained of blood. That's when Genius gets that smug look. She flashes a confident thumbs up and basically tells everyone, just get out of the kitchen, I've got this. She drops that her family actually owns an inn, then grins and promises to feed everyone properly, with an insanely delicious thank you meal. But before she starts, she pings Genius to make sure they're cool with her going all in on their supplies, and he straight up tells her, go for it. Genius leans toward Node and says, you're in for a treat, because Shino isn't just a ninja, she's a seriously skilled cook. Shino dives into food prep, slicing meat like a pro and firing up a huge pot of soup until it's all finally ready. Storming off the whole party at last, they finally dropped into a seat, dug into the hot food, and came back looking totally recharged as they ate side by side. Genius says all those goblins swarming their nest means it's gotta be packed with something huge, and Almana's like, even if there's, which makes Shino finally confess she'd been so stressed earlier she couldn't even think straight. While Genius snaps at Node as he's hunched over his notebook, Genius blurts that tomorrow is their last day out here, then turns to Node and asks if he's in, willing to hunt down the goblin nest with them. Nod starts panicking because today's chaos stole his time. He only managed about 60% of the herbs he needs, and now he's stuck wondering if he can really afford to take the day off. He can't stop thinking hunting goblins isn't even in his paid contract. Still, the thought of digging up real coins hidden. Everyone knows these creatures stuff their dark little dens with random treasure and stolen goods they hoard like trophies. Node springs to his feet and tells the whole group, "I've made my choice." He mutters to himself that real adventure is worth more than anything, then tells the party he's coming along. And finally, he gets to meet them face to face. The Genius is jacked up and slings an arm around Node, grinning like, "I'm just as hyped for this." Leaving the entire crew buzzing for morning, Almana grinned that Node is worth 100 men, and Jago fired back that an adventurer's morning is locked in. Genius insists they leave the second the sun rises. No what-ifs or degrees needed, because he's convinced they can just grab. So the next day the crew strides into the woods, adrenaline high and hunting spirits soaring. As they head down the road, Nod keeps tallying his herbs, thinking every 10 of these is worth a copper coin, while Shino just tries to stay locked. Everything's cruising along, until Almanis suddenly throws up his hand and shouts for everyone to freeze where they stand making. She snaps them to a standstill, then tells the whole group, "Wait a second and stay quiet." Genius glances over and asks if she's got the first watch, but she doesn't even blink. She's already spotted something lurking in the brush. She spots a goblin scout ahead, snaps her bow full draw and locks in a perfect shot as she knocks the next breath, releases the arrow, and it lands dead center, dropping the creature before it can even make a sound. With the coast cleared, they creep toward the cave entrance, ducking low as they slide into the pitch-black tunnel. Node pauses by the entrance to check something, and Almana snaps around to ask, "What did you find? Did something happen?" Node pops the container open to see what they've got, then tells Almana it's mostly food and supplies, so he just stood there, staring at the box like it crushed his hopes, and he demanded to know if this tiny haul was really the best they could scrape together. He and Shino start spiraling into full-on stress, and Node drops the bomb that this whole trip could flop, because the herb. Shino raises up a chunk of fur she found, then grimaces and admits it's so torn. Noah just stares at her and tells her straight up that the other guys at the party don't care about that kind of small-time stuff. He shouts to everyone, demanding they snap into focus as they push deeper into the cave. And they finally burst into a massive clearing, where a whole pack of goblins huddles together in the dark. Noad locks his gaze forward, face set in stone, and tells the group in a low voice that they finally found them. Genius steps forward and lays it out. They're sending the front line to slam into action in the second almanac, and the moment it opens, the fires her very. He tells Jay to launch the attack while Rise stays behind to patch up anyone who gets hurt, and the whole crew braces and gets ready. Node throws the signal, everyone surges out at once, and the goblins immediately fall apart, screaming as the groups slams into their lines. Node charges first with a massive shout, and the goblins instantly freeze, terrified beyond words, one of them. Genius crashes straight in with a brutal jump, takes one massive hit to the face, then unleashes heavy strikes that send goblins flying back, and right when you think it's. While Jay barrels forward with raw brute force, smashing everything in his way, Almana and Rises stay locked on the front line from a safe distance. The whole fight wraps up fast, and the guys are left standing over a pile of crushed monsters. Almona's smiling because the danger's finally gone, but then she dashes over to Nod, begging to know if they scored any gold or treasure from that chest. Nod's face drops, which sends Shino spiraling, demanding to know if there's even a single coin to spare. Node shrugs maybe, and Genius slams in the final push, tipping the whole thing over. Finally, you get it, this is what they're really up against. Shino's buzzing as everything bursts into view, and Genius yanks out a sword to inspect the quality. But Node leans in for a closer look, and his eyes widen because the pile is basically just copper coins stacked up. Almona whirls back to check whether anything got tucked away inside, while Jago just slumps there, dead tired, and somehow still doesn't say a word. Someone yells that they've found a silver coin, and the hype hits so hard it's going to make the whole crowd melt because... Back at camp, someone leans in and asks how the whole trip went, and the guys admit there wasn't much worth taking, because yeah. All they had to handle were goblins, and even then the real prize was simple, snagging those herbs. Rises blurts out that she's just relieved everyone's safe, and Genius nods along, and they dive into grabbing some food. But Genius starts grumbling about the brutal wagon ride waiting for them come morning, and Jago just shrugs like, yeah, it's what it is. Noad stays completely silent, just watching his brand new friends kick back and unwind by the fire after that brutal long day. He stares at his cut of the loot, and once they're done splitting everything up, it's basically worse than herb gathering, and he doesn't even get to finish his thought. He shrugs it off, a grin curling on his face as he thinks, guess I'll be fine even without that huge payday. Meeting this crew made it all worth it. Once they finish their meal, they're locked in, ready to crash straight into whatever comes next, and way past the woods, the sun blasts down on the huge royal buildings of the capital. Node heads straight for the guild notice board, chasing the latest jobs, and just as Genius points him in, he finds him there and they talk. Node strides up with his paperwork to the front counter, then the lady behind the desk suddenly screams, congrats, and she tells him finally the points are in, he's earned that promotion, fully eligible to climb up to the second rank. So the receptionist leans in and asks if he's ready to grab that special promotion quest right now. And Node pauses, thinking hard because nailing gemstone class is huge. Now he can finally take on escort jobs that pay way better than not just chasing tiny targets. Most of these missions mean guarding caravans or escorting big-shot travelers, all under hard. And if that route has a reputation for eating people alive, clients don't gamble. They hunt down top-rank fighters who have already survived those months and don't think the guild plays it safe by accident. Nobody below gemstone class even gets a shot at a bodyguard contract. By the end of the day, it all boils down to one thing: strength, pure and simple. And if you're an adventurer trying to climb higher, it's the only rule that matters. The guild makes them prove it with a brutal special test. If they can clear a quest that's a whole rank above them, they earn the promotion on the spot. The guild's manual spells out the whole system. People storm in with their problems, slap them on the desk, and the guild turns those issues into real quests for adventurers. Sure, the pay for these social missions isn't amazing, but the contribution points are massive, and that's why they're the perfect fuel for rank-up tests. Nod leans in and asks the receptionist what promo jobs are open for him right now, and she's thrown off by his wild energy. Then she snaps back and tears into the official logs to find the perfect match. She flips through the pages at top speed until she snags the exact entry, then tells him this is the only promotion request right now that's been approved for someone at his level. So, then she shoves a sheet into his hands. Scribbled on it is a mean, scarred wolf with one huge cut over its eye, and this is a subjugation quest. The target is a beast called the Rock Wolf. Out in the eastern mountains, these wolves roam like normal wolves, but they're wrapped in natural armor. Young pups only get a few plates, while the pack's alpha is nearly sealed inside a brutal, hard shell. Nod starts replaying every scrap of intel he's hauled in, just from kicking back at the taverns with the big-name adventurers, watching veterans pound drinks and brag for hours, and now he's finally figured. Those guys weren't yapping for nothing. They spilled the whole truth on how the wolves vanish in the mountains, and warned him that their armor is so brutal that most attacks just smack and bounce right off. Node's been hoarding a giant notebook packed with everything. monster weak spots, secret maps, herb cures, and even weird little food recipes he's stumbled across. Staring at the quest sheet right beside his own scribbles, Nod finally clocks why the guild chose this monster for the test. This isn't a free win at all, but he knows exactly what he's walking into. Because unlike goblins who just swarm you in chaos, wolves hunt as a team, coordinating every hit like a pack plan, and suddenly the fight turns into a whole new nightmare. Nod finally gets a real taste of that power when a rock wolf rams his shield, and the truth hits him. He finally sees exactly what he's up against. And it's honestly wild. These aren't normal armors at all, they're made of fur. And as time drags on, the tips of the hair tangle up and start to harden. And the older they get, that gray coat keeps piling on until it's not fur anymore. It's like solid stone wrapped around them. So once a wolf is fully grown, its hide is basically bulletproof. Most regular swords can't even scratch it, which means this time it won't be some repeat of his old hunts. Back then he'd just toughen up his gear and wipe out goblins or boars with zero sweat. But this is a whole different nightmare. This time he's staring down an enemy who matches him blow for blow. Because fighting stone-hard armor instead of thin plates is a whole different nightmare, and he can feel it closing in. Node snaps his notes shut, reminding himself, this isn't just armor, they hunt in squads too. He's sure he's got this, but he knows he can't afford to play it sloppy. One slip and they'll shove him way beyond his limit, especially since he's been crunching the numbers on his skills and gear, and after how he wiped out those goblins, he's pretty sure he can take on 10 wolves at once. And that's the catch, packs usually kick off at 10 and can soar to 100. And the latest reports claim there's a huge wave of them out there right now. Reports say a massive pack of rock wolves has piled onto the cliffs. And Node realizes that with 30 of them closing in, getting surrounded means certain death, so the guild receptionist leans in and asks if there's any other adventurer at his level he can team up with. And Node just freezes, eyes locked on the paper, knowing. Yeah, the situation's brutal. She tells me all these local parties got bumped up to stone rank at once. And that means all the easy promo requests are already wiped off the board. Node sighs, just realized this deadly wolf hunt is all that's left. And it doesn't help that the genius team isn't there to back him up. He keeps replaying how their coordination had been getting sharp lately, but the other guys he knows are slammed with work too. This adventure Node saved his path, and now he's headed out on a long grind trip to score better armor, He storms out, leaving the receptionist hanging, then pauses to scan his notes one last time, while she demands to know what he's about to do. He starts doubting if he's really on the same level as the rest, then forces himself to stop spiraling. Just wait for everyone to come back so they can team up and decides to skip the wolf quest entirely. He tells her to hand him a job he can actually handle solo for now. 3 days later, Nod slumps at the table with his head in his hands, completely shattered by how everything has turned out. Noad slumps there with his head in his hands, wiped out to the bone, like, do they really have to go hunt those rock wolves right now or what? Then a voice from behind calls out, asking if they're running low on money. No, it's just standing there with his back turned, and he fires the question at Alec. What does that even mean? Alec leans over his desk, visibly shaken, scanning the records like they might vanish any second. He starts laying out the whole situation again, even though he knows Nod already gets it. Then he bluntly tells him the Ferris family's money troubles are getting really, really ugly. And then drops the real problem. They're bleeding money, spending far more than they're pulling in. Alec points out that Node has been getting younger siblings left and right just in the last few years. And since they're still little, their food bills haven't crushed anyone yet. Even with 6 kids under 6, the everyday grind keeps stacking up until the bill turns monstrous. And No just rubs his chin, admitting Alec's probably dead on. Alec adds, Lilia's already 13. And suddenly everyone has to start worrying about the tuition for the Noble Academy where their mother and sister once studied, which suddenly makes everything click for Node as the weight of it hits him hard, and he finally realizes the pressure. He stares at his own hand, then admits the truth. If he heads for the military academy, their household finances are doomed. Node flashes Alec a gentle smile and tells him, it's okay, but Alec just stares back, like the whole weight of the moment is crushing his chest. Right now, they're still barely staying afloat thanks to the wages rolling in from Alburo, and the extra cash Johan sends back after he marries into yet another family. And get this, Hannah's even out there serving as a maid in another house, just to keep the family afloat, and that's only which Alec makes painfully clear is the only thing keeping them barely alive, especially with everything Node keeps dropping on them. But even that isn't the worst part, because there's still a massive problem staring them in the face. He drops a bombshell. They've got to scrape together a massive pile of cash by the middle of next month, no excuses, none. He stood there with his head in his hands, then it hit him right on cue, the debt deadline dropped. Alec stares at the empty coin pouch and mutters, I'm sorry, because he squeezed every last hope out of the numbers and still came up short. Up to now, the Ferris family has kept their heads above water by grabbing one loan after another. The second the cash runs dry. And sure, it's pretty common for noble families to drown in debt. At least most of them still own real land, so they can just wait for harvest season and pay everything back. The Ferris family is stuck with nothing but a thin pension and an old house. No land, no real money, just broke survival. Besides a few relatives, the only person who ever handed them money without hunting for repayment was one of Albert's friends. And he stares at his hands, and you can still feel that crushing debt hanging over them like a curse. Things are dire. Every single thing in the house has already been pawned more than once. So that escape route is gone and they've got nothing left. All that was left in their home were the family swords and armor. But they can't just toss those gear away. Because if it's gone, the Ferris family's warrior line doesn't just weaken, it ends, and that's huge because the kings of succession always stake everything on their own direct military muscle the moment things turn bad. In their world, your rank is judged by how close you live to the capital. So yeah, the Ferris family isn't just doing well. They're living in prime territory, and that's a huge honor. They're stationed even nearer than the top ministers and counts, because this warrior house has served the crown for generations. Node knows that if they ever hand over their weapons, they'd be helpless when the time hits, and the whole family would get wiped out. Yeah, there are other ways to grab the money, but going to loan sharks or shady nobles is a trap, and it always slams shut into tragedy. Johan knows he can't just march in and demand help anytime he feels like it, especially now that he's basically just the son-in-law in his new family. He's terrified that if they see him as some lord who can't even balance the books, they'll turn him into a useless figurehead, or cut him off entirely, kill the marriage, and leave it at that, which would trap him in ugly choices, ghosting his wages or grabbing bribes, so the family name would get smeared across the dirt. Staring at his tag, Node realizes something wild. Adventurers practically gamble their lives every day, yet the pay's so solid that even a newbie can snap up a full set of gear in no time. As the plan clicks into place, Node whips around to Alec and demands the exact number they need. So Alec slams his hand into his desk, yanks out the ledgers, and shows him the document where every exact amount is written in ink. Node glances at the total and grins. Like, yeah, he can pull it off if he really puts in the grind. Then he swears he'll figure out a way. Alec slumps like he's been through the ringer, wipes the sweat off his forehead, and grinds through the stress like it won't let him breathe. It's been chaos for ages. Alec keeps everything from spiraling out, because Node was just a kid back then, swinging those wooden swords while everyone else already lost their cool. Node finally pauses, really lets it sink in, and realizes he's been dumping a huge weight on Alec and the entire staff the whole time. Noah hunches over with his hands on his head, and the moment he hears Alex is coming to him for money, he realizes the family is in absolute disaster. That crushing weight slams into him, and he realizes one thing: staying at his current rank will take forever to earn the money they need. So he amps himself up thinking, if I can take out that rock wolf and finally climb to stone rank, then I'll stack up enough jobs to pull it off before it's too late. But that spark doesn't last. He slams face first onto the bar table, utterly wiped out, and admits to himself that his whole plan was probably just a fantasy. He slumps there at the counter like a wreck when bam, someone in white leg armor strides right up behind him. Someone calls his name and Noad slowly turns his head over his shoulder, bafflement all over his face, just to spot. See Shino standing there, flashing a confident smile as she leans down from beside his stool to look him right in the face. She leans over the clothes, presses close, asks what's been making him groan for so long, then offers to step in and help. Shino presses him again, eyes narrowing as she catches him mumbling to himself for way too long. She just stands there looking badass in her gear, waiting to find out what kind of mess Node dragged himself into this time. Shino snaps her head over in pure shock, while Nodo just sits there looking utterly lost. Like, why is she hovering? And then the moment drags on. Then the bartender leans in from behind the counter and tells Node straight up, with everyone else gone on jobs, he's the only one left here. Shino tells him that his non-stop mumbling was so loud it couldn't be ignored. Then Node finally snaps to it, realizing his stress had been screaming at everyone. She orders that same drink again, sits tight and doesn't move, until he finally caves, slams out an apology, and admits he's been carrying some brutal stuff. Shino lends in way too close, invading his space as she demands he finally say what's really eating at him. She thinks a short talk might shake things up, so Node finally drops the truth. He's got to rake in a huge amount of money by next month. He tells you he's got to reach gemstone rank ASAP, and the only way there is brutal hunting. He's going after a rock wolf. Node points out that he's the only adventurer at his rank who can even handle this job. Then boom, Shino's eyes lock on him. He finally admits he can't track down a party, and that monster is way too brutal to face solo. So now he's stuck, grinding his brain for a real plan. Shino scans the request paper, then gives a firm nod. Because yeah, Node is absolutely trapped in a brutal mess. Elsa leans in with pure fire, grilling them about what this Rockwolf is really like, whether there's even a plan and then. But Node just looks dead tired, muttering that the info he got definitely didn't come cheap. Elsa shrugs it off and says she's game for a good idea. So Node slides the documents over and demands her take. The two of them pause for a quiet moment, scanning the papers like they're hunting clues, trying to wrap their heads around every last detail and finally, Elsa snaps and admits that taking this thing down alone is basically impossible, something Node already knows way too well. She goes still for a heartbeat, locks eyes with him, then blurts out his name like she already knows the answer. Node suddenly panics. He realizes he's been yapping this whole time without even saying his own name. So he flashes her this massive grin and tells her, "I'm Node Ferris," then adds, "Nice to meet you officially." She grins and tells him, "I'm Elsa Chronicle." Then she opens her mouth to spill something else. They clasp hands and seal their deal, turning a handshake into a brand new partnership. Elsa locks eyes with him, then asks straight up if he wants to team up with her, because she'll be the one catching him. She catches him completely off guard. She claims she's a stone plate rank just like him and says she only needs a few more. She demands more quests to earn the promotion, then shoots back that if they team up, they'll slam through those jobs in record time, so they can hunt the Rock Wolf together. And Node has no choice, she has to admit she's right. The second he does, doubt crashes in, and he realizes how terrifying it is to be out there alone, especially because the deadliest danger in a solo fight is getting jumped from behind. And that thought never stops haunting you. No matter how hard he trains, his human eyes won't budge. His vision is locked at 180 degrees and he knows it. Trying to catch enemies in his blind spots for backup is fine, but it'll never be enough to actually seal the deal. In a real fight where one slip gets you killed, you can't afford guesswork. You've got to trust your eyes and spot every tiny detail. His muscles twitch for the strike, but if he's always on edge about a back attack, his focus snaps and his aim slips fast. His footing starts to slip. He's been using the terrain to dodge getting flanked, but it only buys him so much time, and now the pressure is finally crushing in. Elsa says teaming up flips the whole game, because they can back each other up and keep the pressure blazing with even more attacks. So it all comes down to this, which is, being alone is the worst. Because with two of them, if one gets poisoned, knocked out, or about to drop, the other can jump in and save them as long as they're still standing there. Node locks eyes with her and demands, "Can I really count on you to have my back?" And Elsa flashes him a confident smile, tells him perfect. And you can practically see the excitement surging through her now that he's finally on board. Agreeing to the plan, she drags him toward the quest board, swearing that real-world practice is the only way to. She flips through the papers, grabs the one she wants and fires off. "So what do you think about this?" Trying to figure out exactly how they both fight. Node heads out to take down a giant frog, then eyes the Slate class request and decides it's a perfect pick for their very first mission. Yeah, these things are. Massive toads pop up everywhere, growing as huge as an ox, then swarming and multiplying like crazy the moment spring hits. And because they'll chew up basically anything, they turn into a nightmare for anyone unlucky enough to live nearby. So it doesn't take long before everything gets out of control. Don't think it's just crop damage. These things gulp down livestock whole, and they even hunt kids in villages with no walls, so the whole place stays on edge, begging for adventurers to stop them. The great frog is pure trouble. Its tongue cracks like a whip, and that slimy skin keeps getting it under your guard like it's out to ruin. It's brutally hard to land a clean hit. Nod still remembers his first fight, and how him and his old crew struggled just to pull it off. He checks with Elsa to confirm they've found the right village, and he's ready to take it down. And she confirms there's a massive outbreak at the local spring. Node can't help but feel for the villagers, because whatever's getting into the water is. A giant frog barges in out of nowhere. When it croaks, the sound hits like a thunderclap, and it goes on from there right after that nightmare begins. Then they keep surfacing, one after another, along the riverbank and right in the water like they're everywhere, and it won't stop. And the second the monsters start piling in, the whole place erupts, loud, wild, and chaotic, as Node takes. He glances over and spots more than 20 of them crouched in the brush. And just as they close in, Elsa stops him cold for a second. Node asks what's going on, and she admits she wants to be the one to step in and make that proposal. She pushes in first and starts the fight, because this whole team-up was her idea, and now she's determined to prove her worth by showing him, point by point, exactly what she can do. Nod straight up asks Elsa if she's ever fought a giant frog before, but she waves it off like it's nothing, still cutting him off mid-sentence, telling him she'll be totally fine because she's way stronger than she looks. Then she steps up and then he rockets straight through them, shredding every last one. Node's left completely stunned at how insanely good he is. I can barely follow her as she rockets around, chopping every frog she sees with zero effort. Wood watches her swing and realizes her brutal aggression is the exact opposite of his careful defense. She's basically a living, burning through the battlefield. Before he can even lift a hand, Elsa stands over the last one, eyes full of regret, and apologizes for. She's determined to take them all down on her own, and she spins back to him with a wicked grin, daring him. So is he finally convinced she's that strong? Once the path was cleared, the two of them dropped their gear into packs and tore off through the forest, heading back the way they came. A few days later, they're off again, this time to hunt forest wolves, and Node can't help but think it's a smart move. Elsa says it's a decent way to get some practice, but then she laughs, because these aren't even enemies at all, they're that easy. Node just gives a quick nod, boom, it's official. And the Node and Elsa party is finally real. They trudge the long haul to the kingdom's eastern mountains, dragging their little gear cart behind them. Node tilted his head at those towering, lifeless cliffs and couldn't wrap his mind around it. How in the world anything could survive out here? Elsa explains that these heights are the monster's secret home base, and they only drop down to the plains when hunger hits. She points out that staying right here in this nasty spot is actually the smartest move, because it keeps them one step ahead of anyone hunting them. Even worse predators. At least that's what Node swears some drunken fool told him once. He grunts as he heaves the final heavy bag onto the pile, then shoots Elsa a look like, "Tell me that's everything." That little handcart rattles and groans under the crushing load of their supplies, wobbling like it's one more step away from snapping in half. Node Sky's wishing they had the cash to hire a real carriage, but he already knows it. No way, they're too broke for that. Elsa doesn't even flinch at the budget. She slams her spear into the ground and demands, "All right, are you ready to do this?" Two things are what make a rock wolf truly different from the forest wolves you're used to. Just look at it, those wolves' fur has turned into this brutal hard shell, so they've got way more defense than any normal wolf could ever dream of. Next, here's the biggest twist: how they hunt. Their mountain home feels safe, but food is basically non-existent, so they've got to scramble all the way down those cliffs just to grab a meal. And that drags their whole efficiency way behind the other monsters. So they broke into tight little squads and fanned out like hunters, stalking across the land to flush out their prey. Their packs are way smaller than forest wolves, usually only 5 to 10 members huddling together. But because they're fully armored, their odds shoot through the roof, so the guild finally treats them like a real threat. Node yells for ELSA the instant the first one charges, eyes locked on the pack's motion as everything erupts into chaos. The real problem is their game plan. Those squad leaders stay back in Howell to pull in a whole load of backup, so Elsa storms right at the snarling leader, calling out whether that's the one they've got to take down first. Nod surges forward and hammers his spear straight through the rock wolf's defenses, smashing it to bits as it all comes crashing. Elsa scans the area to make sure no more wolves are charging in, then she asks, "Are you ready to start carving?" Node yanks out his knife and goes to work, carving through that brutal hide and stone plates with ruthless precision until, just when he finally rips that giant pelt off and grabs a breather, he looks over, and there's Elsa, already way ahead. He glances at her while she keeps working, and it hits him. She's tearing through this way faster than he ever could. He kept his guard up, stunned that the fight was this easy, and he didn't even have to use the tear gas he'd brought along. Elsa keeps tallying every kill, and Node can't stop staring. Same age, yet her skills are on another level. On another level, he knows he'd never thread those tiny armor gaps, yet she lands every vital shot like it's effortless. Node just let out a small laugh, because now he could finally see it clearly. The two of them weren't just close in skill, they were worlds apart. Wrapping up the job, he couldn't stop thinking how insanely lucky he was to be teamed up with someone that good. The next morning crashes in, and Elsa's already feeling the strain of the trip. Because if this hunt stays this ridiculously easy, they've clearly packed way too much gear, and Node just shrugs it off with a laugh and admits she's probably right about them packing way too much. But when he looks closer, there are way more wolves circling than he ever expected. Yet El's precise, clean kills keep every pelt perfectly intact. These rock wolf hides are top-tier armor material. People will pay a fortune for them. And that's when Node realizes they've got more than enough cash to pay Alec back. No sweat at all. The two of them slam their massive packs on, keep rolling through the rocky hills and scour every inch, hunting down the next pack they're going to hit. By the end of the 4th day, Node returns to camp, crouches over the numbers and counts up their haul, already 25 wolves down. Which proves his gut instinct was right. The guild's request form totally lowballed how many monsters were really roaming around here. Elsa blurts out that they didn't even get into a single scrap all day, and now she's sure they'll smash through the job and wrap it up in just a few more days. But on the 5th day, everything flips. Howling erupts across the mountain as that massive pack finally traps them in a corner. Nod gritted his teeth as everything spiraled downhill, muttering curses under his breath and desperately trying to keep his footing against the wolves are crashing in from every side, Elsa screams that where they're standing is pure disaster. They're seconds from getting fully surrounded, so Nod realizes he got played, plain and simple. He can't stop kicking himself for dropping his guard just because the hunt felt way too easy, but when I look back, there was always a nagging feeling this could blow up and go sideways just like it did. It's happened a bunch of times before. Monsters pour out in numbers way bigger than what the guild even bothers reporting. And then, it just keeps happening with no end in sight. Joe should have remembered those warnings from the veteran adventurers at the guild, because now he's paying for forgetting. He jerks out of the trance, locks onto the plan and tells Elsa, now use that exact move we talked about, while he snatches his gear and yells over the growling, demanding to know if she's ready to bolt. Elsa locks in, tells him she's ready, and braces as the wolves explode in from every direction, lunging at them from all sides. Node fires the signal, and they both explode forward like a bullet, sprinting straight through the thick of the pack, hunting for the perfect opening. Elsa shrieks for Node as the wolf tackles him and sinks its teeth in, and Node just grunts through the pain, apologizing for the slip-up while the two of them stay back to back, and that's when it hits. Everything starts turning way more dangerous. Elle's eyes bulge with raw fear. She screams at Node to brace himself, and he whips around, totally blindsided by what's about to hit. A colossal shadow crashes over them, and Elsa blurts that this is officially the absolute worst. There's no dashing out of it, no way out for them. Totally agrees, then an armored wolf stomps in, towering over the whole pack, its thick plates clamping over its body like a suit of iron. Node cranes his neck at the giant beast and starts spilling everything he knows about these monsters, because it's a top-tier specimen, one that just keeps getting tougher with age, until its skin turns as hard as metal, and that's exactly why everyone calls them. Node flipped through his notes and laughed. He'd basically said armored wolves are ridiculously rare, and he'd even joked that hunting one would be an amazing idea. To spend time with a pretty girl, even though the books swear these things are only for top-rank adventurers, and that grizzled old guild guy told him, don't worry, these sightings are so rare it's almost unheard of. Node just watches the beast tower over them and spits out a curse at that old drunk for being so wildly wrong. Nod looms over the crushed pack, muttering that this is just his luck, because of course it always is. As he stared down from the cliffs and saw even more of them stacking up below, he couldn't help but wonder, how the hell did it get this bad? A feral wolf rockets toward him with a brutal snarl, and he yanks himself toward a backup plan he swore he'd never touch. The whole area detonates in one massive explosion, flames and choking smoke ripping through the pack like. Elsa stares at the charred wreck and snaps that it's a total waste. Those pelts usually fetch a fortune. The last wolves burst into flames, scramble to flee, but the damage is already done, so it all ends with nothing left. Node stood in the choking smoke as reality hit. Burning them was the only way through that armor, even if it meant ruining the loot. That's the real deal about being a high-rank adventurer. Pick the right tactics, then know exactly when to dodge a head-on fight. Promotion quests throw these wolves at you as a test, because if you're truly ready, they're controllable, and ELSA stares down at the Node, telling him to drop the burnt fur already, because his life mattered way more than some ruined pelts. Elsa demanded, be honest, were you really confident you could win being trapped like this? While she definitely wasn't, and Node just blurted out a shaky, nervous yes. Node confesses he splurged on that crazy expensive oil just so he could get home alive, but the moment he sees the price tag, his brain short-circuits. Then Elsa shrugs and says, desperate times demand desperate measures. Turns out that oil burns like a dream. Those wolves are wearing armor smeared with natural grease, and once it hits the fire, it just erupts. So Node tries to see the bright side. He tells himself the promotion and the chance to make a friend like Elsa make every penny feel worth it. For one breath, the whole world goes silent as Elsa yells his name, both of them just standing there, frozen in place while Nod stares forward like a hunter. She tells her that she already knows exactly what's coming next. Just as the flaming wolves start snarling and snapping, their jaws look way deadlier than they ever did before. The entire pack slams forward in one wild rush, and Node yells that it's time to move right as Elsa shoots back. I'm right behind you. Node snatches the first one out of the air, then hacks straight through the monster as it lunges at him, but even as Elsa drives another blade in, the pack barrels forward too fast, until one of them catches Node slipping and slams him backward. Nod's teeth grind in pure agony. This monster's grip clamps down like a vice, and he's hanging on by a thread while Elsa screams, begging him to say he's okay, but the wolf barrels forward with its insane assault, and there isn't a single second to answer. And Node snaps to it that even with his chainmail stopping the blade, the beast can still seize him. So he's left with nothing but a terrifying choice to deal with the next move. Frozen in place, they watch as the massive wolf roars so hard it rattles the whole forest, and both of them just stand there. The flaming monster rockets through the air straight for Node's head. He slams into the dirt and barely throws his shield up in time, just to keep that beast from ripping his throat out. Node lets out a guttural scream and shoves at the snarling face. Its teeth are only inches from his eyes and then Elsa blasts in out of nowhere, slams the wolf with a huge swing and lands the hit right on the side of its head. And as she sends it back, she snaps into action, warning Node that this isn't finished. Node steadies his breath and tells her with real emotion that she truly saved him in that moment. They both stare as the monster scrambles back to its feet. Elsa blurts that they nailed it with a heavy blow, but the truth is, it's too damn tough to stay down. Node stares at the battered beast and snaps, "It's almost over, finish this right now." He barrels in with his shield raised, screaming that it won't get to pull that same trick on him again. The monster's legs tremble so hard it can barely stay upright. Elsa wastes zero time. She surges forward and swings her weapon to end it for good. The wolf finally collapses, and Nod and Elsa drop to the ground, completely wiped out. Later, Node drops to the ground and starts clawing into the dirt, swearing he'll bury the bodies so they don't rot. Elsa is completely stunned by the count, blurting that she can't believe Node actually wiped out 8 of those things. While Node's already locked on the prize, praying the guild hands them a fat bonus. She's still fuming, muttering that the guild botched the count and she's ready to storm in and complain, until she spots Node buried in something else and demands to know what he's doing. Nod glances over his shoulder, clutching a hammer, and blurts that he's mining for ore because every bit of cash they burned just to get ready for this trip demands payback. He lifts a bright, shiny chunk of rock and basically screams, "Snatch up anything you can, we have to cover our costs before the guild carriage rolls in to haul us home." Node spots something buried in the dirt and screams, and that snap of sound hits Elsa. He realizes, wait, he actually found exactly what I wanted. She asks if the thing he found is some medicinal herb. But then she looks at it and realizes it's just there for show, like he's completely over the whole herb idea. Soon that carriage ride spirals into a full-blown nightmare. Elsa rants about how cramped the ride home is, while Node just slumps there looking utterly drained. Nod forces a grin, clinging to their loot like it'll save them. But Elsa is hanging on by a thread in the back of the wagon. 4 days later, Elsa barrels into the Adventurers Guild, pure rage blazing in her eyes. The receptionist starts shaking as Elsa presses, demanding to know why they were shoved into a monster battle far bigger than the report promised. She keeps on insisting it's basically a death sentence to match their rank against a monster that's strong, and the poor receptionist can only drop a bow, spill out apologies, while Nod and his old crew keep their distance as the blast tears the air apart. And in the end, it all works out. Elsa pulls out a massive bag of gold and brags after shaking it free from the guild as a sweet bonus. Nod tells Elsa that her blow-up at the guild was exactly what he'd expected. Then Elsa smirks and fires back that it was him who was truly scary in there. Node starts tallying their cash and grins. Add these rock wolf pelts in, and we're still sitting pretty even after we pay for the traps. So Elsa hangs there, clearly embarrassed, but Node isn't finished talking yet because the next part is coming. The two of them just got promoted to cobblestone rank adventurers, sitting there clutching their gold while the official notice stamped the moment into history. While they stare at their shiny new rank tags, Elsa snaps out loud to steal his attention. Then Node glances over and asks, "So what's on your mind?" She leans in and asks if he'll sell her his cut of the armored wolf parts, hitting him with the reminder that the loot and the reward are meant to be split 50-50. She says the wolf materials are the final pieces to lock down, because so much of everything else got scorched during the fight. There's only enough left to forge one set of armor. Elsa keeps hammering her point, insisting that if they build gear out of those exact parts, their future jobs will get so much easier. And she calls out the truth. Nod needs the money while she's chasing the equipment, and then she smirks, asking if their goals don't line up perfectly. Node's all in on the deal, grinning that it'd be a pleasure, and the two of them clink their mugs together like they're sealing a brand new partnership. Nod barrels back to the estate and yells for Alec. He's finally back from his latest job. Alec shows up immediately, hits him with a perfectly formal welcome home, like. Node shoves a heavy bag of gold into Alec's hands, says the agreed amount is inside, and warns him to double-check it. Alex insists he's got it, then hurries in after them like everything's gonna be fine, just to be safe, following right behind as they. Node waves him off, mumbling that he's totally wiped and is heading off to get some sleep, leaving him. Alex stood frozen, clutching the bag, staring at the cash. Then he dropped his voice and whispered Noah's name like it hurt, clearly feeling like the whole world was stacked on his shoulders. 2 months have passed since that insane battle with the rock wolf, and somehow life is back to normal. Nod slumps over on a stool, wiped out after the hunt, and Elsa stares at him like, was that really worth all that just for leather armor? And Noah doesn't even bother fighting it. He straight up admits he was already starting to feel that his current gear just wasn't cutting it anymore. He locks in, tells her she's right to the core, and makes it clear. Yeah, it's upgrade time, no questions. Elsa takes a bite of her food, and meanwhile Node just stares at her fresh setup, realizing that rocking armor and wolf gear has to feel amazing. It's apparently as tough as metal but way lighter, so he can't help but admit he's been craving a set like it. Elsa pops up, striking a proud pose to show off her brand new look, while Node just stands there, totally drained, like his last ounce of energy got erased. She slaps her drink back on the table and demands to know his real plan. No games, just answers, hinting that he'd better whip his gear into shape now, because if he wants to be ready for his next promotion request, time is running out. Nod slams his hand on the table and says he's gotta save cash and dodge the shops. So Elsa snaps back that the smartest play is to get the materials himself. For an adventurer, getting new gear basically comes down to just two paths. You've either got two choices: grab it off the shelf as is, or dive into a full custom order and make it from scratch. Custom stuff usually costs a fortune, but if you bring the materials yourself, they'll make it for free, and you'll pocket a huge amount of money. Node leans in, points at it, and asks her if that's exactly how she forged her armor using the materials they brought in together. Elsa swoops in to check the progress and demands to know how the work's going, and the blacksmith just smirks, saying he's got it handled. He said it was basically the same stuff as rock wolf armor, so putting it together barely cost anything extra. Later, over drinks at the bar, Node blurts out that he wants to forge scale armor, and Elsa's totally thrown, because she's sure that kind of armor is usually made of metal. She asks if he's planning to dig himself up, and Node immediately snaps back. No way is he doing that. He's not just asking for armor. He's hunting for a suit of scale mail that's literally stitched together from real animal scales. He knows the second people hear that word, they instantly imagine some top-tier gear forged from legendary dragon scales. Yeah, sure, wyvern or that sub-dragon gear is technically scale armor, but what he's plotting, it's on a whole different beast. Elsa doesn't look like she's buying a word of the technical talk. She just barrels in, shouting for another round of ale. She drops an order for nuts onto the tab, while the bartender promises they're on the way. Then she lets Node finish his thought. Turns out the armor he's planning to forge doesn't come from some unstoppable beasts. It's built using materials ripped straight from way weaker monsters, just to keep the whole plan clean and simple. Node tells everyone, grind up fish or reptile scales and you've got gear that hits as hard as metal, plus it's cheap, so your armor keeps going way longer. The bartender sets their drinks and a bowl of snacks down, but Node won't let the moment die. He keeps the conversation rolling anyway. Elsa just slams her ale back, and Node realizes she's totally checked out while he tries to tell her about learning gear specs from the old blacksmith. She thrusts her hand out and demands to know what his point is, and Node just glares at her for a beat before. Before she flashes that smirk, she tells him, if you've really got this all mapped out, then you already know exactly what materials we're hunting for. Node flashes a grin, says of course, and yanks out a reference book to show her every detail. He flipped to that exact page, and told her they had to hunt down the 5 main things they needed to find. This list goes wild, from waterfish scales and venomous snake skin to rare great serpent parts and even fish dragon scales. Elsa scans the requirements and admits it, sure, the fish and snakes are easy, but everything else is going to be a brutal, miserable headache. Nod crosses his arms and gives the nod. He's sure the real nightmare is going to be taking on the great serpent. Nod thinks about the great serpent, and realizes that one single creature from the deep marsh is more dangerous than an entire pack of rock wolves. They slither right along the dirt and somehow, despite being massive, you're almost never able to spot them. Elsa snaps that fighting in a swamp with zero visibility and rotten footing is basically a death trap, because if they don't have a real pro scout, Node is gonna get swallowed by the mud and faceplint so hard he's done for. But Node wouldn't budge. He snapped that ordinary scales are no better than his, so he's gotta have those exact top-tier skills to nail his new plating. Elsa locks eyes with him and says she knows he's trying to cut corners, then demands to know why he won't just grab some real armor from the shop. Even if it's not flawless, it's still more than enough for the crystal rank gigs they're pulling off. She says it's crystal clear. Buying the gear is way faster than risking everything on a hunt, and even though No knows she's right, he just can't force himself to do it. Mostly because the moment he looks at the good stuff, he realizes he'd need 3 times their current budget just to even touch it. Elsa tells him to keep that option tucked at the back of his mind, while she drains her drink, leaving No. He's trapped in a brutal choice. Either find a way to triple his money, or gamble his life against the Great Serpent. Note is just chilling, then bam, someone spots him and yells his name out loud. It's Zinnius. He strides up with this big grin, all excited to see him again, then goes, "It's been a minute," and immediately asks if Noah's been off on some crazy long mission lately. Zinnius leans in and admits it. He's the one who vanished, and he's only just finished a brutal long-term hunt-and-gather job out past the Western Kingdom. He spins around and demands why Node is stranded all alone today, because that's not something you ever usually see from him. Zinnius shrugs it off with a laugh, claiming his crew's on a 2-week break while everyone's busy sorting out their own men. They say Lisa's camped at the capital's temple right now, training like a priestess with one goal: leveling up her healing magic as fast as she can. Because her training was going to swallow an entire month, the rest of the party ditched the schedule and declared it a vacation, at least for now. Jago is spending his time off in a whole new way. He's vanishing into the wilderness to drill his spear skills like never before, while Lumina raced back home because her brother's wedding was coming, and she couldn't miss it. Nod leans in and asks if everyone in the group comes from the same hometown, and Zinnius grins and says his memory is razor sharp because they've been best friends since they were kids. Nod demands where Shino is, and Zinnius tells him Shino's gone, off on vacation in the royal capital. Zinnius says he heard Node is out here working nonstop every single day, and then he bluntly asks if the guy is even getting enough sleep. They say this kind of work fries your brain, so most people end up taking way more time off. Node looks absolutely drained, admitting there's no time to coast. He can't afford to take it easy right now. He instantly clocks it, the same worried look Elsa flashed at him the other day, while Zinnius admits he's only bringing it up because he's genuinely concerned. Deep down, Nod knows he wouldn't be burning himself out if the family actually had a little money to spare. Node claims he's barely scraping by on the bare minimum sleep to stay alive, then flips everything and fires back, asking what Zinnius does when he's not around. Zinnius tells everyone he's heading out to sharpen his sword skills, but regular drills are a snooze fest. So he's craving a real quest, and that's when he finally spots Nod. Nod fires off, "What are you hunting?" And Zinnius drops the truth. He's hunting for something out in the marshlands. He kicks back with his drink, then slips up, confessing he'd been quietly hunting for a way to tag along with the other party for the trip. Node tells Zinnius, "Since you're headed to the marsh anyway, you've got business there too, so tell me, are you really just hunting for armor materials?" With Shino on their team, he's basically saying, "Don't worry. Those giant snakes won't get the drop on us while we're out there." Node cuts straight to the chase and fires off, "So what are you really hunting for, Zinnius?" And you can tell that question completely blindsides him. Zinnius suddenly turns awkward, staring at his drink like it holds the answer, scrambling to find the right words to explain himself. He finally cracks and admits he's hunting a crystal flower, one rare pink, then ducks his head like he's embarrassed he even said it out loud. A crystal flower blooms there, so stunning and strange it looks exactly like a rose carved out of glass, standing alone in the brush like it owns the whole place. Most of them are blue blooms that sprout right around the royal capital, and they're named for one creepy detail: their petals and stems are totally see-through. The marsh-grown versions are special because they almost never blush pink, only during that one specific time of year. There's a really famous legend tied to these flowers, born in a far-off land, and it somehow traveled all the way to Hamel. They say one daring adventurer fell head over heels for a noble woman, but society's rules snapped down on their love like iron chains. They say a nobody adventurer can only win a noble lady's heart with one thing: a crystal flower, shining with the quiet meaning of simple affection. But in the story, the flower he found wasn't that usual blue at all. It blazed with a glowing, vibrant pink light. When she realized that color was supposed to be impossible, she refused to let fate win. She chased her love anyway. And somehow, they made it through until they finally got married. Look, the blue one says, "I like you," but the pink one screams, "I'll love you forever," and trust me, that's a massive deal. Nod leans over Zinnius' shoulder with a huge grin, teasing him, "So you're really about to confess your feelings to Lysis, huh?" And Zinnius just stares down and nods, then his face erupts bright red and No instantly goes, "Yeah, I'm definitely helping my buddy out." Nodes couldn't believe they weren't already a couple, because the two of them were glued together 24/7, and even he could feel the chemistry buzzing in the air. Zinnius strides over to Kago and Shino to grill them about the trip, while Nod grins and darts off to track down Elsa and drag her onto the team. After Note spills every detail about the whole love mess, he turns to Elsa and asks what she thinks, only to see her frozen on the spot, blushing hard, with stars practically shining in her eyes. She says she's been craving a story just like this forever, and now she's itching to race straight into the swamp and hunt down that flower. Zinnius smiles at Elsa, says he's already heard plenty about her from Node, and insists it's finally amazing to meet her, while Shino lunges in with a splash, waving at the group's newest member and firing off an intro with pure unstoppable. And when Shino asks where Jago's is, Zinnius flips through the paperwork, says the other quests were already snatched up, so it's just the 4 of them today. Elsa tilts her head up and demands to know what kind of work they're really booked for on this trip. Licinius lays it all out, This is just gathering and collecting viper glands since there aren't any big snakes to fear, while Shino shouts for everyone to pack their repellent. The crew hustles 2 wagons full and ready, then they roll out of the city center for the start of their journey, They push deeper into the marshlands, where the trails squeeze narrow and the bright morning sun sparkles off the water through the trees. Wagons rumble through the tall grass as they near the site, and Node drops into the back to haul and lock down the supplies. Elsa keeps watching Node at work, and she can't help it. She's seriously impressed by how low-key and easy he is, because she totally expected him to be way more of a gloomy mess. But Shino just reclines and tells them they're lucky it's autumn, because she's heard this place turns into a total nightmare when the summer heat crashes in. Zinnius starts rambling about his summer out west, swears it was honestly pretty awesome, then pivots and asks how everyone else spent their break. Node grins and says they filled their time chasing prey through those cool forests and mountains, but Shino can't stop thinking, taking a swamp quest in that heat would have been absolute hell. The crew hits the marsh's edge and Shino shoots her hand up to signal the go-ahead. I've got the front, you all cover the back. And the whole group surges forward. The 4 of them fanned out through the tall grass to start collecting, all crouched low and locked in, choosing the perfect plants for their mission. Node spots it at the exact second. A massive snake bursts from the brush and rockets toward Shino, straight as she whips around to see it coming. Shino doesn't even blink. She whips around and smashes a brutal kick straight into the snake's head, and the impact blasts the monster back like it's stunned. They slam the snake down fast and snap right back to the mission. Shino wastes 0 time, then bolts up front to keep scouting the area. Sheena flashes a grin over her shoulder and says that with a dedicated scout, all of this gets a whole lot easier. Then she adds humbly that it's really just part of his job. Zinnius jumps in, telling Nod they've been cruising for way longer because of him, and that praise hits Shino right in the chest, because she proudly says she's genuinely honored. The road ahead is streaked with clear markings. Mud doesn't hide anything here, so the Node points out that the tracks are practically screaming this way, and the rest of the job is about to feel like a piece of cake. Nod flat out says Shino's seriously incredible, and Elsa jumps in like, I swear, I wish we had a scout on our own team. Nod starts weighing whether he should help Zinnius, and right when the guys crash into Crystal rank, Shino's already a lieutenant, so with too many frontliners, the backline's about to turn into a total disaster. Climbing to Iron rank might force them to recruit more people, but Node cuts himself off mid-sentence the second he spots something strange on the ground. He spots something off in the grass, freezes, and then he finally sees it. His stomach drops because he knows something is seriously wrong. Right in the middle of those giant flowers, the whole group slams to a stop and just stares up at a massive thread dangling overhead. Nod snaps into panic, screams for everyone to watch out, and then a giant snake with massive fangs rockets toward them head-on. Elsa says it's absolutely enormous, so big it looms over all 4 of them like it's nothing at all. The snake whips its head down with insane force, blasting the ground they were just standing on into total rubble. Nod can't believe how brutally strong this monster is, but he stays on high alert as the dust finally starts to settle. He snaps at the others to keep clear of its mouth, because one bite and that thing will lunge in, clamp you in its grip, wrap its body around you, and that's the end. No waste 0 time. He surges forward with his sword already drawn, slashing to close the distance as he and Elsa launch a perfectly timed 1-2, their blades scream through the air at insane speed. No stopping it, not even for. Node clenches his teeth, pours every ounce of strength into a brutal swing, and smashes his attack straight into the snake's thick scales. The monster lashes out, those massive jaws fling wide to crush him whole. Yet Node twists out at the last second, barely scraping past disaster and making the sheer scale of this thing hit like a punch. While Node keeps it busy, the whole crew barrels in, Elsa leading the charge and smashing a brutal hit right into its neck. Elsa shrieks for Genius to fire his shot and he snaps back, everyone get back, as he barrels forward, taking control of the moment. And Genius unleashes a devastating final strike. Boom, sending the snake's head flying back and shutting the fight down for good. Now that the danger's vanished, the crew finally exhales, someone blurts, we're finally done, and another grins, all right, time to start carving up that snake. Nod looms over the monster on the ground, finally admitting the brutal truth. After getting blindsided by that ambush, he had absolutely no clue how any of this would play out. He stares at the huge fangs sprawled on the ground, and you can tell he's genuinely shaken, like, what if even one of them hadn't showed up to help? Nod tries to wave it off and insists that monster was just absurdly fast, but Shino's guilt still claws at her, and she rushes to apologize for missing that sneak attack. Later, Node watches Shino working the carcass and blurts out whether she really learned butchery techniques to begin with. The genius just smirks at the whole scene like, see, this is all the proof you need, look how far we've come lately. The group pushes out across a field packed with white flowers, and for one heartbeat, they just stop to drink in the view. Node yells at Genius to look. Then Elsa and the crew wait in the grass, holding their breath for what's coming. Genius leans over the flowers, gives a soft nod, and straight up agrees with every word the other Node says. He grabs one of the crystal-like flowers, holds it up for all to see, and blurts out a heartfelt thank you. Later, over at the tavern, Node raved that Shino's snake dish was ridiculously good, and Elsa smiled and said camping always makes her feel fully alive. Nod snaps his gaze to the door and mutters, "Speak of the devil," clocking those familiar faces as they come pouring in and just like that, the entire rookie crew rolls in as one, smiling like they've been waiting for this moment all along. Node clocks that Genius is finally done with his mission too, and the two friends steal a quick, hard-earned moment together. He checks the list and boom, everything for the Node-scale armor finally clicks into place. The serpent parts are cleared, the venom snake pieces are done, and they've got the rest next. So all that's left is hunting water fish and sea drake scales. Nod scans his notes and, you know those water fish, ocean monsters that are basically pure trouble, and seeing one go wild is enough to make your skin crawl. These monsters are about the size of a kid, all wrapped in brutal scales with teeth like saw blades, total meat-eaters, and getting jumped by them out at sea is almost always a death sentence. But inside the tavern, everyone's going on and on about how insanely good the food tastes. Someone swears the meat is thick, rich, and packed with flavor, while Elsa sits there staring off, completely lost in her own food daydream. Node points out that since it's fishing season, the southern ports should be slammed with work, and he pushes for them to go right away, so the others wonder if they're heading down there as guards. This job's a total hotspot. Once that hook sinks in, the fish freak out and the whole place goes wild. The pay's nothing crazy, but scoring extra catch for dinner, that's what makes everybody love it. Node thinks this whole plan sounds rock solid, and even Elsa looks like she's totally on board too. Even though she looks totally lost about the catching part, she just laughs it off and tells her, "Yep, this is exactly what we're doing." Nod gets all fired up and declares they can go water fish fishing too, then rants that these fish are monsters, so strong and pull so ferociously that it's become a super popular hobby for everyone. Their massive bodies yank so hard it feels like the anglers are getting hauled under, and Noah just laughs like getting bitten is the whole point, until Elsa snaps and tells him to stop. She shoves him back and snaps, "I get it, you're obsessed with fishing, but those fish aren't the issue." Then she leans in and demands, "So what's your plan for the ichthyosaur?" No. Node just steamrolls her and blurts the super technical side of fishing is only just beginning, while Elsa slams him with a huge stop sign, trying to shut him down again and again. Turns out ichthyosaurs are technically classified as fish, not sub-dragons, because yeah, they're massive enough to make you rethink what sea monster even means. They're whale-sized and strike like real dragons, and because they'll sink anything smaller than a big ship, the guild only lets copperink adventurers go after them. Elsa blurts out that they're way too weak to face a monster like that right now, then she pitches a quick fix. What if we just armor up with metal? But no. But Node is 100% sure he can pull it off. He claims that high-rank monster scales will boost the armor's defense way past anything else. Elsa blurts out how he's even supposed to get the materials, and the Node just smirks that he'll fish it up. That answer instantly cranks up Elsa's panic, because now she's stuck wondering how he'll possibly kill the thing once it's hooked. Node's face goes dead serious as he tells her, straight up, that they're really out there fishing for octopus, while Elsa just stands frozen, totally over this whole conversation. Elsa looks totally lost and blurts octopus again, but Node doesn't even blink. He just asks if she's ever heard of a box octopus before. It's this huge aquatic monster, about the size of a grown man, but don't panic, it's not truly scary. He says even a jade-rank adventurer can drop one pretty easily. Up close, that monster looks downright creepy, but the real headline is the meat. Locals can't stop arguing about it because it's so stretchy, so it mostly stays a niche delicacy for true food obsessives. No matter what they taste like, anglers are hooked on catching them either for quests or pure hobby thrills. Node flips to the info in his book and Elsa leans in close, still wearing that uncertain "are we sure about this" look. They got that name for one reason. The box they haul everywhere. It's their home and their personal armor in one smart setup. Turns out they rip all kinds of nasty scrap straight off the seabed to forge those shells. Node blurts it out loud, wondering if they just grab the basics like pebbles or seashells they stumble across. Or maybe it's even some ancient fish bones they dig up from the ocean floor. Still, that's not what truly matters here. Nod tells you these octopuses even scoop up human treasures from old shipwrecks, coins and silver candlesticks, and then laughs it off with the wild claim that some have been spotted hauling real gold bars too. Elsa snaps and screams that the gold bars are acting way too excited, like they're hotter than she was a second ago. Node bursts into laughter and points out that she's only suddenly all in because payday's here. Then he grins and tells her the truth. One last, jaw-dropping treasure is waiting for them at the bottom of the sea. Nod's face hardens as he raises a finger and tells Elsa the real prize is ichthyosaur scales. She jolts so hard she might pop right out of her skin, demanding to know if a box octopus can really tote something that priceless, while Node stays ice calm and keeps reading. He leans in and tells this wild secret. These fish dragons shed their scales, and when the flakes slip into fishing nets or gear, they can snag up bad. Yet some lucky low-ranked anglers swear they found them tucked away inside an octopus's den. Elsa's eyes flash with pure greed, and she flat out says the monster is a walking treasure chest. Node snaps his book shut with a grin and says, "Man, moments like this is exactly why you live the adventurer life." Since everybody's calling it the treasure octopus, he tells Elsa, "We're going out right now before it slips away." Next, they hook up with a merchant who's thrilled to have them with him. Node even confirms, "We're ready." Then they gear up for the escort job to Port Els, a harbor town sitting down south. The merchant says the carriage is already packed to the brim, so Node might have to squeeze everything in, but Node just laughs it off like it's nothing. Turns out tight was an understatement. Everyone's crammed together with two other guys and a mountain of luggage, all packed in so hard it's basically chaos. One of the guys asks if they're also adventurers hunting for a ride, and Elsa just stares at him, completely baffled. Then demands, "How'd you figure that out?" Node tells everyone the main roads stay safe thanks to those steady patrols, and most folks still just toss a little coin at cheap adventurers to fill the seats. The whole crew just crammed into that dark, rattling carriage, stuck in the cramped shadows while the road jolts them back and forth. Nod glances over and spots Elsa completely wiped out, then blurts, "Are you dying from boredom or what?" He tells her straight up that boredom is the real villain, the kind of enemy that can actually beat you when you least expect it. And Elsa has no choice but to admit he's right. Finally, they reach Port Els. Nod leans over and squints at the waves. That's the ocean, no doubt. But Els only stares out at the water, completely silent. They charge into the guild, and Node clocks the clever stone build made to shrug off the sea breeze, while Elsa is too busy inhaling the food like it's pure magic. They scan the board and spot ship escort gigs and beast hunt requests. Then Node leans in and asks what she's after, only to zero in on the perfect post. He tells her it's a request from the Fishery Guild. Join a boat crew and help them haul in some water fish. The note makes it clear this gig is all about fishing and then throwing down, so they sprint to the harbor to get the details. And Elsa is already geared up to move. They stride through the loud port town, where vendors yell non-stop about their imported liquor, pawing for customers at every turn. They weave through the market as a vendor bellows about a legendary blade from the east. Another guy swoops in to sell Elsa a hair ornament, but Node just shrugs and keeps talking about how packed the street is. They finally lock onto the right building and burst inside. Node can't even breathe through the shock. The energy in the air is screaming right before. Guess the salty sea air is messing with everyone, because as soon as he checks in with the guild about the quest, it hits something feels off. The receptionist breaks the news that there'll be crew on a boat, then slams them with a warning about a nasty quota. Node clocks that the pay hinges on the catch, then shoots a question. So is there a way to snag those fish scales? She tells him they can grab anything that's over the quota, plus every other monster they manage to catch, so no. Not a single Node is wowed by that quick answer, but she tells you adventurers pester her about it non-stop. Before they even realize it, the two of them are already out on the open sea, engines roaring and ready to dive in and get to work. Node rushes in to check on Elsa, because she's looking way too nervous for comfort. She blurts that she's never fished a single day, panicking like, "How do I even get the bait on the hook?" Node just stands there watching her scramble, then tells her she's doing just fine, so one of the crew hauls them in and lays down the rules. Every single catch has to get dumped into the right tank, and while he talks, Elsa's shivering hard, bringing up how brutal the cold is out on the water because yeah, the water is freezing. Absolutely freezing. He tells her don't worry, insisting their magic tools will keep everything fresh, then he blurts, "We're almost at the spot." And under a blazing clear sky, a massive wooden ship slices through the waves at full speed, until it finally barrels straight into the fishing grounds. It doesn't take long before one of the sailors snaps, pointing at whatever he's seeing like he's lost his mind. Elsa reels in this massive water fish like it's nothing. Noah's jaw drops as he blurts, "Wait, you just called yourself a total beginner. How are you this good?" The whole crew is frozen in shock because they just realized both of them are straight-up naturals at this. As Node stays deadly calm, Elsa keeps ripping monsters out of the ocean, one brutal grab after another. And when they stack up that mountain of fish, a sailor can't help but ask, "Are you guys sure you're not secretly full-time fishermen?" Node just drops his gaze and blurts out an apology, swallowing the panic after he caused that whole mess. One sailor is totally unraveling. He's screaming that the fish tank is already packed to the brim, then blurts out, "So what am I supposed to do next?" The guy's in total shock, because he's never ever seen something like this happen before. He starts roaring across the deck, demanding the captain come deal with this mess. The captain doesn't even glance back. He snaps at the crew to grab another spot and start fishing somewhere else. The sailors scramble like their lives depend on it, stunned by how fast they filled the first tank and terrified the next one will roar over the top just as quickly. Node leans back, finally done playing games, and decides it's time to stop messing around and start going straight for his real target. He dives into his gear, yanks out the wild boar fat he brought just for this moment, and then so he flings the bait deep into the water. And right away, a gigantic tentacle rockets up and clamps down like a trap. Nod suddenly feels the brutal tug on his rod, and he knows, right then, that the monster he'd been waiting for has finally arrived. Nod feels that brutal weight slam into his line, but he keeps his nerve, telling himself he's only testing the waters. He braces on the deck as the creature yanks at him, grinding out "stay calm" in his own head so panic never takes the wheel. He clenches his teeth and throws every ounce of strength into it, leaning back so hard the rod is nearly doubling over. Strain tightens on his face as a voice on the ship screams, "Tell me, are you really hooked onto something huge?" Suddenly the water erupts like a bomb, the crew screams in panic, and somehow he actually hauled in a treasure octopus. Node muscles the gigantic beast out of the ocean, hauls it over his head and slams it onto the deck. He and Elsa stare down the giant beast until the truth hits. Its armor is a weird stone-like shell built to protect it. The story jumps back to solid ground. There are the horses, just waiting, ready to kick off the next leg of their journey. Elsa stretches out and gushes about how insanely fun the fishing was, and Node admits, yeah, he low-key wishes they could have stayed out there a little longer. She even brings up the captain wanted him to stay for a few more days. But Node shoots that down, he's done with fishing for now. So Elsa bursts into laughter as they head out. The captain tells Nod, "Hit me up for another request sometime if you're down." And Nod can tell the guy means it, like seriously. Later, Nod finally gets a good look at the scales he harvested, and his breath catches at just how massive they are. He spots the tree ring patterns and realizes they're stamped from a beast that's been around forever, which means they're exactly what he needs to forge the new armor. He and Elsa hurry back into town, slide up to the workshop, and reach out to grab the door handle. They stride in the instant the bell rings, and the blacksmith snaps his head up from his forge, wondering who's barging in this time. The blacksmith asks back for more. So the Node slams the massive bag onto the counter and blurts that these are the exact materials they'd been talking about. But that's not even the best part. Node yanks out some special rocks and drops them right on the ground, leaving the blacksmith staring, totally baffled for a second. The craftsman snatches it up, studies every detail in a blink, and instantly spots the stones as top-tier emerald ore. He snaps on his eyepiece, zooms in for a closer look, and tells Node there's more than enough here to craft a complete weapon set for a single person. Node can't even wrap his head around how lucky this is. Elsa cuts in, reminding him that since she handed him the ore, next time he better help her get her own weapon forged. She tells him she'll need some serious monster materials, and that's when Node starts freaking out, because now he's trying to figure out just how insane this hunt is about to get. The blacksmith leans in, snaps his gaze to the blade on Nod's hip and demands to see it. Nod freezes for a split second, then forces a yes and starts reaching down to yank the blade free. Then the craftsman lifts it to the light and basically says, "We should reinforce this. We've got the materials after all." But no, he doesn't just stand there. He's frozen in pure disbelief. Yet the blacksmith doesn't even clock his reaction and keeps on working right through it. He runs his fingers over the metal, taps the blade and says, "I spotted this last time when I sharpened it." Then he grins because the sword is built so cleanly you can tell the smith was a total pro. Even if the steel is nothing special, he still cracks a joke like, "Yeah, we're not quite on your level." And that's when Node's mind snaps back to the moment. When he was still just a kid, he swears he remembers staring up at his dad, eyes wide, and asking, "Is it really true that I can finally?" He finally got his own gear. His father basically told him, "It's about time you had your own sword." And the kid got left standing there. Clutching a tiny bag of coins, he felt his dad's hand slam onto his shoulder and heard, "Pick your own weapon. Because choosing your gear is half the job," and Nod shot him a serious nod back. But when he stared down at the 3 tiny coins in his palm, he suddenly knew choosing the right sword was going to be a whole problem. Yeah, with that budget, it's pretty much impossible, and he trudged off feeling crushed, realizing his family was even poorer than he'd ever imagined. Staring at the coins Node, he realizes, at this pace he's probably trapped with nothing but. He smuggles in some bargain bin junk, maybe even a practice blade stitched by some rookie, then strides into the shop anyway and yells that he's hunting for a sword that catches the blacksmith is caught off guard. So Node shoots his hand out and admits that his measly pile of coins is literally everything he's got to spend, even though it's all he can, so it leaves the blacksmith staring like he's seen a ghost. Then the guy just smirks, calls it pocket change for some kid and turns around. He dashes back to his work and tells Node to roam solo. Then he spots a giant wooden barrel stuffed full of old blades and he dives into the pile, rummages around and snatches a sword hilt, pulling the blade free to see if any of them are actually worth using. He goes for a weapon that's way too heavy to even lift. Then he painstakingly checks every blade he can find until boom, he screws up. He finally draws a straight sword, and the moment it's in his hand, it feels different. He stares at the blade, realizes instantly this is the one, so he bursts over and slams the blade onto the counter, then tells the blacksmith, "I'm taking this one," and yeah, it's about to get real. It nearly makes the guy jump out of his skin. Then the smith asks if the kid is seriously still here, and No just drops his 3 coins, tells him to take the payment, and hurries him along. Nod stares down at the sword in his hands, and as he grips it, memories of his father crash back. How that blade once felt massive, like a giant greatsword. The blacksmith leans over the weapon on the counter and fires off the big question. Are you hunting an upgrade, or are you here to start from scratch with a full replacement? Noah doesn't even blink, he just grins and says, of course it's an upgrade, completely fired up about it. As Node steps out, he can't shake the thought that it's been ages since he last wandered through the royal capital just like this. The blacksmith shoves the apprentice's temporary blade into Node's hands, saying it's just so Node's hip won't feel alone while his main sword gets forged. Then Node immediately realizes this temporary blade is as dull as a butter knife. Node decides to hunt for materials and earn extra cash for meals. Then he spots something that instantly snags his attention. That gorgeous comb gleamed in the shop window, and it hit him like lightning. He couldn't stop imagining how perfect it would look on his sister Lilia. He starts crunching the numbers, and that fishing job bonus hits hard. But once he tallies the new gear and the family bills, there's literally nothing left. He can't stop thinking about his sisters and how thrilled they'll be, but he forces his feet forward anyway, watching that expensive gift get left behind in the window. Nod lets out a heavy sigh, swearing to himself that one day he'll finally track down real souvenirs for every one of his siblings. Node clocks that the family's money situation is still a complete disaster, and right on cue Alec keeps badgering him for ideas on how to pull in even more cash. And yeah, that's a ton to swallow, because most adventurers his age are out there partying, burning every last coin on food, fun, and girls. For the last 6 months, all he's done is grind, day after day, spending next to nothing on himself, only grabbing the bare minimum upgrades for his gear so he can keep pushing forward. So he can shovel every last scrap of gold back into the household budget. Genius and the others call him way too stingy, but he's just thinking, we finally get some breathing room. If he can finally land crystal rank, the family debt is gonna start shrinking for real. And once that miracle hits, he's already gearing up to. Finally, Alec and the other servants got paid what they were worth, and nobody ever tried to bail on the Ferris house. They even took minimum wage just to stay. He's dead set on spoiling Lilia with some awesome new clothes now that she's older. And he's ready to buy fresh outfits for Ellen and Iris too. Plus, he just wants his little siblings to finally gorge on good food for once. So he clamps down on his tag, knowing he's gotta grind even harder than before. Knowing his loyal staff has his back keeps him moving, because if he keeps earning like this, he'll finally give Alec and the others the treatment they deserve. He stared at his sisters, imagining them finally slipping into brand new clothes and digging into those big, delicious meals, turning every hard, brutal day of work into something worth it. Node clenches his gear in a death grip, firing off a promise to himself. He's got to push harder, no matter what, until it all finally works. He lets out a deep groan, stretches his back hard to shake off the tension, and then he scans the park, watching the kids play, and finally decides it's time to leave and head back home. But then he halts dead in his tracks when something near the trees snaps his attention, like he can't decide what he's even seeing. Nod whips around and realizes it's his sister Hannah standing there, rocking a maid outfit and grinning like she's genuinely thrilled. So he slips behind a fence with a few kids to stay hidden, then keeps scanning, because her job's right there and he's desperate to catch who she's talking to. His mind snaps straight to the worst-case scenario. What if some guy is hassling her? And if he is, he's gonna make that guy pay. Then he spots her strolling away, all casual with that person, and his protective instincts instantly deflate. He scratches his head, feeling pretty dumb for freaking out, because it was probably just someone she knows. Node turns back and heads home, already plotting how he'll clean his gear before dinner, and he can't forget the promise. He's gotta hang out and play with Ellen later. The entire Ferris family crowd together in that huge dining hall for dinner, and that long table is packed to the brim with kids, while maids and staff hustle non-stop, sliding plate after plate straight to everyone. One of the older sisters lands in, barks at little Milia to sit up straight in her chair, and tries to whip the whole dinner into shape. Another sister leans in and asks Albero if he wants more, and he just grins. I'll grab some later, like it's already promised. Little Helena gets yanked over while she's struggling to balance a huge bowl of soup, gripping it with both hands. Mode takes a beat to help one of the tiniest kids, guiding her hands like a coach and showing her exactly how to grip her spoon, then telling her to lift it all the way up to her mouth. He slides her hand into the moves, cheering her on to try it for herself. She gives him a huge "yes, brother," and dives into her food. And Node can't help it, smiling to himself because Hannah used to take care of him the exact same way when he was a rowdy little brat. Suddenly, Node's father leans in from the far end of the table and tells Albero the army is hunting for more dragon knights, an insane opportunity to climb up and get promoted. Albero takes it to heart and tells his father, "I'll work my hardest, anything to make sure they pick me for that spot." The little kids look totally lost. One of them blurts out to Node, "So what even is a dragon knight? Is it different from the regular royal knights?" Nod starts breaking it down for the younger kids, raises a hand, and tells them the kingdom actually has 4 different knight orders. First up, we've got the regional knight order. Basically one huge crew of soldiers pulled together from every lord across the north, south, east, and west. Then boom, there's the Royal Knight Order, the exact squad their dad and Albero are in right this second. This is the biggest order in the bunch, packed with warrior family kids, landowning nobles, and the cream of the crop from the top military schools. The third group is the Imperial Guard. Every last member is handpicked to guard the king, so they only let the absolute top nobles from the Royal Knights join. And then boom, there's the Iron Dragon Knight Order, the elite riders who dive into battle atop raging flying dragons, and with the kingdom suddenly getting more dragons, they're scrambling to find more riders to fill every slot. So this is the perfect moment for someone to climb the ranks. One of the little girls suddenly pops out of her seat and blurts out, "Why can't we just become the king's personal guards?" Nod snaps, telling her to sit back down, and says those spots are earned on pure trust. His great-grandfather didn't get in by luck. He got in because he was best friends with the king. Right after that Node drops the bomb, everyone realizes he actually spotted their older sister, Hannah, while he was roaming through town. Nod brings up their older sister, and as soon as they ask how she's been, Lilia lights up the moment she hears her name. She's totally pumped as she asks, "Hannah, are you okay?" But the little kids just stare back, utterly lost, so young they can barely even. "Really? You don't know Hannah at all?" Nod points out that since she's been working for one noble family after another, the kids barely have any real memories of her. But then, Lilia shrugs and admits she only manages to make it home a few times a year, then leans in close and asks Node if their sister wanted to say anything specific, but before she can. But Node has to confess the truth. He only saw her from far away, and she looked like she was locked in the middle of something, so he didn't dare interrupt her and he didn't even get the chance to talk to her. At this point, he figures Lilia probably knows more than he does because he's been off adventuring non-stop, and that leaves Lilia pretty heartbroken. The whole family keeps piling back into their seats at the giant table beneath the chandelier, like the house is finally bursting at the seams, because everyone's together for once. Servants hustle the food non-stop and wheel the tiniest babies around the hall, because when a family this massive runs on love, it takes a whole army to keep everyone fed and smiling. Eventually, that long day finally crushes the toddlers. Fussiness erupts, and at the table they start losing it as everything winds down. Later, Nod snaps right back into the zone deep in the woods, and just when the silence hits, Elsa screams that the monster is coming straight for him. Nod only tightens his grip on his sword and tells her, "Don't worry, I've got this." First, it looks like just another bear, until you realize that behind all that thick fur is a hulking wall of pure muscle, berserk and ready to wreck anything in its path. These usually stay calm, but the moment something triggers them, their eyes blaze blood red, and then they unleash a full-on rampage. Node clocks the glowing red in its eyes, and no matter what shattered it, he shuts it out, telling himself he only has one mission: finish the job and the bear won't give him a second to breathe, roaring as it lunges straight at him. Nod snaps back with a shout of his own, bracing to slam into that attack head-on, searching. As the massive beast hurls a heavy, clawed arm straight for his head, he refuses to panic, then ducks low and slips right under the strike. He realizes his blade can actually tear through that monster's brutal, tough hide. Then he snaps a clean slash straight across its face. The bear rips the silence with a deafening roar across the trees, but Node ignores it, because once the beast is staring wide open, the follow-up is coming. The monster shrieks in agony as another blow lands, sending it reeling while it fights to keep its feet. Right as everything explodes into chaos, Elsa rockets into the scene and yells at Nod, reminding him she's in this fight too and she refuses to be left out. She hurls her weapon with pure fury, smashes the bear with a brutal hit, and the shockwave rattles through its skull before it's finally gone for good. Nod throws himself right in the beast's way and screams that it won't escape after that attack. Then he catches it. He snapped his attention into focus and screamed to bait the monster, daring it to chase him as its giant claws slashed through the air where he'd been. The two of them brace themselves against the bleeding monster, and Nod shoots Elsa a quick nod. "We're almost there, we just need one." One last push, then later back at the guild. The receptionist grins at them and starts flipping through their papers, checking every detail. Their quest report, she nods like a judge, checks every detail, and even hands over the bear hunt proof right up at the front desk. She tells them the hunt is officially over, praises both of them for what they pulled off, then swings open a huge bag of coins. Right as she hands over their pay, she leans in like there's more. No. Nod glances down at what she's clutching and realizes they're brand new guild cards. They finally got promoted to crystal rank. Boom. The brand new shiny tag screams that they've officially leveled up into the big leagues. Nod's grin bursts wide the second he spots the crystal card, and he yells for Elsa right away like, "Come see this." Nod gets blindsided when a giant adventurer yanks him into a brutal arm lock, cackling at the top of his lungs as he's straight up asking if the kid and his partner really already reached crystal rank. And the moment that question hits, the news explodes across the tavern, fast, loud, and everywhere. Instantly, they blow past expectations and yank in a swarm of veterans who stare in disbelief. One old-timer even starts. He starts spinning wild tales from his rookie days. Then someone barges in, yelling that it's time to cut the stories short. So they throw a celebration, everyone in the room gets around, and they raise their glasses to the two newest crystal ranks as the veteran crowd swarmed in to congratulate them. And Node got his head rubbed by the big guys while Elsa keeps sipping her drink, the party turns feral fast, until they both end up completely passed out at the table. And after what feels like forever, Node finally jolts awake, still groggy, still trying to figure out how this even happened. They didn't even get to celebrate as a duo. Elsa just stares at her new card and says she did. She didn't even flinch at the chaos. Everyone was so real, so sincere. And when she finally saw they'd made it this far, a bright smile lit up her face. Node lets out a soft, weary sigh, staring into the weight of his journey. Because the adventurer's ranking system is it's got 10 different stages, and crystal rank sits dead on third from the bottom. But that's still a massive deal because it means that now they're not just plain pebbles anymore. They've officially leveled up into real adventurers, and they're about to be handed high-stakes escort missions and somehow she manages to hand him something real and worth keeping. Elsa grins, tilts her head, and asks Noad if he knows it's been 6 whole months since she first tracked him down, broke. Noad squeezes her with a grin, telling her that thanks to her help, his family is finally safe. And they've even got a little more good news on the way. He pulls together every last rare material, and then it hits him. Most people spend years to reach crystal, but they tore through it so fast because having a partner you can trust makes all the difference. And Elzer swears by it because since that they've gotten way stronger together. On their very first day, they finally teamed up. Nod went silent for a beat, then gently called out Elsa's name across the. She looks up from her drink, curiosity sparking in her eyes, and asks him what's been on his mind. Nod only stares at her for a beat, then murmurs, "Thanks for everything we survived." And she answers with a tiny nod, fully, completely agreeing. Node slides into the tavern seat across from Elsa and tells her point blank that today is the day their partnership ends officially. They've finally made it to crystal rank, and when Elsa looks up, a small, bittersweet smile tugs at her face, because she can't ignore that they're splitting up right. After they've made it this far, she admits she's about to feel painfully lonely, then fires back. "Are you really sure you're heading straight back to your hometown, fag?" For his family, Noad shoots her a look and orders her to take care of herself. And Elsa can only tell him to stay safe and not get hurt. They hoist their drinks high, celebrating the fact they made it to crystal rank together, mugs clashing with wild cheers, like they're sealing the moment forever. He chugs his drink in one brutal gulp, and Elsa breaks into laughter, praising his insane drinking style. Then they clink their cups. They clink their mugs one last time, raising a toast to new beginnings and whatever waited beyond the next horizon. Then later on, the tavern is. The place went dead quiet, empty mugs stacked on the table, when Nod snatched up his bag to leave. Then someone called out his name. He whips his head around, only to find his mother right there, arms crossed tight. And she snaps that even though he just got home, they still need. He had to talk to her in her room. Node shot back a quick okay, and promised he'd be there the second he tore himself out of that armor. He trudges down the hallway toward his mom's room, drenched in sweat because he's got zero clue what he did wrong. His mind is sprinting through every memory, begging for one single reason she'd be scolding him right now. He slams to the door, calls out that he's here, and his mom just waves him in like, "Come on inside." As soon as he steps into the room, Node scrambles to cut the tension and blurt out what she wants to talk about. His mother stands by the window, staring out at the grounds, then whips around to tell him, straight up, A marriage proposal has landed for their sister Hannah. Node's face breaks into a grin as he blurts, "That's amazing news for her." And you can practically hear the sigh of relief that, for once, it isn't him trapped in the hot seat. But his mom's face stays stone cold and serious, and Node instantly knows this isn't a joyful visit, so he cautiously calls out, "What's going on?" She blurts out that it's all basically falling apart before it even begins, and Node snaps, "Why would that happen?" Then it hits him, the real reason he was summoned. His mother tells him that the man is a baron, one of the noble circle, and that he works closely with the royal family Hannah serves at the palace. The real issue, his family's got a brutally low opinion of the Ferris house, like they've been soaking up bad rumors about them non-stop. Turns out the Baron's family is already convinced Hannah's nothing but a gold digger, only sniffing around him because of his money. Nod starts thinking about all the grinding he and his brothers have been doing just to keep bills off their backs. But somehow the debt keeps swallowing the family whole, and it's too much to even finish what he's about to say. So his mom lays it out, if they want to save face, they've got to prove they can pay back what they owe, at least for now. Node fires back for the exact amount they need right now, and he pushes himself into high gear to head out and earn enough money for Hannah's wedding, pressure crushing his chest. But he's ready to grind, thinking, since it's snowing and Elsa isn't there, he figures he can snatch every high-paying winter job for himself. If he grinds through a ton of them, maybe he'll rake in 20 or 30 silver coins, but then his mother drops the hammer and snaps that they really need 200 silver coins. Node just freezes, deathly pale, like his soul ripped out of his body because he can't even process the number she just dropped, his brain-s glitching out, while his mom calmly shrugs and asks what the total family debt is at this point. They stand there staring down this colossal scroll that lays out every single thing their family owes, and it's way longer than he ever imagined. Noah's jaw practically hits the floor as he blurts out how they even pulled off borrowing that much money. Then he jokes that maybe they're secretly some top-tier lords or something. But his mother only looks worn out. She reminds him they're low-level nobles who scrape by on barely 30 silver coins a year, then tells him how things were perfectly fine right up until their big brother Alburo showed up. She tells him that when she was pregnant with Hannah, a war erupted next door, and Noah's dad had to take out loans just to scrape together the gear to go fight. The mom keeps spinning the tale, revealing how the family finally clawed their way into the official positions they hold today. But it cuts off right when it gets. But it turns out that was only the spark. Everything spirals from there, and when she clasps her hands tight, she tells you that from that point on she and her dad got even closer, while No just stood there looking worn out from listening to his parents' romance go on and on until, as soon as he clocked the debt, it just kept climbing. Between raising a massive family, granddad's funeral, and piling on more war gear, they were drowning before they could even think about paying anything back. With that interest piling on, even 200 silver coins won't wipe the debt clean. Noah clocks it and quietly thinks his family's financial disaster is, in the worst way possible, almost impressive, especially. Some folks have been clinging to hope for nearly 20 years, waiting to finally get their money back. So their mother steps in, saying if you pay only a handful, you'll light a fire that'll make everyone else furious. And Node can't even wrap his head around it, because at this point, after all that time, what happens next is, now they're stuck with the bill for Hannah's wedding, and the neighbors won't shut up. One minute they're planning a huge party, the next they're being accused of having money for everything except paying off their loans. So the mom goes straight for the loudest complainers, aiming to knock everything out at once, trying to stop the family name from getting dragged through the mud any further, knowing that Hannah's future in-laws are already second-guessing the wedding over the rumors. So if Node can somehow cough up those 200 silver coins, the deal stays on track, and it all leads to his pulse spikes, he's totally fired up, and he clenches his fist as he tells her, "I've got this," promising he'll do absolutely anything he can to bring that cash in. Node stares at the tiny thing in his hand, panic rising as he thinks, there's no way I can tell my mom how I feel. And then he starts crunching the numbers on those 200 silver coins, because that's basically the entire yearly income of a whole small territory. And when he stacks it against a normal adventurer's life, the difference is straight up mind-blowing. Like even a top-tier crystal rank adventurer only pulls in about. Nod plunks himself on the ground, head in his hands, the weight of about 40 silver coins a year crushing him, so stressed he can't even breathe, thinking he'll never make it. But he refuses to stay down. He shoves into heavy winter gear, stomps into a freezing mountain range, and trudges through deep snow, until something catches his eye. Then boom, he spots two glowing gems half buried in the dirt, and he finally realizes he's found exactly what he's been hunting for. These are ice spirit stones. Super rare magic gems you can only find when winter hits hard, freezing outside, and nature doesn't leave you a second chance. And Node starts loading them up, staring at his huge pack like, how much is this gonna pay? but deep down he knows he's still nowhere close to that 200 silver goal. The bag is so damn heavy he almost topples over, muttering that it was a close call, because that weight nearly dragged him straight down into the snow. So he halts, tightens his straps, and makes sure every piece of gear is locked in. Then he straightens up and tells himself he's ready to go, determined to keep grinding through the cold. Noad plows through the deep snow in his gear, and as the icy bite gnaws at him, he thinks, this winter is way more savage than any monster. He's just relieved he didn't take that shopkeeper's advice and stick with his old leather armor. It's the only thing keeping him from freezing right now. Even with the upgrade costs for his gear digging deep into his wallet, he knows it's worth every penny, because in this environment, if he can't move, he can't live. So he keeps going. He keeps his eyes sharp, scanning the mountain stretch, feeling that eerie, dead silent emptiness, until way off in the distance, a strange shimmering light flashes and he can't finish his thought. It hits him like lightning. He freezes in place, staring at the sparkles glittering over the frozen plains, wondering if he's really seeing ice spirits or something way stranger. Nod remembers real well that spirits like that are total pranksters, and the scary part is they're so powerful that even their harmless joke can absolutely ruin a normal person. So he hightails it out of there before anyone even lays eyes on him, because he's not about to become minced meat just because some spirit wants to play prank on his life. He keeps his head down and strides on, muttering that the foothills should be right around the corner. But then out of nowhere, a colossal roar crashes through the valley and Node just stops dead when the air pounds his chest, sensing a monster is right there. He slams his face into the snow and orders himself to freeze. Don't twitch, not an inch. Then a giant shadow crashes over the ground straight above his head, and he cranes his neck just enough to spot a colossal winged beast tearing through the storm overhead, then freezes pinned to the ground. As he watches it vanish into the clouds, desperately trying to stay hidden. Nod, crouched in the thick snow, kept looking over his shoulder at the sky, praying that huge thing finally took off, and then, when the dust finally settles, he cranes his neck and confirms it. There's no doubt that was a wyvern. He's safe for the moment, but the ride back smashes straight into trouble, cutting off the rest. Node slumped over the tavern table like all hope got drained from his bones, fully defeated. Then the waitress loomed over him, asking what he wanted, and all he could cough up was a miserable groan. He slams his hands to his head, realizing he's officially broke, and the waitress clocks that he's completely checked out while another regular chokes with laughter over the kid causing trouble again. Nod doesn't even budge from that table, looking like he got dragged through chaos. Then some random guy nearby spots that Elsa's nowhere in sight, and he can't believe it's so rare to see Nod by himself, so he leans in close and asks his buddy, "You heard it yet?" Because everyone at the bar is buzzing, Node's party finally broke apart for good. The guys erupt into laughter, trading wild guesses about whether Elsa ditched him, or if it went the other way. And suddenly every single person's got a different version as the gossip swells into a full-blown roar. Node catches every word, smirking to himself like, these drunks are just talking nonsense, his face still buried in hiding, until suddenly wait. Then one of the guys shoves a drink his way and tells him to snap out of it. No says nothing, just stares at the mug, and then he just shrugs and lets them spew their trash, then chugs a huge gulp of ale thinking, at least I scored a free drink out of this mess. The bar is still buzzing about Node's mess. One guy leans in and swears the party's totally done, and his buddy's like, wait, was Node the one who got dumped? But the first guy snaps back, nope, it was the girl who got the boot. Node just sits there, taking in every word like, these idiots don't know a thing, until someone pats his head and tells him to cheer up, and that finally hits him like a switch. He downs the rest of his drink in one massive gulp, then roars, it's time to change the pace. No more sitting around for him. So he barrels straight for the guild's request board. Because the moment fresh jobs hit in the morning, the good ones get snatched up fast. Node stands there all alone, and someone nearby asks if he's finally feeling better. Node just mumbles a half-hearted reply as he starts to. He combs the board for scraps. Those jobs nobody wants just rot there for days, until the guild either yanks them off or sweetens the reward with extra cash to make it finally worth the hassle. The Node snatches for one of the papers, grumbling that chasing ice spirits for bonuses is such a pain, knowing it'll only net him a couple more silver coins in the end. But he keeps staring anyway, because he's stuck on this idea. 4 silver coins could usually keep a man fed for a whole year, yet what he needs right now is straight up out of this world. He bets his mom doesn't even expect him to show up with all 200 coins she demanded, then glances at the bonus clutched in his hand, only to call the guild stingy after they toss him a measly little contribution boost. But he knows he can't just sit there, he's got to act. He figures his parents aren't trying to control Hannah, they're just terrified about her marriage since she's already over 20, so he targets at least 50 coins to help knock down the debt. the groom's family might actually start taking them seriously. But as he locks eyes on the board, a nasty doubt crawls in and he starts to wonder, will a plan like this actually pull off, or all of it collapses in the end? Node squeezes in a handful of jobs over the last 2 weeks, travel time included, and after he counts his bonus, he lands on about 5 silver coins. That it sounds like a lot, sure. But even with that great paycheck finally stacking up the number he needs for Hannah's wedding by spring, it still feels like wishful thinking, like a pipe dream, and when he stares at those numbers, the guy just freezes. Knowing this is basically impossible to pull off alone. He catches himself thinking, if Elsa were still here, this would be so much easier. But then doubts slam in, asking if her help would even matter anymore because the Ferris family's debt isn't just big, it's a whole different monster. And he strides through the quiet streets knowing even top-tier crystal or bronze adventurers would choke trying to pay it off. Leaving him staring in shock, visions of Elsa smiling wide, stretching her hand toward him like she was yelling, "Don't stop, keep going," snaps him out of his funk. He digs his heels in, telling himself there's no way he's giving up, because his sister's happiness hangs on him, and there's no way he's walking away now, so he starts dreaming bigger. If crystal rank pay won't cut it, he knows iron rank quests are the real goldmine, because those jobs can splash out dozens of silver coins in a single haul. Then reality slams back in, those monsters are way too deadly for him, and his sword would barely manage a scratch. And the guild, they'd never let some low-rank rookie like him near those papers, but then he stares at his own hand, and a wild idea detonates in his head. Maybe he should ditch the guild altogether and go hunt down a client who'll pay him straight. Nod thrusts his hand toward the board, because if he goes full rogue right now, his fate is in his own hands. No way the guild has his back on a stunt like this. But he's completely stuck. No idea where to even track down the high-level monsters he'd need to hunt, and it slams into him. When a job is 2 whole ranks above his own, he can't even figure out how to begin. In the hush of that hall, he slowly lifts his gaze, and there it hits him. He's staring straight at the silver rank bulletin board. He stares at his own hand and wonders, am I already out of my depth with iron rank gear? Because if silver rank guys are handling those monsters, then those things are on a whole other brutal level. So he spots a random flyer for wyvern parts, and the client's dangling a wild reward. 800 silver coins for just 1 head. Node lets out a dry little laugh, because that kind of money feels laughably small to him. Like it's just a distant dream compared to what he wants right now. Even the deadliest fighters who claw their way into iron rank usually slam into a brutal ceiling. Almost none of them can break through that wall to reach silver. As he storms off, he can't stop thinking, those guys are on another level. They can actually drop a dragon, and even their weakest pick is still a wyvern. He starts replaying every story he's ever heard, and one name hits hardest. An actual silver rank adventurer who somehow marched right into the kingdom's Iron Dragon Knights. To him, anyone who can tame those beasts is pure nightmare fuel. But then it hits him. Someone once told his brother Alburo that the Knights were his golden shot to finally break out and make it big. Noad can't believe his dad is laying on his brother too much pressure, demanding he join the elite Iron Dragon Knights. And sure, he gets it, parents always want the best, but this feels like an insane amount, especially since he really knows how much his brother can't handle. He clocks that if he actually lands this, he could finally get his hands on those 200 silver coins. Yeah, it's a wild long shot, but it's still way smarter than spending the rest of his life stuck doing the same basic jobs. And for a split second, he stands there alone, eyes locked on the wall, trying to hammer the plan into his skull. Later on, he finally catches up with that old drunk at the tavern and shoves a drink into his hands, only to watch the guy stare in pure shock, because he's never seen him this generous before. But the drunk guy just blurts out, "Why are you tossing money around if you're broke?" And instead of answering, the guy only smirks and says it's because, on his last quest, he actually ran into a wyvern. And he spills the truth. This isn't some random kindness. He's desperate to master the right way to handle those beasts because survival depends on it. He rips off a massive swig from his barrel, then grins and blurts, "Yeah, I get it now, cross paths with one of those things and it's a total disaster for anyone." He leans in and tells Node to listen up. Those monsters aren't something you mess with, so Node plops down with his notebook and leans in, asking Elsa to spill some of her battle stories. She grumbles like it's a chore, but her grin screams she's itching to brag, and Node quizzes the old man for the lowdown on what's coming at the snowy mountain, and the veteran warns him, "Watch yourself. Snow golems start crawling out around this time of year." The old drunk leans in and demands to know how Node actually slipped free when that wyvern hit him. Node just stares at his drink, shrugs it off as straight-up luck. And then he rips open his notebook and flips through it, scanning every note he wrote about monsters, their tricks, their weak spots, because he's hunting for a way to stay alive and outsmart them. And then, because he's sure the only way through is figuring out how these monsters move. So he's going to use every scrap of knowledge and hard-earned experience they've left behind. And right as he slams the book shut, he hammers one truth into his head. The right information is the deadliest weapon he's got. While the rest of the tavern roars with laughter and demands another round, Noed stays locked in a lonely corner, alone with his thoughts. He finally slips away to a quiet corner, shuts out the noise, and goes over his notes one last time. Then the moment is about to explode making. He checks his plan one last time and locks in with that dead serious look, then drops the words. All right, it's finally time to get to work. Then he barrels into the freezing mountains and starts climbing a towering ice wall, swinging his pickaxe like a hammer into the cliff. But this climb is brutal. He nearly slips, catches himself, gasps for air, and admits he was one step from not making it. And the next thing we see, his hand juts out from a mountain of snow after getting completely buried. Nod finally spots a place to drop, flops down hard against his gear, and just breathes heavy, shaky breaths. Because the cold is creeping in and he's completely, totally wiped out and realizes that even with all his winter gear, the air out here is pure brutality. So he decides he's got to boil some water just to stay warm, and then So he drags out a tiny stove and feeds it magic stones, because there isn't a single scrap of wood anywhere. And yeah, he knows it's kind of a waste, but it's his only shot. Melt the snow, fire up a warm meal. He yanks out rations as the wind howls around his hood. Then he slams that tough, dry bread into the pot and submerges it until it turns soft. One bite in and he's stunned, the jam's sweet as firelight, like it knows exactly what he needs, finally pushing warmth back into him. After he drains his drink, he leans over the snowy ridge and scans the horizon. Then he spots a monster out in the distance, crouched and frozen in place as the cold bites down. He admits he'd stand there all day and soak it in if he could, but he knows he can't stop now. He shoves his cup away and keeps climbing that colossal, icy cliff as the snow blasts down all around him. He hammers the stakes into the ice, then dangles there above a massive drop, gripping for dear life. Node plants himself on the ridge's edge, stares down the huge mountain range ahead and points, that cliff in the distance, that's my next stop, and starts the long grind of hammering stakes into the frozen rock. He hauls himself upward step by step, locked on reaching the top, right as the wind suddenly roars to life, whipping snow sideways and battering his cloak. So he hunches forward and leans into the chaos, fighting to stay balanced on that tiny ledge, and he darts around towering boulders, shrinking in plain sight until he's nothing but a tiny speck. He clenches his gear and locks in with pure determination, whispering to himself that he's finally ready to hunt down that wyvern egg. And there it is, the monster perched on a jagged peak, dead still. Wyverns only build their nests this high because they know something's coming and they're not letting it reach them. Smaller predators can't sniff their way to the nest, and Node knows other nests exist, but they're either miles too far or tucked away in wild lands. Monsters on a whole other level, trying to hit those spots without knowing the area would be a death wish. So he clamps onto this cliff like it's home. He's tackled these winter quests before, knows every treacherous angle. And then he starts climbing that brutal vertical ice. He finally spots a massive opening carved into the mountainside, slips into the icy cave with every nerve on high alert, and keeps going as the wind howls at his back. Nod finally slips into the massive cavern, and the moment he steps in, he's staring at a brutal maze of ice and jagged rock. He ducks behind a massive pillar of ice, eyes locked on the battlefield, and for now everything's playing out exactly like he planned, And then it hits him, every scrap of intel he collected clicks into place. The monster bolts from its nest once a day to hunt during this window, which means his timing. Actually, it's perfect. He watches that wyvern give a low growl and launch into the sky. With snow this deep, it's going to disappear for a while, hunting for food, so Noed wastes zero time, rockets toward the back of the cave. Because he needs that egg, and he needs it now before anyone comes back. But when he digs through the nesting mess, there's nothing, no egg, not even a trace. He darts to one spot, then another, and every check screams the same thing. The egg isn't where it should be, leaving. He keeps ripping through the pile in a frantic frenzy, heart pounding as panic creeps in. Where the hell could the monster have shoved it? Until, as he keeps yelling at himself to push harder, right when hope starts slipping away, a strange shimmering light flashes from the corner of the nest and grabs his attention. He leans in and freezes. It's not an egg at all, it's a sword jammed in the rubble, and he's left completely rattled, staring at it like, why would a weapon even be up here? Just as he leans in for a better look, his foot drops onto something, and a loud, razor-sharp crack blasts through the air. Node flinches in the dark, feels something sticky, and yanks his hand back fast. He stares at that disgusting mess smeared on his gloves, and the horror hits. He's not just near it, he's standing right in a pile of wyvern poop. Staring at the blade again, he realizes this sword was probably taken from some poor adventurer, one that got eaten by the monster and never got back up. And then it hits him, the whole back of the cave is basically one giant bathroom, and he knows he's gotta grab that egg and vanish fast before this gets even worse. After raking through the grime, he finally locks eyes on a hidden bunch of big slick shapes tucked in the corner, and he reaches for one of the eggs, and deep down he swears this single prize is the key to everything he's been fighting for. But a massive crash slams through the cavern, rattling the ground under his feet. He thinks an avalanche is roaring in from outside, then he hears something else and his stomach drops when he realizes the wyvern came back to the nest way earlier than it ever should have. Ice crashes from the ceiling the moment the monster hits the ground, and Nod is instantly panicking, trapped in a nightmare while he scrambles for a way out. Here's the catch, there's exactly one exit from the cave, and that wyvern is blocking it dead center. Nod stares at his choices, wrestling with the idea of holding his ground and charging the beast. Then he realizes that's basically suicide, so the thought of quitting, of dying right there, hits him like a punch, and he can almost picture his own skull dropping into that pile of bones, but right when those dark thoughts try to swallow him, he slams them down and refuses to stay there. Because he knows 1 second too long and it's game over, so he spots a gap in the rocks and bolts straight through. Right as the massive wyvern crashes fully into the cave, it drags its brutal weight inside, its claws screeching over the stone floor as it lets out a deep, rumbling growl and drops right over its nest. But the moment it settles in, Node realizes this isn't just eggs anymore, it's guarding something else entirely. He's trapped, forcing himself to hold his breath, praying his hiding spot will actually fool those sharp, searching eyes. And it hits him, this monster will never think to hunt in its own bathroom hideout. And that foul stench is quietly doing the best camouflage job, wiping out his scent. He tells himself this is pure luck, he'll just stay right where he is until the creature takes off again, then he'll snatch an egg and bolt. But the wyvern doesn't rush at all. It coils up, drops into a deep sleep, and Nodes just sits there in the muck, minutes crawling by while he's left painfully bored. He's been stuck waiting forever, eyes locked on those eggs, and the monster still hasn't budged an inch, so now he can't stop asking himself how much longer this nightmare is going to last. That stench is so brutal that Node's nose is going numb, and he's crouched behind the rocks with not a single muscle daring to move as the wyvern towers right over his hiding spot. He goes stone still, staring as those massive scales thunder past, praying it doesn't spot him as his hope runs out, praying it hasn't clocked him yet. Then the ground hits with a brutal thud and his stomach drops because it feels like the beast is charging straight for his throat. So he shuts his eyes, drops into prayer, whispers a fast goodbye to his parents and sisters, and fully believes he's about to die, while he keeps praying anyway. He can't even process it, his life is about to end in a place like this. Because that monster won't stop stalking him, pacing right over him, and then wham, he catches a strange sound that snaps his eyes wide open. He peeks out, totally stunned, trying to figure out what the hell is happening, and he can't even form the words for what he's seeing. He just freezes, staring blankly at the scene while all the fear just drains away, and he's frozen in a daze, staring at that gigantic creature, like it finally clicked that he. Turns out the monster isn't hunting at all. It's just using that cave like its own filthy bathroom, and yeah, it's nasty, but he's safe for now. Before he even realizes it, hours vanish like magic. He's been crouched there for so long that he starts to worry it might have already been a full day. Node peers through the rock cracks, and the moment that colossal beast finally shifts, it rockets into the sky to hunt. This is the moment he's been craving. Watching those things streak through the air, he realizes he's got under an hour to act, and he tells himself this is his one and only shot. He snatches one of the eggs, but it's way heavier than he thought, so heavy he's immediately staring at it like, is this thing solid iron? And he can't even finish the thought. He can barely hoist it, but he knows he has to bolt out of this cave before the mother comes back. But the second he steps outside, a wall of white slams him in the face. An absolute blizzard is raging out there, and the moment he moves, he's fighting for every breath, wind battering him sideways while he hauls that massive egg through knee-deep snow. His feet keep sinking, his legs start to buckle, and he's desperate to know if he can finally stop and breathe. Because he has zero clue how vicious that wyvern will go once it figures out its egg is gone. He remembers grilling Elsa about it back at the tavern, but she just shoved back another ale, shrugged it off, and said she has no clue, because she normally wipes out the monsters before she even heads home. Turns out the advice from those elite adventurers hits hard. Yet Node realizes he's still light years away from their level. He's still way too close to that nest, and he knows if he doesn't back off right now, he's dead meat. Node's hands are violently shaking as he clamps down on that heavy egg, because if he hesitates for even a second, he's done for. He lunges to move, but his coat is locked up solid like wood, his legs won't budge, and then it finally smashes into him. He can still hear his dad and brother talking about the north, how they strap on boards and rip asterisk down mountains at insane speed, so he slaps hot water on his frozen coat, melts it on the spot, and reshapes it into makeshift skis. turning stiff, useless fabric into something he can ride. He lines himself up, rockets down the slope, and as soon as he catches the slide, the wind screams past, right as he leaves him. He gets yeeted off down the mountainside, right as the wyvern rockets back to the nest, shocked to find its prize vanished. Later on, Nod glances back at those towering peaks and realizes, straight up, there's no way he'd have made it down by walking normally. He finally tucked himself into the back of the carriage, all curled up and gasping for breath after that terrifying escape. So he just starts to. He shoots his hand toward the egg and tells it, straight to its face, that it truly put him through hell. Then it hits him, every month of planning led right here. And this one sale will finally rake in enough to wipe his debt so his sister Hannah can get married at last. Nod slumps in the back of the carriage, staring at the egg, and the fear crawls in. Because after everything, the family debt still isn't paid off, not even with the interest piling higher. He's locked on the shell and then something feels off, so he pauses, notices it, and lets out a soft sound like wait, because a massive crack tore across the surface, and panic instantly detonated in his mind. Panic hits him hard. Where could he have smashed it? And the fear won't let go. If that egg gets cracked or spoiled, the price will plummet, and this was his family's last real shot at surviving. Nod buries his face in his hands, crushed to the bone, because he knows there's no way he'll ever get back to that nest and grab another one. He clamps down on his nerves, repeating to himself that he has to strengthen that shell, because they're basically about to hit the royal capital. Right as he lunges for it, the shell crumbles in an instant and explodes into shards, and he's left screaming at the sheer impossibility of it all. Amid the wreckage of shattered shell, a tiny eye snaps open. Something alive is awake in there. Instead of a ruined egg, Nod snaps his hands shut on a tiny baby dragon that chirps up at him, then snuggles deep into his chest while he freezes on the spot, stunned, still replaying the bright future he swore to his sister Hannah. Nod stares at his family laughing as one, and the second he sees his sister Hannah finally glow with real happiness, he can't help but think until the moment the butt hits. But the moment gets yanked away when panic slams him, and he can barely get a single word out because the little creature in his arms gives a soft little chirp, still wearing chunks of its shell like a goofy tiny hat. It rips out another deafening cry, then immediately burrows its face into his chest, nuzzling him hard while Mode just stands there in dead silence, staring down at the baby dragon, frozen like, okay, so what am I supposed to do now? That tiny menace doesn't seem to care at all. It just keeps rubbing its face all over him. Right then, Nod's father comes sprinting out, blasting the air with how thrilled he is that his son is safe. And Nod just blurts that he's home. His father cuts himself off mid-sentence when he spots something squirming beneath the cloak, then demands, "What are you hiding in there?" And Nod's trying to talk it out while he's drenched in sweat, until the baby pops its head up and knocks both his father and Alec completely speechless. The tiny wyvern just tilts its head and lets out a sharp little chirp at them from deep inside the folds of the cloth. Nod just stares down at the tiny creature cradled in his arms, and the moment the truth hits, his face snaps bright red. The baby wyvern lets out a tiny chirp, then spins its head all around as Nod tries to talk his stunned father and the unnervingly calm Alec into accepting that this is just how things are now. Before Nod can even open his mouth, his father whips around and sprints out the door, shouting for Nod to stay put while he runs off to handle the mess. Then Nod crumples onto the couch, crushed by pure stress. While he sinks into his seat, his mind starts racing through everything he knows, like how the Iron Dragon Knights will only train dragons that hatched from eggs, because wild ones are too feral and violent to ever tame. He stares at the little guy nuzzling his arm, stunned. He'd always heard these guys are supposed to be insanely aggressive, but this one is weirdly calm, and now he's wondering if it's just what babies do. Suddenly, the door blasts open, and a voice from the hallway drops that the dragon rumors swirling around him are actually real, so he barely even flinches. Nod's father stomps back in with two grim-looking men, and when he introduces one as the vice commander of the Iron Dragon Knights, shock hits Nod so hard he can barely breathe. That tiny wyvern senses the intense heat in the room, lets out a shaky little chirp, and starts trembling like it's terrified. It screams even louder, and Nod freaks out, trying to quiet the baby fast, begging it to stay silent because those important guests are watching. The vice commander just laughs it all off, saying it's totally fine, then apologizes for barging in while there's still a mess from the road, like that's simply how adventure life always goes. The vice commander stares at the baby dragon and asks Nod if it's his, because that little menace is clinging to him like it's family, and right as nervously blurts out, "Yeah," then tries to brush it off fast. Like maybe it's only because he still reeks of the mother dragon he came from back in the nest, though Right there, the vice commander looks straight up stunned. And just as the moment lands, Alec barges in announcing he's back. And he slams down a tray loaded with raw steaks. Nod stares at the food, totally thrown off that they're handing him straight meat already. So the vice commander basically tells Alec to go for it. and Alec hands the tray straight to Node, who's like, "All right, I'll try it," as the little wyvern leans in and drags in a long, curious sniff of the meat, its eyes light up like it's totally hooked. Then it gapes its mouth wide and slams into a massive bite. No hesitation at all, and Node can't. "I can't believe how fast this little guy is devouring everything. He straight up tells me he's got this insane appetite, then asks if he's already hunting for seconds," which makes the vice commander shoot back immediately. He hands over the new piece of trouble himself to the baby, and the wyvern completely loses it on the food, tearing into the meat with way more ferocity than anyone ever expected. Vice Commander Goldwyn and Walter stare at the baby dragon, and it looks just like a regular wyvern, until Walter clocks the way it moves, and they realize it's acting unlike anything they've ever seen. Then the Vice Commander blurts out Nod's full name right out of nowhere. Nod freezes, totally baffled, while the tiny dragon chirps away happily in his arms, and then Goldwyn wastes zero time. He blasts out an official order, appointing Nod as an apprentice of the Iron Dragon Knights. Nod is so stunned his brain nearly crashes, and all he can spit out is a broken, confused stutter, which snaps Goldwyn into action. He spins to Walter and declares, "You're the one who's got the kid from now on." He tells Walter to keep a razor-close watch on him, but Walter looks downright furious about this whole mess, snapping the order back like, "Are you kidding me? I'm really stuck babysitting some random kid, especially because." He tells the vice commander to his face that Node doesn't have what it takes to stand with them, then stares right at Node like, "I don't see the skills an Iron Dragon Knight needs." And that's when he stops because he's not done. So he pushes them to wait until the kid graduates from the military academy first. He's clearly trying to wriggle out of this job, and then Never Goldwyn rips into them, warning that waiting that long would wipe out all their best data, and then he leans in with the real reason. This hatchling only clings to Nod because he's soaked in the mother's scent. Meanwhile, Nod just stands there, cheeks burning, begging himself to stop tumbling into dragon nests. Goldwyn basically says it like, "It's simple, and sure enough, nobody ever had the guts to try it. Until now, and that's what makes it a total game changer," and he tells Walter to treat it like fate's gift. Because with Nod and the dragon in their corner, he's sure the Iron Dragon Knights are about to score a huge win in the long run. Everyone starts dogpiling Walter, the vice commander, and even Albert, Node's own father, ends up practically begging him to just take the job, and Walter is getting crushed by the pressure. He rubs his eyes, lets out this huge sigh, and can't believe he's actually getting talked into this by those guys, but he finally snaps and declares he'll do it, and Albert lights up with joy, right as another person drops in with even more food to keep the party roaring. Node just stands there in dead silence, sweat pouring down his face, because he's honestly stunned at how his simple life as an adventurer spiraled into this total nightmare. Walter locks eyes with the kid and uses his full name to make it crystal clear he means business. He swears he won't show a shred of mercy until Nod becomes a real dragon knight, and a Node is absolutely freaking out, so he blurts out a yes on pure panic without even thinking, then realizes he's completely lost it and has no idea what he just got himself into. His brain is basically short-circuiting right now. He just can't even process how insanely fast everything is moving. Later on, the whole crew is at a wedding ceremony when that tiny dragon suddenly decides this is the perfect moment to cause absolute chaos. Nod holds the tiny baby dragon, and it's chirping like it's got 1,000 things to say. So Nod just stares down and asks if this little guy is really awake already and ready to go. Turns out, it drives the guy trying to read the speech totally nuts. He snaps at them to shut up and show some respect while he's speaking. The guests are already trading whispers about Node, and one older noble suddenly jabs a finger at him. Because Node isn't just anyone. He's the third fairest son, and the noble swears he heard the kid actually made it into the Iron Dragon Knights. Nod clamps down on his temper and tells himself to get it together, because that baby dragon won't stop chirping while Iris ignores all the drama and dives straight into the buffet. She's stuffing her face with snacks as that dragon keeps blaring nonstop. The little dragon gapes its mouth for a bite, and it just sits there staring like, okay, is it ever going to stop being starving? The ceremony is honestly beautiful. There the bride and groom stand at the altar, smiling like the whole world can wait. This is a huge moment for the family, Mom's even fighting back tears, dabbing at her eyes while everyone watches in silence. Staring at the shattered shell, I realized that dream of selling that egg to the knights for a quick fortune was dead on arrival, full-on disaster. Even back when he was still an apprentice, it wasn't all misery. Getting into the kingdom's top knight order made the groom's family finally take him seriously and respect him. Then the party dies out, and reality slams him in the face. Node jolts back to the real world, gasping like he can't even breathe. As Walter crowds right up behind him, exhaustion hits and nausea claws at his throat, but Walter only barks, telling him to keep going. then shoves another 100 rounds of training into his face. Node is sprinting for his life, stunned that this is real, gasping as he's totally wrecked, while that baby dragon zips right behind him like death on wings. He glances back and yells at the little guy, but the dragon just chirps and barrels straight at him like this is the fun game. The dragon slams down right on his head, and the weight hits like a wrecking ball. He nearly faceplants from the impact. Nod screams at the dragon to get off him. It's crushing him. But the thing just keeps chirping like it's having the time of its life. And Nod realizes this new life is going to be chaos from day one. Suddenly, the story plunges into a dark forest where Nod sprints around, utterly clueless, panicking over what he just got himself into. Right before he can move, something slams into the ground inches from his feet with a brutal thud, so hard he freezes in place on the spot. He snaps his head up and spots a monstrous wyvern hanging over him like doom itself. And ice-cold fear floods his veins as he tells himself over and over to get out fast. The monster flings open its giant jaws and unleashes a roar that rattles everything. Node doesn't even think. He just screams at the top of his lungs. His vision turns to pure white, and he keeps screaming as he lunges forward, clawing for anything he can grab. He jerks awake in his own bed, choking on air, still foggy as hell, then he feels it. A heavy weight pinned to his chest under the covers. That baby dragon's completely passed out, snoring loud and drooling straight onto Node's head. Nod finally jolts awake, feeling absolutely crushed, and he can't stop wondering if that wild nightmare was triggered by the little guy's weight. He jolts upright and screams "Newt" at the top of his lungs right away, but the dragon doesn't even flinch. It chirps back with a giant grin like it's thrilled, and that's it. No. Node just slumps there in bed, completely wrecked and furious, while Newt plays it like nothing's wrong, leaving the little dragon behind. He instantly shifts gears, looking up at him with those huge heartbreak eyes and letting out the tiniest, saddest whimper. Nod can't even hold onto his anger, snapping at the dragon that it's got real nerve, while Newt just bursts into another long, joyful chirp. Next, the tale whisks us to the Iron Dragon Knight's secret home base, buried deep inside the mountains. It's a brutal, miserable stretch of land that looks exactly like a wyvern's nest, so scary and ugly that even other night gangs won't even bother trying to claim it. But that's exactly why it works, because it makes it insanely easy to spot any spies trying to slip toward the capital. Newt strides along and suddenly snaps at his cloak, screaming because Newt is squirming inside, jiggling like he's trying to poke his head out. He leans in and tells the little dragon, "If anyone sees you, this is gonna go up in flames, so stay perfectly quiet until we reach the camp," while the girl nearby stares at them with a look so confused it's practically screaming. Then we jump to the training grounds, a giant stretch carved straight into the mountainside, where they raise full-grown wyverns, and the kingdom's top knights grind every single day to get even stronger and Node's right there with them, face down in the dirt, wheezing like crazy, while a voice looms overhead asking if he's done already and mocking him when he can't even rise up. Instructor Arens loomed over him and snapped, "Nod is behind because you skipped the military academy. And yeah, I know your special circumstances, but you still have to prove you belong in the best knight squad in the land." Nod refuses to stay down. He drags himself back to his feet and tells the instructor, "I'm not done. I can still keep going." They slam into each other again on the spot. Arens whips down a massive swing that screams "game over," but Node shoots his sword up and blocks it at the last second. That weight crushes his breath. Nod can feel his arms trembling as he fights to stay standing. It's not like he's getting stabbed. It's like a giant sledgehammer is smashing into him, and somehow he still refuses to fall. He spots a slim opening and yells that he's got him. Then Oren slashes through the moment, rockets over Noed's head, and lands behind him before Noed even has time to blink. He's sprawled flat on his back, gasping for air, filthy with dirt, while a sword hovers inches from his throat, pinned there like a death sentence. Instructor Orange won't give him a single second. He screams as he lifts his blade high for one final strike, and Noed just stares up, totally spent and frozen, unable to move. Nod's eyes blow wide. He realizes he's trapped with nowhere to go, and he knows he can't dodge this one, so he braced himself as the wooden training sword slammed straight into his chest plate with a brutal, thunderous thud. The instructor finally shuts it down, tells Node he's had enough for today, then turns and walks off, leaving Node sprawled in the dirt, too exhausted to even get a word out. He finally tries to haul himself up, but his arms are trembling like crazy, and all he can think is that he couldn't land a single hit or even last 1 second. As he stares at the instructor stride away, he realizes the guy isn't even breaking a sweat, and it slams into him in that instant just how massive the gap is between a normal guy and a top-tier knight. He's slumped there looking totally defeated when out of nowhere someone yells like it's a joke, "Looks like you got your head handed to you again today." A knight with a huge grin and a spear riding on his shoulder strides up, nods like he means business, glances at the ground, then looks you in the eyes and with a tired grunt greets you as his senior. He tells Node to ditch the formality and just call him Rina, then shoves a rake into his hands and orders him to start leveling that wreck of a training ground. Node sprints to work raking the dirt smooth, then he freezes mid-task and turns to Rina like, "Okay, what am I doing here?" Rina tells them the instructor's been searching for him, confirms that Newt's medical checkup is finally done, and insists Nod has to rush over and pick him up. Before Rina walks off, she blurts that the little dragon clearly wants something from him, so Node's totally thrown for a second. Then she just waves it off and tells him to hurry up and move it along. Node strides into the research wing, this massive, intimidating stone fortress crouched at the very edge of the grounds. He tears through the doors panting like crazy, then blurts out an apology right on the spot for keeping you waiting so long. Right before he can even stand up, Newt rockets straight into his face with a cheerful chirp, completely catching Nod off guard. The tiny dragon starts nuzzling and rubbing its head against Nod's hair, and Nod keeps yanking at him, growling that the clingy nuisance needs to back off and give him some space. A woman in a lab coat clutches a clipboard and just stands there, bursting with laughter at all of them. Then she smirks and says it's crystal clear Newt's been dying to see him again. Nod tries to talk to the professor, but Newt is basically stuck to his head, and the dragon keeps chirping, clawing in deeper until Nod snaps, "Let go." He finally pries the little guy free and lifts him up in both hands, and Newt just stares back with those huge, innocent eyes like he didn't do a single thing wrong. Newt keeps chirping and clinging to Noed's head like he's welded there, while Noed keeps yanking at him and snaps for him to cut it out. Meanwhile, the professor just watches, amused and curious all at once, like she's about to lean in and catch what happens next leading. As she finally settles back into her seat to keep writing, she lets slip that this little dragon is way more interesting than it sounds. Right as Node leans in, asking what she means. She keeps hammering out her report, saying the dragon looks just like any other wyvern, but it's his behavior that's totally out of place. And it turns out every other wyvern they've hatched is totally different, because none of them have ever been this friendly. Normally, they're aggressive, always on edge, and keep the staff and knights at arm's length. Noah just awkwardly stands there clutching the happy dragon, while the professor basically loses it, because Newt really thinks a human smells like his mother. She keeps furiously scribbling, muttering to herself that maybe, just maybe, they somehow overlooked this in their research. And since wyverns are basically built to cling once they finally trust someone, she just waits. Then Node finally breaks the silence and asks straight up what she needs him to do. The professor whips around with this huge, excited grin and blurts out that she wants to introduce Newt to every other wyvern right now. She rockets toward the door, tells him not to fall behind, and as Node trails after her with nerves screaming, he blurts out, "Do I really have to be here for this?" As they stride through the towering stone hallway, she can't stop herself from gushing. She's dying to watch how the rest of the dragons react to a human after one of their own has fully, completely accepted them. They finally crash into the iron gates of the restricted area, and metal rattling blasts through the air as the moment hangs on a breath. Node suddenly feels a dragon lurking nearby, and the professor strides straight up to the gate like she runs the place, claiming she's just passing through, while the guards look freaked out and snap back that she can't just waltz in. One of the guards is totally unraveling over her casual attitude, but the professor just grins and asks what the fuss is, like they're only there to meet a dragon, which makes the whole. The guards grow even more confused when they spot Node loitering in the back, and they demand to know who this kid is. Node just freezes there, painfully awkward, gripping Newt with both hands So the guard finally slumps with a miserable glare, lets them in on one condition. He has to come along and watch everything, while the professor's over the moon, but the guard slides a note over with a stone-cold, dead serious face, practically pleading, "Please don't do one single thing that could anger the dragon." As they slip into the dark stone corridor, Node clocks the truth fast. At this facility, almost everyone is just getting yanked around by the professor's every whim. As he scans that huge, icy hallway, it hits him. This place feels exactly like the real wyvern nest, the same one where he first stumbled on Newt's egg. The professor abruptly slams on the brakes and says, "We're here," and the guards go wide-eyed, because none of them expected to reach this spot that fast, but then it hits him this isn't a cave at all. It's a huge indoor stable built for the beast, and the moment he registers it, a deafening roar tears through the whole chamber. Noed's frozen in the dark when a massive roar rips through his whole chest, and he jerks his gaze upward. He finds himself face to face with a dragon's giant mouth, and he just knows his life is ending right this second. But then boom, a guy bursts in screaming for the beast to shut up, swings a crushing punch straight across the dragon's nose, and the massive creature backed off, while the guy casually hopped onto its back, leaving the Nodes frozen in place, totally baffled by what they just witnessed. He keeps grumbling about how loud the dragon is, until he suddenly freezes, turns his head, spots the professor and the guard standing right there, and then, spotting her at once, he snaps, asking if she's here for business, and why Node's tagging along with her in particular. The professor flashes a bright, cheerful smile and jumps right into her plan, explaining it to him right there. So she figured, let's let Newt meet a few older dragons and watch how they really play together. The guy's like, that sounds like a blast, can I stick around and watch? And the professor practically beams as he lets him join. Next thing you know, the professor starts rubbing down the dragon Zephyr, like a pro masseuse, while praising how freakishly healthy those scales look today. Rina won't shut up about how awesome the dragon's scales are. So when Nod finally looks at them, he can't believe how calm the huge beast stays as it gets petted especially. Walter shows up with a torch, shoots a question. Is Rena slacking off in the stables again? And Node and Newt practically jump out of their skins because they didn't have a clue he'd come, and Node can't stop thinking how insane it is to slack off in a dragon's nest. Turns out this dude's full name isn't some mystery at all. It's Reinald Harlow. But he orders Node to call him Rena, flashing that fake smile, and Walter explains that sure, the guy jokes around like a total clown. Yet most of the time, he's still one of the absolute top-tier fighters in the Night Order, which, seeing that massive dragon, Node finally gets it. This isn't just a cool sight. It's a wake-up call that he's got a mountain of lessons to master if he wants any chance of keeping up. But Rena just flashes a grin and tells him, trust me, I learn something new every single day too. Nod stares down at his fresh uniform, claws the fabric tight, and feels it in his bones. There's no way he's ready to wear the robe of the Iron Dragon Knights yet. But Newt totally shrugs it all off, grinning as he keeps Noad tucked close, then joyfully licks his face like it's the best thing ever. That tiny dragon just locks eyes with him, sparkling like crazy, staring up as if Nodo is the only person on Earth. And Noah just smirks, tells himself it's fine because he knows he's still a rookie, and he's got a long road ahead, just like the tiny creature curled up in his arms. Nod shoots Newt a small smile, telling himself, I just need to level up on my own time. And he finally understands he can't rush it, he has to take it one step at a time and thanks the little guy for being there. Newt chirps back with a curious sound, tilting his head up at him while Rena catches Nod's attention from across the training grounds, waving hard and yelling, come over. But Nod fires back, I'm on my way, and barrels toward her until Rena drags him right up to the massive beast waiting there, and as she introduces it, he tells everyone the dragon's real name is Zephyros, though everyone calls him Zephyr. Turns out, when Rena first joined the Knights, she stepped in and took over the dragon from a senior who was ready to retire. So Rena explains that Zephyr is a battle-tested veteran, already 15 years old. Then Rena leans in and he steadies himself and tells her he won't show a shred of fear. Because these dragons are insanely smart, and if they smell panic, they don't just react, they come for you. Nod can feel that massive beast staring him down, and sweat soaks his skin. He blurts out what he's supposed to do to keep the peace, so Rena tells him it's all about guts, and he points straight at Newt, who's standing there staring down the massive dragon, and not a shred of fear shows on his face. Rena clocks it instantly. This baby never stands a chance in a fight, yet Zephyr still doesn't rattle him at all. He tells Noad he should learn from that fearless mindset, and it sparks. He forces himself to take a deep breath and stay calm, then asks Rena if he can finally reach out and touch the dragon. And that sparks Rena big time, fired up by his new student's nerve. Noad planted himself face to face with the massive dragon, while Rena and the professor watched from the sidelines, but the closer he gets, the colder it hits. He swears Newt's chilly sure, but Zephyr feels like a full-on block of ice. Turns out dragons are built like tanks, so they can swagger from icy mountains to blazing, active volcanoes and handle it like it's nothing. Rena beams and says Zephyr is a rare snow dragon variant, and Zephyr's like, it's awesome. But the professor just shakes his head and calls it a real shame. Because variants are way stronger than regular dragons, Nod starts spiraling, thinking Rena might be even more powerful than a gold rank adventurer. But Rena snaps him out of it, stop overthinking, and tells him to just introduce the two dragons, then she lifts the baby up and prays it all works out. Everything clicks into place as the giant beast glares down at the tiny guy, then the Node pops the question. So, is this really the right way to do things? Just as Zephyr lowers his huge head for a deep, curious sniff at the baby, Nod spots the dragon totally zeroing in on Newt's scent, and Rena can't look away from how wild that reaction is, right up until the giant dragon snaps its attention straight to Node. Then fear hits him like a truck as he panics, blurting, am I the next one you're sniffing? Nod hovers right behind the huge dragon, staring at it like, wait, you're not attacking. Even though he's still trying to figure out what in the world is going on as the big guy actually seems to accept Newt, and Newt starts joyfully rubbing against his fur. Rena stands off to the side, just watching with a thoughtful hum. 6 months vanish like a blink of an eye, and suddenly Node can't hold back. He asks his instructor straight up if he's really earned a vacation after all that time. The instructor had to tell them the truth. Things were about to get wild. Then he announced the Iron Dragon Knights were being shipped out for massive joint drills and border duty, so no more messing around. So Node pieces it all together and realizes the truth. No one's got time to babysit a rookie like him for a while. His instructor snaps that this isn't some legit vacation. Still, he's got 2 whole months off, so he turns to Node like, "Okay, what am I supposed to do with all this time until the new?" Then Newt suddenly explodes into motion through the woods, launching at a monster's throat, diving in and bringing it down with a violent spray of blood. Nod strides up and tells Newt he crushed it, saying those monsters don't even faze him anymore. While Newt just chirps back, especially since they just dropped a spear deer, this monster's meant for way higher-ranked adventurers. It's fiercely territorial and those horns can slice right through armor, but Node just double-checks his paperwork, slams the stamp down, and officially seals the deal, ending the quest to stop those monsters from wrecking the local fields. Node watches Newt snatch a chunk of meat out of the air, and he's smugly like, yeah, with a little help, he's getting scary good at hunting by himself. He drops down against a giant rock, catches his breath, and just watches Newt grin and absolutely demolish his meal right there on the forest floor. It's crystal clear Newt's growing at lightning speed, and Node can't stop noticing how much bigger he's gotten lately. He stared back at his instructor and asked what he was supposed to do with his 2 months of leave. Then his grip tightened on his blade, like he was ready to move. He decides to sprint back to the guild as an adventurer, refuses to waste his time off, and pushes hard to keep sharpening his skills until he's even stronger. Newt chirps for seconds, and Nod gladly serves him another helping. Then the tiny dragon lets out this joy-filled little sound, and just when it's going so well, Nod finally pushes his way back into town, and when he strolls through the guild's crowded halls, that familiar rush hits him hard. Like every old memory is rushing back as he stands there. He stands before the quest board, and he leaves Newt behind at the family home to keep Iris company. Because right now, all he wants is a job that finally puts him on the right path. He spots a request that screams perfect match, a top-tier monster hunt called *** land sharks ***, right out in **Alco's territory ***, and it hits him fast like he's just been handed the real prize. Since, once these problems start wreaking havoc, they burrow underground and vanish into the dirt. Then they lie in wait, ready to ambush anyone who dares to pass by. Land sharks roam in huge packs, but the good news is they're pretty weak solo, so no. So Nod glances over the board and realizes the day's basically over. Everything left is the ugly, annoying stuff that pays next to nothing. He figures taking on land sharks is the perfect training run for Newt, tough enough to level up, not so deadly it'll wipe them out. So he commits to the quest like it's a pretty safe bet. As long as he doesn't bleed money, he's good. And it hits him that he finally has the space to think like this, making every reckless risk from his past feel like it paid off. Then he spots something off on the paper, and his stomach drops, because the order for 20 monsters didn't just show up. It came straight from Wessena City. He's totally thrown off. This hunt is supposed to be happening in Alco's territory, so why is the guy from the city right next door the one begging for help? Normally, the local lords would handle the monster problem, but most of the soldiers are really just farmers who have to get back to the fields. Whenever the situation turns into a total mess, the higher-ups don't sweat it. They just bite the bullet and hand the Adventurers Guild the dirty work. Nod keeps replaying it in his head, convinced that name on the paper has to be the village chief or the lord himself. Then he can't make sense of why some outsider is tangled in it until a hand snaps onto his shoulder from behind, and a voice growls that he's better off turning around and walking away before this one gets him. Xenius slides up with a laid-back yo, and it totally catches Nod off guard. Meanwhile, Lies keeps waving like crazy and says it's been forever since they last saw him. Xenius fires a question, does Node know what's going on with this request? And once Node clicks which one he means, Xenius lays it out. It's the cleanup after a monster stampede. A stampede happens when monsters multiply way too fast, then swarm the area like a hungry tidal wave, snatching food and hunting for a new place to live. It can hit every kind of crew, bugs, birds, the whole mess, right up to brutal locust plagues, and that's. So why do the monsters suddenly start roaming across gigantic distances, smashing through everything in their path, and leaving the whole region in total hopeless ruin? Xenius's face is stone-cold serious when he admits his party wasn't just there. They were part of the crew sent in to stop the disaster. He still remembers the moment it all kicked off, right after they wrapped up a basic gathering quest and started heading home. They spent their time sprinting through the streets, delivering packages left and right, jumping in to help the locals with every drop, just trying to be useful. They finished their rounds, waved the villagers off, and figured it was just another ordinary day. Xenius points out that this is the final chore for the whole village, and Lysis shrugs. just take it one tiny step at a time. Zinnius grumbles that even without reaching the node's level yet, they still have to earn their keep as adventurers, while Lysa stares into the distance, wondering how Node's doing these days, and she heard that legendary mushrooms are lurking around here somewhere, and Zinnius immediately snaps to it. Does that mean it's finally Shino's turn to prove she can cook? Jago snaps to a dead stop, and the dread hits. Zinnius notices instantly and demands to know what's wrong as he trails off, right in the middle of the gra. The ground starts to quake, and a huge blast hits right beside them. Someone in the party blurts, "Did you feel that?" But they don't even get to finish asking before. Zinnius yanks his sword out in pure panic, screaming that a giant swarm of land sharks is closing in from everywhere. He realizes too late they've walked straight into the middle of a nest, and Shino goes totally still, frozen in pure shock as she blurts out that this can't be real. Monsters exploded from the ground in every direction, and Zinnius and Jagos had to hack like their lives depended on it just to slam the jaws shut. Shino shrieks that they're about to get wiped out if they don't get moving, especially as the whole group is straining just to hold the line. Zinnius roars that everyone should quit the fight, drop everything and sprint straight to Wesena City before they lose their lives. Later on, Zinnius slumps there, gripping his head in utter defeat, realizing that in the chaos they lost every single scrap of the cargo they were supposed to deliver. Wesena City's streets are usually a roaring trade hub, but right now everyone's snapping, yelling for answers. What are the local lord and the guild even doing to help? Body counts are climbing everywhere. Adventurers are shrieking in agony while everyone else is yelling, "Get the healers ready right now." Down at the guild, the whole place surges toward the notice board, and nobody can wrap their head around it. An actual emergency quest just dropped, and it's a full-blown land shark disaster. Zinnius tells them that when the whole city went into total panic, his crew had no choice. They jumped into the emergency hunt to stop the swarm, but once the sharks started pouring in, it turned into a full-blown nightmare. No matter how many they carved down, fresh ones kept swimming forward until the healers finally ran out of breath and couldn't keep up anymore. In the middle of the chaos, a shark explodes toward Almana. She thrashes on the ground, screaming her own name as the monster snaps closer and closer. In the present, Zinnius blurts out, "Shino, are you really okay after all that?" But Lysis drops her gaze and admits she took a brutal hit. Zinnius jabs his own hip and points to it to show exactly where she got wounded, so awkward it almost hurts to watch. Slice's face flashes bright red. She looks absolutely mortified, and blurts out if he's seriously going to talk about her butt in front of everyone. Zinnius wraps it up by saying Lies is finally patched up, but they still had to bail from the fight. Then boom, a silver-ranked guy arrives, slaughters the boss, and wipes out the disaster for good, while Noah just keeps nodding like, "Yep, that's exactly how it went." Nod drifts back to the armored wolf leader he and Elsa just fought, and the shock hits him hard. If mountain wolves live long enough, they can grow into those same brutal monsters. He stares at the paper and blurts out how any of this ties into their current job, because they already took the leader down. Zinnius kicks it off by saying the whole monster disaster didn't start here at all. It blew up in the Alco's territory, and it throws Node completely off guard. Turns out the Lord there is absolutely obsessed with money. He dumps every duty on his staff, then boots anyone who even rubs him the wrong way. Those insane taxes wrecked everything. Ruins spread fast, and the land turned into a monster-filled breeding ground. And the moment she hears how the Lord handled it, Elsa recoils in pure disgust, then lays into the guy like he's the absolute worst. Zinnius snaps to it. His friends jumped into the fight because they'd grown up in a tiny village, and when they saw Alco's fear hit hard, they figured their own home would be next. He points out that Alca's territory can't even wipe out the leftover monsters, so Wesena's own city is coughing up the money to handle the request. It's a total mess, and Zinnius can't shake the feeling the king is about to seize the whole territory sooner than anyone realizes, leaving no. He started drafting the node heading, muttering to himself that these political jobs were a total nightmare, and if a trainee Dragon Knight got involved, everything would turn into even bigger chaos. Node shoves the paperwork back into Zinnius's hands and gives him a sharp thank you for the warning, then realizes the Alca job is nothing but a political trap and decides to walk away. With that job gone for good, Zinnius leans in and asks what they want to do next. Then he shrugs like, "Maybe we should just wait it out until the board refreshes in the morning." Node says it sounds like a solid plan. Then the guild receptionist swoops in and asks, right then and there, if Node has a minute to talk. She leaned in and dropped a bombshell on Node. An official nomination request had just landed, and it was meant for him. Usually, requests like this only reach the big-name adventurers or real specialists, especially when the client demands one specific person by name, and snagging these jobs is the fastest route to landing big-time connections, and it usually comes with some seriously awesome perks. Team up with the Merchant Guild and you score first grabs on rare gear, while the alchemists fast-track the deadliest magic meds, only if everything goes your way. The receptionist shoves the request into a letter and walks off, leaving Nodes frozen in pure shock. He has no clue who could have sent him a private job like that. Panic creeps in as he wonders if someone's trying to trap him. So he storms to the receptionist and demands to know who actually sent it. She scans the files, tells him the client's name is Johan Daubriere, and it hits hard. Johan is Node's own brother, the one who married into a whole other noble house. Node stands there dead still, stunned out of his mind. He can't wrap his head around it because it's Johan, his own brother, who sent the request. He double-checks the envelope like it might bite, then reads the letter inside. Johan's words hit him hard. "My dear brother," and the note cuts off at S, and then lays into what the job is really about. Meanwhile, Johan just sits back in his office, calm as can be while he's busy scribbling that monsters are running wild in his territory. He drops this line. "They haven't been caught in ages, so Node better swing by and wipe them out cheap." The receptionist looks uneasy and fires back, asking if he's really sure, because the pay is downright awful. But Noah just flashes a calm answer and says he's taking the job no matter what. After Johan married into the Aubriere family, they've been propping up the Ferris household with cash for years. So yeah, it totally makes sense. Nod tells Xenius and Lysis, "I can't say no to my brother no matter what, even if the reward is basically pocket change," and he set off because the only thing really gnawing at him was this. How on earth was he going to survive a full week-long carriage ride with Newt riding right alongside him? Lucky for him, the Iron Dragon Knights hand over one of their own carriages to use, and Node leans in to thank them for making everything so much easier. The horses snored at Newt like it was nothing, while that little dragon just kept trying to turn everything into playtime. Newt slumped in the driver's seat, completely drained, the brutal long trip grinding him down until his eyes started to droop, and he nearly fell asleep as the horses kept pounding along the path at the same steady pace. Newt suddenly pops his head out behind him and blasts a brutal screech, scaring the life out of Node, who jolts, yelps, and scrambles to keep his grip on the reins. The horses panic and bolt, and Node gets yanked forward so hard he has to lean back with all his weight. Then he yanks those reins with everything he's got, trying to force them to calm down. He glances back at Newt and asks if he's already sick of being stuck in the back, only for the dragon to fire him a jittery look like he's itching to stir up more chaos. Newt chirps like nothing happened, and that cute act instantly earns him a scolding from Node, telling him he needs to start acting right for once. Newt lets out a smug little hum, shuts his eyes, and wears that way too proud grin like he just nailed the whole disaster. Node sinks into silence for a full minute just to steady his nerves, because when they start running into more people, he's warning Newt he'll need to duck back inside. The carriage keeps rattling down the quiet road, and Nod can only pray if anyone spots that dragon for even a second, they'll chalk it up as a weird cat or something. A few days pass and Node is right back to sprawled out lounging in his seat. Then he tilts his head up, just in time to watch Newt snap, lose patience, and launch into the sky. He clocks that Newt is totally over the carriage life. And since the kid's flying so high, he's sure nobody below will even bat an eye at a dragon wheeling overhead. Nod is riding hard on his horse, and a rugged old man in a heavy coat keeps pace beside him, steady, relentless all the way as night crashes down over the giant fortress perched on the hill. The crescent moon hangs in the sky, and the carriage finally starts to pulls up to the entrance, and Johan is already there, grinning like he's been waiting forever, telling Noah he's so happy he made the long trip. But then he drops his gaze to the dragon and blurts, "Wait, did you blow up since we last talked?" Note shoots back, "Yeah, and then they dropped the bomb." Emilia reveals Iris named him Newt. Immediately, little Emilia starts yelling, "It's not after a gecko. It's after a legendary warrior," and poor making No just goes quiet because he's already gotten screamed at once for mixing that up. One of the girls locks eyes with Newt and instantly snaps. She starts screaming that he's the cutest thing she's ever seen. The woman behind her lunges in, yanks her back and snaps, "Chill," because she hasn't even said hello yet, so she blurts out an apology to Node for the kid's non-stop energy, and Node just shrugs it off, laughing like it's nothing. Then he turns and greets Emilia, assuming she's probably about the same age as his sister Iris. As the two of them stand there totally spellbound by the little dragon, sparkles blazing in their eyes, unable to look away. So Nod shoves Nude forward and tells him to say hi, and the dragon just chirps happily like it's welcoming everyone. Emilia steps up, introduces herself, and declares, "I want to be your friend." And just as everyone finally starts to settle in, the scene cuts off in the middle of it, right there. Johan says they've got a mountain to catch up on, then pushes for a welcome meal first, so they can get the whole thing started right. Then the staff hauls out the food, apologizing like it's just some plain spread. But Nino cuts in instantly, telling them it's totally fine and that everything looks absolutely delicious while the dinner gets underway. Because for nobles, the table isn't just food, it's where the power talks start and the political chess moves land, sometimes even turning into a spot for secret schemes. Since Noah is family, one of the older relatives brings up marriage and presses, asking if he's started thinking about it yet because Node snaps off a chunk of bread and laughs that marriage is way off. He's still a trainee after all. The old man gapes and asks if he's really training with the Iron Dragon Knights So Noah cuts in, humble as ever, saying he's only standing at the bottom of the ladder, but the guy snaps back that his father must be bragging about him to everyone. Then Noah keeps his cool, staying modest and insisting he's got a ton left to learn. The older noble bursts into laughter and goes, "You know, it's not every day I get to talk to someone with ties to the knights and the real stories from the inside. Those are always the best part of the." He explains that for people living out in the provinces, the only chance they ever get to see the knights in action is during those big joint drills, which snaps someone at the table into remembering that the Eastern Knights are about to run a massive drill. And now everyone's asking themselves how long it's been since they last saw training that huge. Johan leans in and asks if all of it really went down back when Nod was still a tiny kid. Like, is it truly as huge as people swear? One of the older nobles at the table clears his throat and explains, "While everyone was busy partying over our war victory, the kingdom's territory expanded so fast it turned into a real problem, because for younger guys, it's tough to feel the scale of it." He says the border used to hug the eastern mountains, so this whole region was always one step away from getting yanked straight into the chaos of the fighting. Sure, they're not living in a war zone anymore, but life still hasn't gotten easier. Joining the Royal Knights means they're forced to send out tons more soldiers than ever, and it's wiped out the local workforce so badly that the farms have gone completely idle. Johan drops his gaze, thinking this could be the perfect moment to finally bring it up. Then Noad spots that look and turns to him, asking what his brother is thinking about as Johan finally spills the truth. He didn't just invite Node to hang out, he needed him because those coming military drills are the real trigger. Node's totally thrown off, and he blurts that he thought this was only a monster hunting gig, but Johan leans in, shoots back, technically yeah, and the seriousness hits him like a wave. He tells them that some woodcutters just stumbled on monster tracks deep in the forest, and when the guild sent adventurers to investigate, they uncovered a huge spider nest hiding in the woods. The guild begged those adventurers to handle it, but they belaid so hard they basically ran for the hills, swearing the job was way too deadly for them. Yet here's the nightmare. The only top-tier adventurers who could actually pull it off are out on an expedition to the east, and they won't be back for a while, which means that the timing couldn't be more brutal. Those giant drills had already wiped out the men. With everyone gone, the local militia is basically dead on arrival, and it can't lift a finger to help. So he's got no choice but. The villages are packed with nothing but women, kids, and the elderly, people who can't fend off monsters by themselves. Johan slams his fork down and admits he's scared too. If bandits spot how helpless everyone looks, they'll rush in and stir up even bigger trouble. Johan breaks down how some people still raked in profit by selling food amid the chaos, and then he straight up admits it. His brother-in-law is a ruthless genius for pulling it off. He claims big military expeditions are basically gold mines, because thousands of people moving around means endless business. Then he drops the grim news that the summer wheat harvest is looking awful. And he lays it out, everyone with a pulse is storming east for the money, so all that's left back here are fresh rookies. No way he can afford a guild from out of town with all those brutal fees, so instead he decides to skip the middleman and shoot a request straight to the Node. Node looks completely rattled by the news and snaps. "So what was your plan? What were we supposed to do? If you asterisk hadn't decided to skip work and show up on vacation right now, Johan." Johan just shrugs it off and says he'd already brought in another adventurer he knows, thinking his brothers would at least take the job for him, while the girls in the back start looking more than a little uneasy. He pauses for a beat, then drops the real bombshell. This isn't just about him at all, it's also for the new family member they're about to welcome soon. Nod looks downright exhausted as Johan tells him, "Don't sweat the reward, my house will cover it." But just as he tries to relax, his wife cuts in, snapping that's not what she meant at all. With a huge grin, Johan finally blurts the jaw-dropping news. He and his wife are having a baby, and she beams right back, saying their little one is expected sometime this winter. Node freezes at the shock of the news, then bursts out with instant, loud congratulations for both of them. But the vibe flips fast. Johan jerks the talk back to business, asking what monster they're hunting in the forest and naming the exact target they need to take down. Turns out the target isn't some normal thing at all. It's finally revealed as a colossal night spider, a monster known for its terrifying presence that's just starting to close in, which is lurking deep inside Alba's forest. Then the guide tells Nod to follow him and starts leading the way while Node cracks open his monster book to dig up tonight's spider threat, while Newt zips overhead as the guide hammers it home. These spiders are monstrous, non-stop aggressive carnivores. Then they fire out sticky silk, sling up massive webs and they've got this brutal, tough shell that turns fighting alone into a straight-up nightmare. Moving on. He says it's been a few weeks since the Lord slammed the door on anyone entering the woods, and the local hunters are getting so fed up it's about to boil over. He tells them they've never really had trouble with nasty, strong monsters crashing in here before. So Node leans in and asks what kind of stuff they usually dig up or hunt around these parts. The guide swears it's mostly goblins, giant bats, and spear deer out there. Just, they haven't spotted any forest wolves lately. Node can't shake the thought that maybe it's just weak monsters down there too. But the guy shuts it down fast and says they don't even venture that deep into the forest. The guide warns that herb bears sometimes wander right up to the wood's edge. And while that happens, Newt keeps his eyes peeled and his nose working. Node figures the night spider isn't even from this corner of the forest. It's probably been kicked out of its old territory, so the guide slams on the brakes, freezes in place, and tells Node, "This is it, no farther than this." Node shoots the guy a quick heartfelt thanks as they split apart, and then finally, he slipped into the deep forest alone, while Newt circled overhead, scouting everything from above. Nod leans in and tells the little dragon they've got to lock in right now, and Newt chirps back like, "Yeah, got it, then." Then boom, Davies drops from the sky with a deafening cry, slamming into a wild boar monster and catching it totally off guard. Nod ruffles his fur and praises him for a job well done. Newt immediately leans in, practically glowing with pride. He can't stop marveling at how insane a wyvern's sense of smell is, and he's blown away that Newt's scouting has this whole trip running perfectly so far. When the sun starts sliding under the trees, Node shuts it down for the day and quickly sets up a camp spot. Node hustles to stack up a massive pile of firewood, while Newt slips under the low branches, hunting for what they need. And he starts stacking rocks around the pit, talking like this isn't some normal wildlife situation. Monsters don't care about fire, not one bit. He insists they've got to smother the light because one bright flame could lure something vicious. So he keeps the fire low and locked in, soup bubbling in a pot while skewers of meat sizzle on the side. Newt stares at the food with wide, eager eyes, and then bam, his stomach growls so loud it snaps through the quiet campsite like a warning. Node finally lifts one of the skewers, declares the meat is ready, and Newt stares like he just witnessed a damn miracle. Then the little dragon dives into the food like a storm, while Nod sits down and digs into his own dinner. Nod grabs a huge spoonful of the steaming soup and wears a satisfied grin like he just nailed the perfect meal. They both shove the last bites down, then settle into their secret hideout in the woods, safe and tucked away like the world can't touch them. Under the crescent moon, everything goes dead silent. Only a thin ribbon of smoke curls upward into the night sky, and then by the very next morning, Node finally nails what they need, then points out a huge, thick web strung between the trays like it's been waiting for them. Nod cranes his neck at those towering white cocoons dangling from the trees, realizing, yep, this is where the night spider stashes its trapped prey, basically its creepy little storage room. He plows through the brutal brush with Newt, mind racing back to why these monsters got their name. Because they don't kill what they catch right away, they keep it alive. As they slink through the clearing, Node finally locks eyes on the huge creature crouched low over the ground. Then he hisses that he's found it. The two of them crouch in the tall grass, hiding tight as that spider's hairy legs skitter inches away, both of them holding their breath, waiting for the exact perfect second to pounce. Newt rockets into the air first, just a blur of scales and claws, catching the monster completely off guard. That tiny dragon keeps slipping and dodging just outside the spider's grasp, until bam, the creature gets wrenched back and smashed right into its own sticky web. Node steps in and fires off a quick compliment to Newt for the awesome teamwork, and that little dragon chirps back, brimming with pure energy. Noah doesn't waste a second. He surges forward with a roar, swinging his blade in a brutal arc that slices straight through the monster. Blood sprays across the forest floor as the threat is finally shut down, and Node just casually tips it off with a quick goodbye. He slips his sword back into its sheath and admits it was all way easier than he expected, while Newt lets out a long, happy chirp like it's cheering the win. Newt slumps onto the grass, wheezing as he catches his breath after that brutal fight, and Noah just smiles, because he swears this scrappy little diversion was asterisk perfect. Even if Newt can't fight back yet, he'll be okay as long as he keeps dodging like that. Nod leans in to pat him with praise, shouting his name, while Newt jerks his gaze upward, still completely blown away, like he can't even finish the thought. Joy, yeah, it hits for a second, but the calm shatters fast. Newt suddenly snaps into a growl and slams out a razor-sharp warning right as, a second later, a much bigger spider erupts down from the canopy, screeching, and Node yelps in pure shock as the massive creature crashes into the ground at the exact spot where they're standing. Node only just throws himself aside in time, and the ground bucks beneath him as the impact rattles him from the inside. He can't even process it, another one again. But he snaps into focus and charges forward, swinging his sword too. To clear some space, Newt charges ahead, bares his teeth at the beast, and when Noad tells him he's fine, he's already thanking him for. He saves them in time, because if Newt hadn't screamed right when he did, it would have been over for good. Noad can't look away as he stares up at the monster hanging over them, and it's way bigger than the last one. Like the thing is about to swallow the sky as he counts the 12 eyes staring back at him, it hits. This isn't just any version, it's the high-ranked one, and it's had all the time in the world to fully grow into something terrifying. Node's mind rockets back to the day Newt was just a tiny baby wyvern barely out of the egg, because seriously, how the heck did the little guy grow this fast since then? But he knows Newt's still a kid, one who's got a whole mountain of growing up ahead before he can finally call himself an adult. He finally gets it, monsters aren't so different from anything else. The ones that cling on the longest and rack up the most experience level up into their own elite rank, growing so terrifying and powerful they feel like an entirely new species, complete with scary new names. Staring at the towering beast in front of him, Node realizes this isn't any ordinary monster. This is the absolute apex night spider, the biggest one around, a general spider. The monster's leg drops like a towering pillar, and Node barely scrambles back in time, just barely, before the crushing impact catches him mid-step. He slams in with everything he's got, trying to counter with a sword swing. But the blade only skitters off that brutal hard shell, and he instantly knows it. That strike was far too shallow to leave a real mark. That spider was blazing across the clearing, way faster than Big ever should have handled, springing from spot to spot and yanking Node along non-stop, like it wouldn't let him breathe. To stay alive, that nightmare of a thing hangs over the forest, tracking his every move with 12 blazing eyes while. Then wham, he blasts out a huge spray of webbing, and it nails Node right in the middle of his swing, trapping his arms and making him instantly feel the danger. His stance is wrecked, he can't catch his footing, he's left wide open, and the monster is already surging forward to end it. That giant spider general slams a leg down slam, but Node's eyes lock in hard, everything stretching into slow motion. He stays low, bursts forward at insane speed, dodges every brutal hit, and launches into the air mid-leap. Launching sky-high, he rockets over and dodges a brutal swipe from the spider, straight past his claws. The monster hurls a vile glob of slime, but he doesn't even flinch, he roars, "Now we go all in," and lunges forward full speed even though. That beast looks straight out of a nightmare, massive and terrifying, but he still won't back down. Nod barrels straight at the monster's face, shrieking at the top of his lungs, and throws every last ounce of strength he has left into one brutal. With one massive swing, his blade cuts straight through the spider's head, clean as a guillotine. With the fight finally finished, Nod slumped hard onto his sword, gasping for air and aching all over. Newt swoops in right after, chirping nonstop. Newt spirals around him in pure panic, completely losing it. They just laugh and yank the little guy in for this massive, squeeze-your-bones hug. He starts patching himself up, brushing off the pain like it's nothing, just bruises and a few small cuts. And then he tightly wraps his side with bandages. Nod snaps the bandages tight around his waist, staring down at his injury thinking, that spider took a bite out of me, but I'll heal up, easy, and then he cuts himself off. He clenches his fist and feels a surge of confidence hit like lightning. After a fight like that, he knows he's getting stronger, no doubt, so if a few days slip by and at last it's time, he's about to head out for real. He hooks up with Johan and Johan's wife one last time in the field. Johan shows them the massive haul he snagged. His wife stares at the monster parts like they're unreal. And the second Node says it's actually 2 whole spiders. Her jaw drops to the floor. Johan reaches out and tells Node he looks wiped out, urging him to just stay the night instead of bolting out. Node starts to protest, but eventually he caves and tells them he'd truly appreciate a place to stay. Johan's wife's face lights up, because he's sticking around a bit longer, and then the knife. Before Nod can do anything else, he finally keels over into bed, completely drained, while Newt is already out cold, sprawled on his stomach. The next morning, Noad stands beside his carriage, tightening his gear like he's about to bolt out the door, and Johan's wife asks if he really has to run off this soon. Noad snaps back that he's still only an apprentice, so he has no choice but to return and do his duties. The moment the carriage jolts forward, she waves him off and reminds him about the winter festival, says he can come back anytime he wants. And he nod waves right back, with Newt flying beside him as they head toward He charged toward the royal capital, and the moment he stepped through the gates, he bolted into a workshop, slammed his shattered armor on the counter, and demanded the smith tell him, "Can this thing even be repaired?" The blacksmith stares at the smashed gear, grins, and says, "Yeah, I can fix it. But the damage is wrecked so badly it's going to drain your wallet, and then he cuts himself off. The node can't stop replaying how much he loved that set, but then he feels it. His growth is sprinting past his gear, so he finally decides it's time to chase something new. The smith stares at the damage and blurts, "What the heck could have wrecked my gear this bad?" And the guy casually admits he fought a general spider, leaving the smith. Yell that node's lucky to still be alive. Then shove him to prove himself by showing off the materials he just managed to haul back. Staring at the estimate, Nod realizes Johan's reward won't even pay the bill. But when it comes to his life, he knows there's no number that can settle this, so the blacksmith tells him, "Yeah, it'll take a bit." Then slams his fist down and promises, as soon as he finishes his rush orders, he'll make this job his absolute top priority. Nod looks around and sees the entire workshop in full chaos. Workers screaming for materials while the smith snaps and loses his temper. And yep, turns out the whole mess is military exercises, and lords from everywhere are pouring orders into the capital non-stop. So Nod tells him he's good, even with that weight on him. Then he strides straight to the Adventurers Guild to knock out his business, only for the receptionist to shove the paperwork for the material buyout into his hands. Nope. Nod stares at the total, then snaps, asking if something's wrong, because he dumped so many parts into his own gear that he fully expected the payout to be way smaller. The receptionist nods and tells Node the price is right, then points out the material costs are skyrocketing because of those military drills. Leaving. Node stared at that massive payout and thought, sure, the drills slowed my armor down, but this extra cash feels like a sweet silver lining. Everything flips when Alec bursts in, panicked and clutching the ledger. Then Node snaps, screaming at him, "What the hell is happening to the family budget?" He demands to know why this is happening again, after they finally started clawing their way through that debt, but Alec. And it's the same drills that send food prices through the roof. And that's when Node finally realizes those military exercises are wrecking his life. On every level. Moving on to training, Walter suddenly lunges in with a brutal attack, and Node barely has time to react to how insanely fast he's moving. Walter rockets through the air, refusing to let up the pressure. Just as Node swings that brutal heavy blow, Walter barely gets his sword up to block it in time. For one terrifying beat, the two of them clash blades, and just as Node finally gets the opening, he shoves the other guy away and slides back into position to reset his stance. But right then the instructor slams the session to a halt, and both of them instantly yank back, dropping their weapons at once. Nod blurted out a gasp of thanks, doubled over and clinging to his sword, completely winded, while Walter looked fresh enough to fight for days. Walter smirks after the session and can't hide it. He's genuinely blown away that Node still managed to land a clean hit, even though the kid really does take after his father, Albert, as Walter strides off and Node stays in the back, wheezing and shaking, asking, "Did I say something?" And Walter just shrugs like those last 2 months of training definitely weren't for nothing. Then Walter finally blurts out the big news. Training for the real Dragon Knights starts now, and Node explodes with a massive, loud thank you. Later that evening, Node rumbled through town in a carriage, grumbling because it was already getting so late, like, seriously, when his brand new armor was finally ready. He's just sitting there, lost in thoughts of Elsa, and somehow, despite everything, she still feels like a decent person, until he hears something outside that makes his breath catch, cutting him off. You clock a shady hooded guy just loitering in the alley's shadows, and the whole area feels downright wrong. Node's first instinct is to shrug and let the city guards handle the mess, until he hears a terrified voice screaming for help, and his attention snaps to it instantly. He can't just shrug it off. He slams the carriage to a halt and orders everyone to stay put, then bolts into the dark to find out what's really going on. A scarred thug steps in front of Node, grins like trouble, and snarls that they're using this spot right now. So Node better turn around and keep walking if he knows what's good for him. Node doesn't blink, he just stares the guy down cold and snaps that he's only saying it once, because the guy's blocking him and he needs him to move right now. No waste 0 seconds. He slams forward and floors the lead thug with a brutal face-first hit, leaving He's staggering around, yelling that a bastard note is what's wrong. But his tough guy act is already cracking and crumbling. The thug screams for help, but the others just stand there, cool as ice, like they already know it's time to end this. It's over in a blink. Nod stands over a pile of guys he just dropped, while the girl he saved lies on the ground watching him. And then she finally finds her courage. She turns to him and blurts out how grateful she is for stepping in like that. She introduces herself as Elisha, sounding painfully formal, and then she thanks him again, like she's trying to get the words out before her courage runs out. He doesn't even check if she's hurt, just blurts out whether those guys were trying to rob her, and then she darts her gaze away and she blurts out the truth. She's with the Magic Academy, and she's almost certain someone paid those thugs just to target her. Noed claims he could probably squeeze the truth out of them, but Elisha shuts him down, says it's pointless, because they're nothing but low-level hired muscle. He figures if they're gonna do this, they should at least bind those guys up, so he offers to grab some rope. Then Elisha snaps, "Wait." Nod glances back at Elisha, spots that she's stopped dead in her tracks and asks what's wrong. She drops her gaze and says with full confidence that she can actually forge the exact rope they need, right there herself. Before Nod can even blink, Elisha hurls her magic into the air, and the street beneath her starts to split and crack wide open. The earth rips open, and she yanks brutal iron chains straight out of the shattered pavement like they've been waiting for her. Node swears he didn't see that coming, so Elisha grabs the chains and hands them over and tells him it's all just alchemy, but Node snaps back that smashing up the public road is a massive problem. Right on cue, the guards finally burst in, hauling those thugs off, and they straight up thank the two of them for stepping in and helping. Nod says it's a huge win they patched the street before the knights ever laid eyes on it, right as Elisha. He thanks her again and Node urges, "Come on, let me walk you to the main road, I'll keep you safe." Elisha nods, agrees on the spot, and thanks him one last time as a carriage rumbles past them down the street. On this quiet night street, Node grabs the moment and tells the person beside him, "Hang on a little longer, you've got this." While the blacksmith rants about how spider parts are way more fun than people think, polish the shell just right and it turns as hard as metal, and the skin comes out silky smooth. Nod stared down at his brand new gear. This was finally his real armor, so he should have felt hyped. But instead confusion hit him hard because the design wasn't at all what he imagined. So the blacksmith leaned in and told him, "Since you're a real knight now, I'll outfit the whole set to look like true knight gear on me." Later on, Node whips out his new outfit in front of his family and blurts, "So, what do you think?" And they're all frozen in stunned silence, staring like the transformation just broke reality. His mother starts sobbing into her handkerchief from pure pride, and even Alec loses it, blinking in disbelief as he says he never thought he'd see the day Node looked like a real knight. She wastes no time and starts sketching out a massive celebration. But then Node freaks out and yells at her and Alec to slow down just for a second. Alburo, his older brother, strides up and slaps a hand on his shoulder, saying their mother must be over the moon. Then Node whips around to see him standing there, as Alburo. His Albero says she's always hated the strain she put on his shoulders, and now she's probably just breathing easier, seeing him thriving like this. Right as they're talking, a stranger waves from across the way and screams for their brother. Noad catches it instantly and whirls around. Ellen's eyes explode with hype when she spots the fresh gear, and she can't stop yelling about how badass her big brother looks stomping around in that armor. Nod's mind whips back to when he was just a little kid, how he used to stare at his dad and brothers like they were legends the moment they got geared up. So he tilts his head to the stars and quietly thanks Ellen for saying that. Back at training, Rena spots the upgrade and tells Node he finally looks like a real knight. Then he fires off a joke about how even a regular guy looks great in nice clothes, and somehow Node doesn't treat it like the compliment she hoped for. The whole vibe flips the moment things get loud and wild on the training grounds, and right from there it leads to Rena shouted for instructor Orange to come inspect her new look. And when he finally showed up, he admitted the armor was way more solid than it looked. Nod blurts out thanks, but Orange's face snaps into something terrifying as he swears he'll make sure Nod's skills measure up to the gear's quality. Then the training turns brutal and the kid basically crumbles. Later on, Node stands there utterly wiped out, wrapped in his cloak, and the research professor looks him over and says it's like he got beaten up all over again. Node asks what she needs, she blurts out an apology for the weird timing, then asks if he'll run a quick errand for her and he shoots back, "Yeah, I'm down." Just then, Newt snaps his gaze up at him with those huge eyes and makes this adorable little Me Too sound, like he's begging to tag along. Long-haired and tense, the man stares downward and whispers the name of the magical institute like it's tearing him up inside. Node finally bursts to the front of the colossal stone building, and it hits him, he's really at the institute. This is the capital's big-time academic headquarters, where they teach everything from high-level magic to basic tech. But outsiders don't exactly get a warm welcome here. Standing there in that cloak, he could already feel it. This place was elite, icy, and closed off like nobody's getting in, and that thought hit him hard. I watched some guy get screamed at and booted out of the building. He just kept apologizing while he sprinted away, and as the door slams shut, Node just freezes, spiraling over how he's even supposed to handle this. Then Elisha bursts in out of nowhere, and the second she spots him, she knows exactly who he is. While Node's jaw drops because he never expected to see her here. He tells her he's got a letter for Instructor Lassen and asks if she knows the route. Then she jumps in and offers to lead him, and Node practically cheers like, "That's a massive help." They burst into a cramped room packed with dusty books and scrap gear, and Node slips in like he belongs. Then shoots an apology straight into the air as he calls out for the instructor. That long-bearded old man whips around, and the second he spots Node, his temper detonates as he screams at him like he's seen the devil. The moment they step inside, Lassen starts yelling like he's furious, loud and clear that he won't take a single new student, even if they keep coming back 100 times. It totally blindsides Elisha, so she rushes to say Node is only here for official research business from the facility. But Node stays calm, professional, and introduces himself as a messenger, hoping to win cooperation so she can. To calm the old man down, and Lassen goes wide-eyed. He stops his yelling long enough for Node to shove the document he's holding into his hands. The instructor snatches the paper, tears into it right away, and once he's finished, he hurls a heavy bundle back at Node, tells the kid it's all good, and orders him to make sure it reaches a guy named Eric. Node just nods and takes off. Gets shoved right out the door. Lassen roars after him that Eric needs to quit acting like an idiot and show his own face next time, and leaves. A guy stands in the hallway completely stunned and tells Elisha, "I can't believe they just kicked me out like that." But she just looks. He looks absolutely wrecked with guilt about the whole mess, and she rushes in to apologize, saying Lassen always turns down anyone who tries to become his apprentice, so he probably figured Node was just another would-be student. As they stride on, Nod blurts out whether Elisha is truly an alchemist after watching those chains snap into action earlier. Elisha answers that she's all about enchantments and physical magic, but she's also training to master attack spells, and she doesn't even realize how far she's pushing it, yet making. And that's when he realizes she's way more talented than she lets on, because the fact she can juggle 3 different kinds of magic. That thought hits him like, that's honestly insane. Elisha practically glows with pride as she tells Node, yeah, she's got real confidence in her magic skills, and she's done proving it. He can't stop being blown away. He's basically saying that for him, that kind of skill would feel like learning the sword, spear, and bow all at once. And he knows he's still a total rookie with a spear. So seeing someone that talented hits him hard and makes him realize just how far he still has to climb. Nod asks if enchantment magic is what they use for things like magic swords, and Elisha snaps, yep, you've got it. Then she points at a nearby lamp and says, even something as simple as that is enchanted, because it's powered by magic circles etched right into it, sucking power straight out of magic stones. Those stones are what keep the whole thing running. She blurts out that her real dream is to study and forge magic tools like that, and right when the words hit, Node's life sparks into a wild idea as a life. Lisha whips around with a huge grin and asks if he wants to head back to her room, because she's got something she can't wait to give him. But just as they start moving, she wobbles, catches her foot wrong, and topples over her own feet, screaming as she drops right. Node snaps into action. He lunges in, catches her from behind just before she slams the floor, and you can see he's stunned at how fast it all went down. He snaps, hey, look where you're going, then checks on her fast, asking if she's okay and can stand back up. So like, yeah. Alicia's cheeks explode with a blush. She looks totally wrecked with embarrassment as she whispers her thanks to him for saving her. Nod stares at Elisha and it hits him. She's got the same vibe as his little siblings back home. And then it clicks. It's probably her red hair. Elisha looks totally blindsided by that comment, then snaps back that her mom is the one with the red hair, so yeah. As they keep moving down the halls, she spots it. Node's armor is totally different from the last time she saw him, and it means something. She thrusts a wrapped gift into his hands, orders him to take it, and reveals it's a magic tool powered by fire magic, sending him into a total helpless shock. He knows magic tools are brutally expensive. Something like this weapon could fetch dozens of silver coins, and the price alone makes his head spin. Elisha swears it's only her way of thanking him for the help, so No finally shuts off the worry and accepts the gift. She grabs his attention and warns him, the blade is magic stone, every swing shrinks it, so this prototype-s barely got legs. It can take only about 3 uses before it falls apart. Then she points at the handle and tells him, just grip it tight and say Eanes and then Node. Code barely makes it past the test before Elisha snaps. She screams at him to stop or he'll torch the whole room, and he immediately blurts out a rushed apology. She warns him to watch his step, because once this thing fires, it spits a fireball the size of his torso, and if it lands clean, the blast will engulf the target completely. As they head off, Node can't stop thinking, if he's got a tool like this, he could probably drop a crystal rank monster with one shot. Nod stares at the magical tool and tells Elisha it's way too much for a thank you gift. Then he makes sure she understands. If trouble ever shows up, he'll have her back. Elisha drops his gaze, cheeks burning, and admits that since he brought it up, there's something on Elisha's mind that's been gnawing at her for days. She confesses that, for someone like her with no connections, finding a master magic user willing to train her is basically hopeless. She needs a teacher with an official master title just to step into the Magic Institute. The Node listens as they walk, and at some point he blurts out, so, how are you really doing in those classes? And what kind of grades are you getting? Elisha doesn't miss a beat. She cuts in fast and tells him she's been the top student in her entire class ever since. It completely blindsides him. He freezes mid-step and stares at her, voice trembling as he asks with pure shock how old she really is. She leans in and drops the truth, she's only 14. Then points out that most of her classmates are basically way older, even in their 20s, and that's when he realizes he might not be talking to a regular kid at all. It feels like he's dealing with a literal genius. This is the Royal Magic Academy. The top tier, no-compromise place to learn magic in the entire kingdom, so it's packed with students who strut in like they own the world, convinced they're the best thing since sliced bread, only to realize not all of them live up to the hype. Elisha's on a whole other plane. She's flexing talent that blows everyone else's age out of the water. Node couldn't stop wondering what people would say if they ever saw just how wildly talented Elisha really is, especially. Elisha's convinced the guy who sixed those thugs on her was just seething with jealousy over her skills. And she admits she's pushing to sell her own magic tools, grinding to earn a real name and finally land an apprenticeship. But she finally admits the real nightmare. She can't get the materials she needs, like spirit crystals, and Node knows those things are ridiculously expensive. Spirit crystals are no joke. These special magic stones carry the real power of a spirit, and you can only pry them out of the cores of spirits strong enough to beat you, because if a spirit decides you're a problem, it can smash everything in sight. And yeah, that old warning hits hard. God remembers the saying, never wake a sleeping dragon or a spirit so. He's drowning in stress and he tells her straight up. Even if he's desperate to help, no amount of lives would ever be enough to survive hunting those things. Elisha just grins and tells him to chill, because the prototype he handed her actually helped her crack the trick to power up, using cheap, low-grade stones. So she presses Node, begging for a lead. Maybe his adventure contacts know where she can snag a fire-type magic crystal. Nod paces it through his head and realizes he's only ever hunted down ice spirit stones before. So now he can't stop wondering how he's supposed to pull this off for her. Especially because those crystals, called spirit tears, only appear in places where magic is packed tight and the spirits are at their absolute strongest. Ice spirit tears only show up on snowy mountaintops in the dead of winter, while water spirit tears are stashed deep in lakes, and even deeper in the sea. Thunder spirit tears only show up where lightning hits the ground, and everybody says fire spirit tears belong exclusively to active volcanoes. So yeah, that pretty much means. Nod tells Elisha the closest volcano is on the other side of the border, and that a round trip would chew up at least 2 months. Way too long for him to pull off alone. So Elisha's face just drops, disappointed. She shrugs it off and laughs, saying she doesn't have the money anyway, because all she really does is copy borrowed textbooks all day, so she ends up scraping by with almost no profit at all. So all she can really do is hand him another magic tool, just like the one she already gave him. And he's standing there, jaw hanging open, barely able. He freezes, trying to swallow her words, staring at her like he can't believe what he just heard. Half confused, half totally stunned. Nod leans in like it's a secret mission, eyes locked on hers, and demands she repeat every word she just said, word for word. Elisha flashes a grin and tells him, "Since I'm grabbing extra spirit tears anyway, you can have as many of these magic tools as you want. Seriously, it's nothing." Nod stares at the tool in his grip, sweat pouring as it clicks, and he can't believe it. She has absolutely no clue how insanely valuable and rare her work really is. The hall roars with noise and bodies everywhere, yet Node just stands still, like he's waiting for something huge. A voice cuts through, someone calls his name, and when he turns, he spots Zinnius waving like crazy, shouting for him too. Jago's pounding food while Shino and Almona wait at the tavern. He'll come join the old crew any second now. At the table, Shino's eyes light up because it's actually Node. Then Almana points out how it's been going on for. It's been ages since they last hung out, she's already halfway through her drink, then drops the big news she heard about him like, "Wait, Jay." Joining the night order, and Shino tells him straight up he needs to show up more often, which kicks off a little bit of trouble. The girls keep bickering non-stop while Jay just chugs his beer, and he finally stops to tell Node he's looking really healthy and rock solid. Zinnius slaps a hand on Node's shoulder, then grins and tells everyone, "I'm gonna borrow the." Jagos grabs their attention and tells them, "Make it quick, our whole point today is throwing a huge celebration for hitting red copper rank," and when Node spots their shiny new adventure tags, everything clicks, because they suddenly realize that. But even after all that grueling training, his friends are zooming up the ranks way faster than he can. As the group scatters, a voice from the back cuts in, asking Node if he's okay, and Zinnius's face hardens as he tells Jagos he's handing him the rest of the party for a bit before the story cuts to a silent night sky packed with stars, and for a moment everything feels impossibly calm, almost unreal. Way more private now, Node yanks out a weapon and orders Zinnius to check out the magical sword, and Zinnius freezes like he just saw a ghost, sweat pouring as he snatches the blade in his hand and blurts, "So this really is a top-tier magic weapon for fighting? Because for normal people, something like this is basically a myth." Then he stops. But Nod just holds his deadpan, then leans in and asks Zinnius what he'd do if he could really land a meeting with the mage who forged it. And Zinnius totally snaps. He screams at Nod, shouting, "Are you for real? What's the catch?" Then he practically pleads for an introduction, desperate to find out what kind of mage could. She even manages that. The note spells it out. She's a genius who can wield 3 kinds of magicka, but he still warns Zinnius. She's dangerous because Elisha had absolutely no idea how priceless her work really was. Then, in a flashback, she looks totally lost while Node remembers a time when she could have lived just like that, without ever realizing what her actions were actually worth. Her skills were a literal gold mine. Node even warned her that if she ever offered magic tools as payment, adventurers would swarm in without a single coin needed. And just like that, the memory cuts out with Elisha practically buzzing. She grins and says she's posting a request right away, leaving Node stunned at how effortless she makes everything look. Zinnius admits he had to jump in and stop her before it all spiraled out of control. Because it wasn't just the size. The girl's total lack of common sense is seriously scary, and Zinnius lays it out, how mages really tick. They can't stand the idea of money calling the shots over their craft. Since magic is their gift and their pride, they won't even spare you a conversation unless they truly respect you. So he thinks it's impossible she's registered with the guild just from her vibe, and Node backs him up. Ding, he's right. And that suddenly turns into a massive, terrifying problem because the guild is the only reason adventurers don't get devoured out there. Its rules and protection keep everyone standing. Because without it, you're left alone in the dark with nothing but silence and fear. Nothing stands in the way of the wrong people hunting them down. Zinnius straight up warns that once word spreads about Elisha, she won't face just curious researchers. She could get kidnapped or shoved into a cage by someone truly dangerous. And they hauled her into the grind, whipping her to churn out magic tools like a damn machine just to pad some creep's pockets. Node still remembers how she terrorized her by spelling out every brutal detail, exactly like this. And then she goes on to say Zai. And Zinnius straight up asks if he really spilled everything to her like that. Nodding, she admits she got the danger, but that he might have gone a little too far with those threats. Looking back at her past, she'd been dealt a brutal hand. Her parents were just farmers, and they were gone before she was even old enough to understand why. Plus, she didn't step into school until she was 12, so she never learned how the world works. And then Node realizes, since they can't sneak a secret request through the guild, Zinnius' party is the only crew he can truly trust. And then Zinnius finally snaps into place, seeing the full picture. He fixes everyone with a serious stare, then asks Node to spill the real details on exactly what this job is going to put him through. Zinnius lays out the job. They're heading straight into the volcano zone to grab tears from fire spirits. He says Node can get the full story from the client later, but the real win is this. They get to keep any extra magic tools forged from the crystals, and honestly that's the best part. At least it's something. Zinnius bluntly tells him not to expect a real cash payout for this run. Node eyes the crystals, then asks if there are any other rules he's got to follow. And Zinnius is dead serious about one thing. Nod must never ever spill where the tools came from or where the mage even appeared from. Zinnius knows adventurers can't stop gossiping, and Nod gets it too. If word gets out, it's going to spark one massive headache for everyone. So Node finally signs on to the deal, but he slams on the brakes for a second because he's got one last question he has to ask. He's scratching his head thinking, why is Zinnius pouring all this effort into a mage when he isn't even raking in profit as the middleman? This whole hustle feels like way too much work for nothing, and But Zinnius just shrugs it off, saying he got paid way too much back then for helping take down those thugs. Yet Node isn't buying a word, so he finally blurts it out, face all red, scratching his head as he admits that Elisha hits him way too hard like his younger sibling, and he couldn't just ignore it. He had to look after her. Zinnius just bursts into laughter, tells him he hasn't changed one bit, and yanks him along, shouting that the first round of drinks is on him tonight. Later on, Node heads over to Elisha, and she's waiting right at the door, buzzing with energy. She fires off, "Did you get the deal settled?" Then tells him, "Good. Now come inside so you can't sneak in." Node catches her eyes and notices she's completely drained, then asks if she's really okay. But she just shrugs, says she stayed up all night grinding, and stumbles off to make tea. Node strolls through the house. When he spots it, the back room door is flung wide open. So he shouts it out to Elisha, who's stuck busy getting the tea ready. She asks what he's staring at, then she snaps her gaze where his goes and freezes. Her bedroom door is wide open, and what she sees. A white cloth hangs over the bed. Elisha snaps, her face blazing bright red as the truth hits her, and she blurts out, "No." Node just saw her underwear. She rockets across the room and slams the door shut, and Node just freezes there, totally confused, until Then she barrels right up in his face, eyes blazing with suspicion, and demands to know what he saw, while Node stays on the safe side and asks if that white fabric was really some kind of magic material. Elisha just freezes and stares at him for a second, completely stunned that She just goes for it on the spot, chuckling through nerves as she blurts that it's made from an insanely rare material she never likes to flaunt. So Node swallows the excuse, drops an apology for snooping into her bedroom, and then beats himself up hard for what he just did. The poor guy, barely holding it together, and the room turns so awkward you could slice it. He frantically scans for anything to fix his eyes on, and then he asks if he can borrow a book about legendary monsters, and Elisha waves it off. Yeah, go ahead. Because finally this conversation is actually getting somewhere. Elisha finishes stirring the tea, then leans in and says she hand-copied that entire book herself. She couldn't stop because the subject had her completely hooked, and as she flips through legends, Fenrir, the sky dragons, she leans in and asks Node if he ever lies awake dreaming of battling beasts like those. Node stares at the huge beast drawings and admits the idea sounds tempting, but deep down he's still thinking, nah, I'd rather skip this. He tells her that most of those claims are probably just lies anyway, and that Elisha snaps him to a stop and tells him straight-faced that ancient records stacked up for proof, because these monsters are real. She starts riffling through the pages like she's on a timer, hunting for the perfect example just for him, until she finally lands on. He lands on a page about the Empress Spider, and the moment he does, Node's attention snaps to it instantly as it hits him that the name feels familiar. Elisha says he's probably mixing it up with that raw silk shipped in from the east because, back when legendary adventurers were still roaming, they called it silk Arachne's thread. Node points out she's talking about something from hundreds of years ago, and then Lisha locks eyes with him, says she wants to know if he thinks she's lying, and Node can't even come up with an answer. Nod tells Elisha, I get it, you're not playing, but even so the whole thing still blows his mind. Elisha slams the truth down, she insists the info is legit, then explains she tracked the details in an old document while she was stuck cleaning up the Magic Academy's archives. Node blurts out why she'd waste her time on a boring gig, and she tells him the Academy runs a program for students who are short on cash, so copying books by hand is just one part of the bargain. She whips her head around, hunting for the exact copy she made, and leaves Node stuck there nursing his tea while she tore through her stuff, nearly sent everything flying, then finally burst out that she'd found exactly what she wanted. She slams the books onto the table, snaps that the original was crumbling to dust, and still somehow translates everything she can, especially the Empress Spider's traits and the secret of how that legendary thread is made, even though he barely glances up, then leans over the table, staring into the unknown, wondering if those terrifying creatures are actually prowling across the whole continent. Elisha leans in and asks what he thinks, wondering if the old-school adventurers hunted them into extinction, because nobody's seen one in centuries. Node swears he hopes that's the case, but the book swears the queen doesn't just appear, she's born only when brutal wars erupt at full force. No. Nod suddenly realizes a massive war tore through the world a little over 10 years ago, and since no spider ever showed up then, he thinks Elisha might be right about them vanishing, right up until a wild thought hits him out of nowhere. Elisha freezes in shock. Oh no, she realizes she totally botched it, admitting she completely forgot to mention the adventurer's note request. Node shuts his book with a snap, remembers what they're talking about, and straight up asks her what's going on with that guy Zinnius, because since that whole favor really saved him, and he makes sure to thank her for handling the errand, while wyverns thunder over the city. Elisha digs through the shelves again and blurts out, so you're really friends with Instructor Lassen? She tells him the old man said her Node has to show up in person next time, and then, to her shock, he even called her by her name. Node just cracks up it off, staring at the desk, and says he's sorry she caught the heat and got screamed at instead of him. Elisha drops the bombshell that her instructor was actually her master when she was still at the Magic Academy, and she bilayed because she couldn't stand the place anymore. So yeah, now everything is wildly awkward. She drops her head onto the table and tells Node he probably clocked it himself, but the Academy is locked down tight and ridiculously exclusive, so there's no looking back on those icy stares from the other mages. He realizes they weren't being friendly at all, and now he can't stop wondering if Elisha is the only one who's truly different. Turns out that even though it's called a research center, the whole place is basically chaos. People clawing for power, and he lived in a world where who you knew mattered more than how good you truly were. But Instructor Lassen was different. He stayed neutral, and he was one of the few genuinely decent people in the whole place. The research professor lowers her gaze, tone turning razor-sharp as she brings up a maid she used to know. She wipes the chalkboard clean as she explains how this girl came from a commoner family and still tried to claw her way to fame by crafting magic tools. The eraser snaps against the board, and she bluntly tells them it's probably already a lost cause. Node clenched his fist, zeroing in on who she meant, and demanded to know why it has to be like this. She tells them straight up, Instructor Lassen can keep his hands clean only because he's born into a big-shot family, but a mage with no connections and no allies. They just treat her like dead weight in their never-ending power games. As she wipes down the board, she turns to him and says, straight up, that's the whole reason nobody wants to take on an apprentice like that. Nod starts pushing back, saying things could be different if they just proved it with real results. But the professor snaps around and tells him flat out that she hates being the one to say it. She stares him straight in the eye and bluntly tells him that every real instructor, every last one, has been labeled a genius at least once in their lifetime. She admits the kid's got an insane, rare kind of talent, then tells Node that legends like this don't come out of nowhere. They've shown up before and while wyverns sweep over the city outside, she drops the bombshell. She's the one who earned her instructor title at just 18 years old. Elisha flashed a huge smile at Node, basically telling him, I'm not kidding, I'm just ridiculously happy we actually became friends. But in the present, Node can't stop staring at Newt, because if Elisha's hunt for a magic master blows up, what on earth can he do to save her? And right as that dread hits, the rain suddenly starts hammering the outside world. Once they finally make it back, Alec the butler snaps to attention at the door with a greeting note. But the second he sees how bad his master looks, worry hits him like a punch. Node's completely wiped out, soaked to the bone, and gasps to Alec that he needs a break before he catches a cold. So the butler immediately hurries off to get a hot bath ready. Node lets out a heavy sigh about how brutal the day's been, then waves Newt over so he can get cleaned up too. That tiny dragon snuggles straight into Node's chest, beaming like it's finally back where it belongs, safe, warm, and home. Nod grabs a towel and wipes him down hard, scraping every drop of rainwater off his back and wings. He tells Newt to stretch those wings wide so he can slam the job shut, and the little guy chirps back while shaking the water flying off him. Once he's finally dried off, Newt flops onto a soft mat, curls up to rest, and looks way better than he did out there in the storm. Alec swings back into the room with fresh herbal tea, and Noad can't stop praising it as the warmth hits. He relaxes, then messes around on the floor with Nude. Alec leans in and blurts out that there's one last thing he has to tell Noad, hooking Noad's attention in an instant as the two of them march toward the baths. The kids are already splashing around, and the girls hold up their toy duck to Nod. He cheers them on and tells everyone to relax, kick back, and soak for a while. Once they're out, Node rushes to dry off his little sisters while Alex stands right there, ready to jump in and help. That night, Node finally gets his seat and cracks open a brand new letter from Johan, sealed and stamped just for him. Johan explains that after Nod wiped out the General Spider a few months back, the locals finally got their forest back, so they can hunt and gather food again. Even though that brutal, freezing summer wrecked a chunk of the crops, the village looks like it'll actually make it through winter this time. Nod beams because his brother is doing great, and when Johan tells him he's always welcome to come back for another visit, Newt chirp erupts happily from the floor. Then Node spots a tiny extra note at the bottom of the page, and it cuts off with a weird wah. The wyvern has apparently built its nest over in the eastern mountains, and Johan breaks the news. Nobody's been hurt yet, but everyone nearby is already terrified of what it might do next. Johan shoots back that he's not ordering Node to handle it. Then Node just locks onto the word wyvern like that's all he can see. Right when Node hears a knock and learns dinner's ready, Newt's stomach erupts with an earth-shaking growl like it can't wait another second. He wraps up what he's doing, shouts over his shoulder that he's coming, and then he shouts for Newt to get moving so they can finally eat. Newt chirps with joy and darts after him, leaving the dragons wheel high above the academy buildings. While the sun blazes overhead, another hectic day roaring to life. Later on, Node bursts into the office and demands instructor Orange tell him why he needed to see him. Orange slumped behind a mountain of paperwork, telling Node that his training is officially on hold. Yet Node can't shake the feeling he's heard that exact same excuse before, and before Orange even gets the words out again. Rena snatches her way in from out of nowhere, then collapses into tears, clutching Node's shirt and begging him to save her from the relentless, never-ending work. Orange tells Renat to quit picking on the rookie and start acting like a real senior, so Node snaps. All right, what's the deal with this whole mess? Orange reveals that the top brass finally snapped. They're exploding the Dragon Knights program, trying to crush the border war that's been dragging on for years. Turns out the paperwork is murdering everyone, so Node demands to know just how many more knights they're about to tack onto their current group of 40. Node stared at the room packed with supplies and couldn't help thinking, realistically, the number of fresh recruits has to be tiny. He asks Errant if they're only hunting for maybe 5 more writers, but Errant cuts him off, holds up a hand, says no, and then Errant. When Arin drops, the real number is 50. Node's jaw crumples to the floor and blurts the figure stutter by stutter, shaking with total disbelief at how massive it is. Aarons tells him they'll tackle it step by step, and Node immediately fires back. Are you really saying a monster expansion like that is a good idea? But it turns out taming dragons usually demands rare, top-tier knights, and snatching them from other units would smash the country's defenses. So while everyone's locked in, Renat just cheers from the background, urging Node to keep things chill between them. Arin tells Noad it was him all along who fixed everything. Noad just stares at himself, totally baffled, and then Arin. So Errant points out the brutal truth. Most dragons don't want anything to do with people at all. It takes someone like Renat to rein them in, but Node stumbled on a way better plan completely by accident while he was still holding Newt. He tells them steal the mother's scent and trick a hatchling into imprinting. And suddenly, just like that, anyone can become a dragon rider, which means. So now they don't have to gamble away their best knights, or sweat over the military slipping, because that deal hands them a massive budget boost. Nod can't believe it. Back when Newt was just a baby, he already ate twice as much as he did, and if Newt ever hits full size, that food bill alone will smash their whole budget, so he's seriously relieved they're getting support. Staring down a mountain of paperwork, Node fires off the question. Are they really going to trust regular adventurers to collect the egg? Aaron rubs his chin and finally confesses they actually considered hitting that planet first. News rockets through the city as folks spot the fresh collection request from the Iron Dragon Knights, turning to each other like, wait, did you see the one where they're asking if have they seen it yet? Because the second everyone spots that new package deal, eggs and dung together, they erupt in laughter, and now they're already betting who's getting splattered next. Arin's face twists with irritation as he snaps that's exactly why the idea got tossed aside. While Node chimes in that adventurers sure aren't famous for keeping their mouths. But Orange snaps that sure, any adventurer asterisk could asterisk hunt a wyvern for an egg, yet nobody ever pictured Node's wild plan. Just getting himself smeared in poop and calling it a day. He slams his hand on the board and snaps that it's only a matter of time before the info leaks once the rumors break. So he orders the Iron Dragon Knights to do the collecting themselves. Orange leads me to a massive wall map, pointing out every known wyvern nest like he's uncovering a countdown. Right then, but when Nod leans in and studies the marked peaks, he suddenly spots something so shocking it leaves him completely off guard. Aaron spots him just standing there glued to the map and fires off. Yo, what's going on? He nods hard toward the eastern mountain range and tells Orange that wyverns have built a nest there. He knows because his brother just mailed him a letter about it, and it's the freshest lead they've got, but Nod's face hardens into pure seriousness as he lays out why this is a disaster. Because that spot used to sit right on the border, packed with top-tier mining sites. So Orange gets it instantly. He blurts out that if those wyverns start swarming the horses,